As a game developer, my life was simple, successful, and revolved around code, but one day, the world decided to flip the script on me. In the otome game I poured my soul into, there was a beautiful world waiting for the heroine, a world filled with romance and doting men. There was the arrogant and overbearing crown prince, and with hair like spun gold and eyes like the summer sky, who would gently place a sparkling tiara on the heroine's head that the crown, the kingdom, everything belonged to her. And he wasn't alone. There was also the docile, puppy-like younger brother who would cling to her side, begging her to play with him, and a dependable, warm hunk who would pull her into his arms, insisting his games were much more interesting. It was the perfect reverse harem fantasy, a dream come true for any girl. But that dream wasn't mine. That girl wasn't me. My reality was a waking nightmare. The crown prince gazed, only icy suspicion as he looked down at me, demanding to know what new scheme I was plotting. The dependable man radiated a murderous aura, his voice a low growl as he warned me that if I dared to take another step closer, he would cut off my hands. And the cute younger brother? His eyes burned with a terrifying hatred, his sword pointed straight at my heart as he spat that he would kill me, the evil witch. It was because I had woken up in a body that was my own, a beautiful but cursed vessel. In a cruel twist of fate, I had transmigrated into the game's most hated villainess. A capricious god then laid out the rules of this twisted new life. The only way I could ever return to my original world was if I managed to get the story's true heroine to end up with one of the male leads. But as I looked at the gallery of godlike men I myself had designed, my heart began to pound for a completely different reason. There were just so many hot men. How in the world was I supposed to stop the female lead from starting her own harem, when every single capture target was a walking masterpiece? A dangerous glint appeared in my eyes. Perhaps it was time for the villainess to play this game her own way. My mind raced, trying to process the sheer insanity of it all. In my game, the arrogant prince was supposed to be a dream come true, a man who would lay the world at the heroine's feet. He was accompanied by a cute younger boy and a caring, dependable man, all competing for her love. But that was the heroine's story, not mine. For me, the villainess, their attitudes were a suffocating wave of hostility and death threats. My only path home was to play Cupid for my rival, a task given by some wretched god. But with so many devastatingly handsome men, each more tempting than the last, how could anyone possibly choose just one? A wicked thought began to form. If the heroine gets her one true love, maybe the villainess can have the rest. It's time to give the harem to the villainess. A voice cuts through the haze, dripping with envy and malice. Molly, who is talking to? Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion, a stark contrast to the luxurious room she found herself in. Just moments ago, she was at her desk, sifting through player feedback for her latest game. Now, she was trapped in an unfamiliar body, surrounded by opulent roses, her reflection showing a girl with soft brown hair and startling emerald eyes. Who was this? But the recognition dawned on her like a cold wave. This hair, this school uniform, this face, it belonged to the villainess Molly from the wildly popular otome game she herself produced. Panic set in. Why was she here in the body of her own creation? Was this a dream, a twisted hallucination? There was something she was forgetting, something vital, but that the green herald's nagging voice pulled her back to the present, demanding she open the gift. A present, her mind raced to catch up. Who did she say it was from? The crown prince, of course, the girl sneered, her voice laced with mockery, wondering if even royalty couldn't satisfy Molly's ravenous appetite. Ilier! The memory of this scene flashed through our protagonist's mind. This was a pivotal event where an aimed NPC frames Molly for bullying the heroine. Inside that beautifully wrapped box was a dead rat, a cruel prank designed to make Molly look hysterical and unhinged in front of the crown prince. This was such a drag. She had more important things to do, like figuring out how to get back to her own world. She turned to leave, but her path was blocked by the green-haired girl and her two cronies. They weren't letting her go. She glanced at her own delicate frame, one small girl against three bullies. Classic setups, no one was gonna help. Other students were just spectators, their eyes with cruel amusement, waiting for the show to begin. It was clear she had to rely on herself. The lead bully's smile was pure poison. Was she too scared to open it after all the horrible things she'd done to the crown prince? The insults turned vile, telling her to strip naked and get pregnant to secure her position, calling her a selfish, power-hungry bitch. Even though the words were aimed at Molly, and a cold fury began to bubble within her. Her eyes flashed with a dangerous crimson light. This was a game world, and she refused to be a pawn. If they had just let her go, this could have all been avoided. She fixed the bully with an unnervingly gaze. She had a feeling the girl was far more curious about this present than she was. According to the game's script, the real Molly would quiet now, only to lash out at the heroine later. But she wasn't the real Molly. The bully was taken aback by her sudden brazenness. Our protagonist's thoughts were fiercely protective. Molly was characterized. She was the only one allowed to bully her child. You're an unimportant NPC, she spat. You don't even have a name. The bully stared, completely stunned by this sudden transformation. Molly had gone completely nuts. A wicked smile played on our new Molly's lips. Since you're so interested, she closed the distance between them, her presence suddenly suffocating. She would grant her special permission to open this special present with her. Grabbing the bully's hand, she slammed it onto the box. The girl paled, stammering that it was a gift from the crown prince, that it wasn't appropriate. But Molly's grip was like iron, an overwhelming pressure that pinned her in place. No way. The old Molly would never have fought back. With a terrified scream, the bully ripped her hand away, sending the box flying. It popped open, and a bloody dead rat skid across the floor. The girl shrieked and scrambled backward, falling in a heap of pure terror. Molly looked down at the scene, her voice dripping with amusement. Oh? This is indeed visual. Why gift a dead rat if you're so utterly terrified of it, she mused, looking down at the trembling girl. Suddenly, a stern male voice cut through the chaos. Molly, what are you yelling about? A pair of polished white boots entered her vision. It was him, one of the main love interests, Crown Prince Alan. She remembered how the original Molly had been pathetically in love with him, driving her to near madness. He looked at her now with pure annoyance, demanding to know why she couldn't behave for a single moment. With perfect composure, she gestured to the sniveling girl on the floor. She told me you gave me a present, Your Highness. She seemed so eager for me to open it, so I simply invited her to join me. The Crown Prince's eyes widened in confusion. He hadn't sent anything. Molly feigned shock. That's odd, she said, her voice dripping with false innocence, because this girl clearly stated it was from you. The bully froze, realized that slandering the royal family was a one-way ticket to ruin. Alan cleared his throat, clearly done with this drama. That's enough, he commanded. Come with me. As she followed him, her mind was a storm of irritation. He didn't even bother to help her, and now he was dragging her off for an interrogation? It didn't matter. She'd already taught the NPCs their lesson. She paused, turning back to the terrified bully, and brought a finger to her lips. You're lucky the Crown Prince showed up. If this happens again, I won't go easy on you next time. The memory of how she got here finally crashed down on her. She'd been reading horrified playreviews about her game's secret reverse harem ending. It was a complete disaster, a bloodbath where the love interests, consumed by jealousy over the heroine, ended up murdering each other, and the heroine herself. Just as she'd reached for the phone to call her team, she passed out. She awoke before a being who called himself a god. He informed her that the main characters were all dead, and it was her fault. Her punishment, she had to enter the game and make the heroine end up with just one man. If she failed, she would face Molly's original fate, execution. The memory faded, replaced by the throbbing pain in her head. Blood dripped down her face as the Crown Prince stared down at her. What happened, he asked. She mumbled that she was hit by a ball, a weak attempt to explain the injury. But the crowd of students denied it, their faces twisting into malicious grins. They accused her of faking it for attention, their shadowy forms radiating pure hostility. The chilling truth dawned on her. They threw the ball at her head on purpose. But why? Even the Crown Prince seemed to realize this wasn't right. This scene wasn't in the game. She asked for the date. March 10th. Her developer brain went into overdrive. At this point in the story, Molly should have had plenty of allies. Her engagement to the prince made her far more legitimate than the commoner heroine. She spotted Molly's supposed #1 lackey in the crowd, a girl who should have been at her side instantly. But the girl just stood there along with all of Molly's other supposed supporters, none of them moving to help her. Something was terribly, fundamentally wrong with this world. She decided to play along for now, wiping the blood from her brow as the prince led her away. They stopped in a sunlit garden, where he immediately accused her of stealing the heroine's doll. A doll? What doll? He grew impatient, snapping that the doll was precious to Rutas. She had no idea he was talking about because she wasn't the real Molly. Just as he was scolding her for picking on the heroine herself appeared, pink-haired and doe-eyed. Stop arguing because of me, she cried, blaming herself for being careless and suggesting Molly only took the doll because she liked it. The sight was infuriating. As the game's creator, she was proud of her main character's design, but why were they holding hands so brazenly in front of the man's assay? The Crown Prince, completely swayed, told Molly he'd let it go this time, a smug warning in his eyes. Her own eyes narrowed. So you do remember I'm still here? Do you have any evidence I took it? She asked coolly. He just smirked, confident she'd covered her tracks. It was clear he had no proof, but it didn't matter. He would never believe her anyway. Fine. The god's mission was to make the heroine choose one man. That meant the others were fair game. And the Crown Prince is not worth going after. A brilliant, liberating smile bloomed on her face. Isn't this nice? She chirped. Let's call off our engagement. The prince and heroine stared, mouths agape, as he stammered that this wasn't what he meant at all. Her had his added a tearful performance, claiming she didn't want to come between them. Molly couldn't suppress a laugh. Why are you laughing? Rutas whimpered. Because you just told a joke, Molly replied, her smile sharp as glass. The prince snapped that her desperate ploys for attention wouldn't work. Her condescending gaze cut him to the core. Poor you. Why would I ever want your attention? Is there a law that says I must like you, Your Highness? Are you being serious? He choked out, completely stunned. She gave him one day to inform the king of their broken engagement, or she would do it herself. With a triumphant smile, she turned to walk away, then paused for one final devastating blow. And just so we're clear, the reason I'm ending this is because a man who dates another woman while engaged simply isn't good enough for me. For Lin Ci, now trapped in the body of the villainous Molly, life was a constant barrage of threats and disgust. Her mission was simple yet impossible: steal the hearts of the second and third male leads from the heroine, or face certain death. But how could she when the sex-hunk Shide promised to kill her if she so much as touched a hair on the heroine's head? And the so-called cutie of the demon clan Osho couldn't even stand the sight of her, telling her to get away from him. A wave of exhaustion washed over her. Why did they all have such wretched attitudes? She was already being bullied by the nameless NPCs tripped in the halls, a sticky note slapped on her back, even hit by a ball. this rate, she'd be killed by these extras before she even got a chance to conquer a single male lead. The strangest part was in the original game's timeline, Molly hadn't even started tormenting the heroine yet, so their suffocating hatred made absolutely no sense. Her sharp green eyes narrowed, trying to make sense of her impossible situation. Suddenly, a timid voice broke her concentration. It was a girl with soft purple hair she'd never seen before. Probably just another unimportant NPC, she thought dismissively. The girl smiled sweetly, informing Molly that the crown prince was waiting for her at the royal greenhouse. Molly's heart sank. Was this another prank? Or worse, was the crown prince finally going to announce the cancellation of their engagement in public? Her stirred with anxiety as she made her way through the long, sunlit corridors. Just then, the purple-haired girl gasped, grabbing her arm. "Ah, your forehead is wounded," she cried out with concern, telling Molly to hold on. She then presented a gorgeous, ornate bottle filled with a shimmering green liquid. It was a handmade healing potion, she explained, offer rub a little on the wound. Molly instinctively flinched away, insisting she didn't need it, but the girl's finger still brushed at her skin. A tiny spark of magic flared, and Molly's eyes widened in surprise. The throbbing pain she hadn't even noticed, it was completely gone. The girl, glowing like an angel in the sunlight, pressed the bottle into Molly's hands, telling her to keep it. A blush crept up Molly's cheeks. This girl, she was a good kid. With a cute, humbled expression, Molly bowed her head, thanking her and silently apologizing for ever thinking of her as an unimportant NPC. Since she had transmigrated, this was the first time anyone had shown her an ounce of kindness. It was a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, there was still some good in this world. Feeling slightly better, she arrived at the magnificent glass greenhouse. She cupped her hands around her mouth, shouting for that stupid crown prince to show his face. But the only answer was the sharp click of the door locking behind her. Her blood ran cold. No, not again. She ducked behind some lush green foliage, her heart pounding as she listened. She heard giggling. It was the girl from before talking to someone else. What an idiot. The girl laughed, her voice dripping with malice. She was so cautious she wouldn't have fallen for it otherwise. The other girl agreed, snickering about how hilarious it was that Molly had actually thanked her. Molly's world shattered. The beautiful potion bottle in her hand now felt like a cruel mockery. Her hand trembled, and the bottle slipped from her grasp, shattering on the stone floor. Her hope shattered with it. She turned her back on the broken glass, leaving the lie behind her. As darkness fell around her, a crushing realization settled in her heart. In the end, there was no one on Molly's side after all. The greenhouse was eerily silent under the starry night sky. Molly sat huddled among the plants, alone and trapped. People rarely came here, so she'd likely have to wait until morning for the gardener. As if on cue, her stomach let out a pathetic growl. She hadn't even eaten dinner. She threw herself back in a dramatic fit of despair, wailing that she was starving and wanted a huge meal. Lying on the cold floor, she replayed the day's failures in her mind. The male leads hated her with a passion. How was she supposed to make any progress when the crown prince looked at her with such icy contempt? She wondered how the others treated the real heroine, Rutas. Were they gentle with her? A tiny, tearful version of herself cried out in frustration. "What did you do to make everyone hate you so much?" Her eyes, shimmering with unshed tears, stared up at the glass ceiling. She just wanted to go home. She was so tired of all this. In this world, she and the original Molly were completely and utterly alone. A sudden sharp clack made her eyes fly open. The greenhouse door creaked open, spilling moonlight onto the floor. Someone had come to open the door. From the doorway, a voice told someone not to close it, that there was still someone inside. A man with hair like spun silver replied coolly that he knew. Molly's eyes widened. What did he know? Her gaze locked onto the man's expense shoes as he stepped into the greenhouse. Her embrace and recognition struck her like lightning. It was Ilier, the crown prince of the demon clan, a new love interest who wasn't even supposed to be released in the game yet. A man who never cared for human affairs. A desperate, brilliant idea sparked in her mind, but quickly interrupted when he asked what she was doing here. He'd been sleeping in the greenhouse the entire time. Molly's brain short-circuited. She shot to her feet, her frustration boiling over. "You should have opened the door earlier," he replied with infuriating calm that since she hadn't made a sound, he assumed she was enjoying herself. She scoffed internally. As if shouting would have done any good, those bullies were waiting for her to break down, and she refused to give them the satisfaction. Ilier's gaze flickered to the shattered potion bottle, a hint of understanding in his eyes. He then noticed the intact bottle she still clutched and asked if she planned to keep it. Of course, she declared, her eyes sparkling with defiance. This was her spoil of war. With a triumphant grin, she held the bottle to her cheek. She even cheekily offered him some, saying it was very effective. He looked at her with a mix of irritation and bewilderment, muttering that he couldn't tell if she was optimistic or just stupid. Stupid. A sly smile played on her lips. She knew plenty of things that even he didn't. He was skeptical, of course. She was just a human after all. Leaning in close, so close her lips brushed against his ear, she whispered the one secret that would shatter his composure. For example, she knew how to save his little sister. The air instantly turned glacial. A murderous aura exploded from him, and in a flash he had her pinned against the wall, the cold steel of a blade pressed against her throat. The potion bottle clattered to the ground, forgotten. His piercing blue eyes burned with a cold fire as he demanded to know who she was and what she wanted. Though her heart hammered against her ribs, she kept her voice steady. "Calm down," she said. "I just want to make a deal." "A deal," he snarled. She laid out her terms. She would tell him how to cure his sister, and in return he would help her win over the heroine's other boyfriends. He sneered at the idea. Revenge, how dull. He didn't trust her for a second. How could he possibly know if her method would work? She revealed a crucial piece of game lore. A special ice plant in the frozen northern tundra could mitigate his sister's symptoms. It wasn't a permanent cure, but it would buy him time, and prove she was telling the truth. He stared at her, his suspicions still palpable. "One last question," he said. "How did she know all this?" A mysterious smile touched her lips, even with the blade at her neck. "You were supposed to find out by chance when you and Rutas got stranded up north together," she teased, enjoying his shock. Accepting that he get no more answers, he demanded specifics. With a flick of his wrist, a magical scroll and quill appeared. A wave of triumph washed over Molly. She did it. He was a complete siskin, just like in the game. He scanned the information she provided, his expression deadly serious. "You better be telling the truth," he warned, his voice a chilling promise. "Otherwise I'll kill you." And with a swirl of blue light he vanished without a trace. Molly finally sagged against a balcony railing, utterly exhausted. Today had been too much. If she were back in her own world, she'd be getting ready for a new game release with her friends. She gazed up at the brilliant starry sky, a deep longing in her heart. "I want to play it so bad," she murmured. A sudden rustle from below snapped her out of her melancholy. What was that? Before she could react, a pale hand shot up from the darkness, gripping the railing right beside her. A chud, her soul nearly left her body. This was the 5th floor. The hand then reached for the wine bottle she'd brought out. Another prank? Oh, she had had enough. "That's enough," she shrieked, grabbing the bottle and swinging it down with all her might. Bam! A sharp cry of pain echoed from below. Wait, that voice was familiar. Peering over the edge, she saw Ilier clutch head, a furious glare on his handsome face. "Ilier?" She gasped. "What the heck? It's just you. Why are you sneaking into a lady's room at night, you pervert?" He shot back that no proper lady greets someone by clocking them with a wine bottle, but she retorted that he couldn't blame her for being scared by a disembodied hand appearing on her 5th-floor balcony. He muttered under his breath about how annoying humans were. Getting straight to the point, he looked at her with desperate intensity. His little sister didn't have much time left. What exactly did she want from him? A slow, triumphant, and utterly villainous smile spread across Molly's face. "Well, first," she declared, "let me move into your mansion." The quiet days at Ilier's opulent mansion were beginning to feel like a prison. Just as Molly was sinking into despair, the handsome silver-haired appeared, his shirt unbuttoned just enough to be distracting, holding out a pristine white envelope. He announced there was a letter for her, explaining he just happened to be passing by on his way. 3 days had passed since she'd taken refuge here, and this was the first word from the outside world. She took the letter, her fingers brushing his, and tore it open as Ilier watched with a flicker of curiosity in his piercing eyes. His gaze softened with concern as he saw the color drain from her face, asking gently if it was bad news. With a groan of utter frustration, she crushed the paper in her fist. Her request to break the engagement had been flatly rejected. Ilier mused that this was good, wasn't it? She could continue as the crown prince's rightful fiancée. But that wasn't all. She was also sentenced to 2 weeks of house arrest to reflect on her actions. Ilier's eyes widened in disbelief. Had she even bothered to notify the school of her absence? Molly scoffed at the very idea. Who ever heard of an otome game character taking school seriously? He sighed, telling her she was talking nonsense again, but she cut him off, her voice rising with desperation. The most important thing, she declared, was that she had been trapped here for 3 days, and right now, she was so bored. Her boredom was a tangible force, a storm brewing in the gilded cage of the mansion. She demanded a game, anything to pass the time. Her eyes scanned the room, finally landing on the ornate checkered table. A spark of inspiration hit her as she realized it was illusion magic. With a flick of her wrist, a gomoku board materialized, delicate pink blossoms bursting existence around it. A timid maid with adorable bunny ears approached, asking what my lady was doing. Molly's eyes lit up with a mischievous glint. This, she announced grandly, was a game all children from her country learned. The little bunny maid admitted she'd never been to school, and Molly saw her chance. No problem, she would teach her. The maid hesitated, stammering that she was just a servant, but a low, commanding voice cut through the air. "Play with her," Ilier ordered, not even looking up from his book. And so the lesson began. The rule: the first to get 5 stones in a row wins. The bunny maid placed her first stone, only for Molly to immediately declare her loss with a triumphant grin. Watching from the corner of his eye, seemed faintly amused. The maid tried again, and again Molly declared victory. As the maid reached for another spot, Ilier suddenly intervened, pointing out that she couldn't go there. The maid jumped, startled by his sudden interest. Seizing the moment, Molly turned her most brilliant, sparkling smile on him, asking if he wanted to play a couple of games. He shot her down with a flat nope, fine. Then how about asking his little sidekick Osho to play? He'd be an easier warm-up opponent. Ilier conceded the point and stood, but then paused, adding a strange request. He needed her to prepare a dress for him in the style of a gentle older sister next door. A wicked little smile played on Molly's lips. A deal was a deal, she reminded him with a devilish glint in her eyes, much to his visible annoyance. That night, Molly held a beautifully wrapped box, impressed by Ilier's good taste. Meanwhile, her unfortunate opponent Osho was found tied up amongst a sea of flowers, blushing as he wondered if Lord Ilier was finally making a move on him. A sharp smack to the head from Ilier, that delusion. Someone else wanted to see him. The click-clack of elegant heels on the floor announced her rival. Osho's eyes widened as he took in the sight of Molly. Transformed in a delicate blue dress, the very picture of a sweet, approachable older sister, he literally captivated, stammering her name in disbelief. She smiled warmly, noting how this was their first meeting outside of school and mentally congratulating herself. The big sister look was definitely his type. Osho quickly recovered his composure, demanding to know what Alan's wretched fiancé wanted with him. She sat down gracefully, her voice like honey, telling him to relax. She was bored and wanted to play some games. His eyes narrowed with suspicion, but Molly's sly smile only widened as she asked what exactly he was so afraid of. Flustered, he shot back that he wasn't afraid of a mere human and warned her not to cry when she inevitably lost. A hilarious extra shows Ilier later that night, completely hooked on Gomoku, playing by himself. Molly introduced a new game, a psychological battle of wits. They would each use projection magic to display cards above their heads, cards they themselves couldn't see. The rule was simple. If you say or do what's on your card, you lose. Molly, with a cunning smile, declared it a team game. Write 2 cards for the boys and 4 for herself. If they survived, they'd both win. Osho, ever the loyal sidekick, threw his arm around Ilier, declaring they wouldn't go easy on her. But Molly knew the secret to this game wasn't teamwork. It was about knowing your opponent's habits inside and out. The game began. Osho's card read talk about food, while Ilier simply said nod. Osho immediately went on the attack, asking Ilier what he liked to eat. Just as Ilier was about to answer, Osho slapped a hand over his mouth, shouting that His Highness lemons. Ilier's glare could have frozen hell over, but it was too late. Osho's card popped. He had fallen right into her trap. The game raged on, with Osho getting utterly destroyed. Down to his last card, he fumed, while Molly cheerily called his single point against her a Pyrrhic victory. Osho sulked with puffy cheeks and magical cat ears, a punishment for losing, and Molly couldn't help but think he looked adorable. The mood softened, and Ilier's voice was gentle as he told her not to move, reaching out to brush a flower petal from her hair. His statuesque form leaned closer, his sculpted chest on full display. In that moment, her mind went blank. On pure impulse, she reached out and patted his chest. Her fingers sank into solid muscle and a jolt through her. This felt way too real for a game character. She gave a little squeeze, just to be sure. The table fell into a stunned silence. Blushing furiously, Molly snatched her hand back, stammering an apology for being so rude. Osho exploded, calling her a pervert. His face twisted with rage, accusing her of trying to seduce Ilier now that she couldn't have the crown prince. He snarled that he'd almost forgotten how much he hated her. Molly's playful demeanor vanished. Why was he so hostile? This was their first real conversation. Because you hurt Rutas, he screamed. Molly's eyes turned cold. If we're being specific, she countered, Rutas stole my fiancé. Osho spat that she had everything, while it was poor and pitiful. Why couldn't she just let the poor girl have what she wants? Molly's voice was dangerously low. Why must I? Osho declared there was no first come, first served love, but Ilier's cool voice cut him off. You've lost, he said, and Osho's card, get in the way, vanished. Defeated, Osho bitterly remarked how easy it must be for the heroine, always forgiven. Li's patience snapped. And what about him? Why was he so obsessed with Rutas? He proudly declared that Rutas loved him. Molly burst into laughter, informing him that his precious Rutas was dating 2 other men before him. She mocked his generosity, asking if Rutas' love was so cheap she could ration it out to 3 men at once. Or perhaps he had a fetish for watching her with other men? That was the final straw. Osho slammed his fist on the table, roaring for her to shut up. She looked at him with cold pity, telling him he could be happy with someone else. His eyes filled with a desperate madness. He lunged for a decorative sword on the wall, his voice cracking as he screamed that it had to be Rutas. He didn't want anyone else. He swung the blade wildly at Molly. The world slowed to a crawl as the steel arsed towards her, only to be stopped by a bare hand. Ilier stood before her, a human shield, his grip on the blade. Why must it be her? He demanded of Osho. With tears streaming down his face, Osho cried out, because I love her. At that moment, his final card, touch earlobe, popped. He had lost. Molly's voice was devoid of emotion. You're way more dogged about love than I am. The fight drained out of Osho completely. The sword clanged against the marble floor. He stared at his trembling hands, broken and confused, whispering, why did I do that? And in a final hilarious turn of events, a flustered Ilier was later seen ordering his bunny maid to throw away all his revealing clothes, clearly embarrassed by Molly's earlier appreciation. A beautiful villainess with cool, assessing eyes holds a handsome, dark-haired boy in her arms, a possessive yet tender gesture that hints at a dangerous and intoxicating romance to come. But for now, our story begins not with romance, but with utter defeat. The cat-eared boy Osho slams his head onto the polished table, groaning in frustration. He'd lost again. He was so close. Across from him, the villainous Molly watches with an amused, almost bored expression, pointing out that this makes it his 36th loss in just a few days. Why can't he manage to win even once? He despairs. He pushes himself up, ready to go again, but she calmly announces she's taking a break. Osho erupts, exclaiming that they've been playing for 4 or 5 hours straight. His beautiful golden eyes shimmer with unshed tears as he admits with a blush that he just hasn't beaten her yet. The sight is so adorable it's a critical strike to Molly's heart, but she sees an opening. This is a good opportunity. She'll play another round with him, but only if he answers her question first. Why does everyone care so much? Osho looks confused. If she doesn't know, how should he know? From his perspective, it felt like everyone just started hating her for no reason at all. Molly leans forward, a sly smile on her face, making her crystal clear. Answer her and she'll play with him. Osho's golden eyes narrow in thought. It's because you killed that cat, he says finally. Molly is taken aback. Cat? What cat? He explains that it was before Rutas and he got together. He doesn't really care for human problems, so he doesn't know all the details. Molly's mind reels. Something isn't right. She never wrote a scenario like that. Besides, she has no memory of killing any cats. When did supposedly happen? Osho thinks for a moment, guessing it was about 2 months ago. Molly's emerald eyes flash with sudden, chilling clarity. 2 months ago. That was right after the story started. At that point, the character of Molly hadn't even made her appearance in the game yet, so how could she have possibly killed a cat? A new, sinister plot was unfolding, one she hadn't written. Seeing his chance, Osho switches back to his cute and polite Sona, asking if they can play now. Molly muses aloud, asking if he likes games that much. He eagerly confirms it, adding that Gomoku has become incredibly popular among the servants. She notes that the Don't Do This challenge is also a big hit, a strange glint in her eye. As Osho looks on in confusion, Molly suddenly haves to discuss something with Ilier. Before Osho can even react, the doors open. The original heroine, Rutas, peeks in with a dazzling smile, cheerfully telling him he should go home before slamming the door in his face. Osho is left standing alone, completely stunned. Later, Molly finds the enigmatic Ilier lounging in a sun-drenched field of flowers, a book covering his handsome face. He lazily asks what she wants. She beams, announcing a very profitable business idea, wanting him as her partner. Without even looking at her, he turns over, coolly stating he doesn't need money. Molly's cheerful facade crumbles into internal rage. But I need money, she screams in her head. Damn you rich people. Her mind races with desperation. If her mission fails, she needs an escape fund to survive. The atmosphere shifts in an instant as Ilier's voice cuts through the air, low and dangerous. Then what about her sister's illness? Molly's blood's cold. Don't you dare use my sister to threaten me, she snarls. But it's too late. In a blur of motion, he's on top of her, his hand closing on her throat with suffocating pressure. He accuses her of prolonging his sister's treatment on purpose, his eyes blazing with fury. Tell me the complete prescription right now, or I'll kill you. But Molly is no damsel in distress. Then do it, she challenges, her voice steady despite the hand at her neck. Kill me. But I'll take the cure for your sister to my grave. He hisses that he'll torture it out of her, make her wish she was dead. She smirks, retorting that she'll just give him a false prescription and make him wish he was dead. He sees, his grip tightening. You crazy woman. Yet her gaze doesn't waver. She's not delaying the treatment, she explains calmly. Because what his sister has isn't an illness, it's a curse. Ilier freezes, shock overriding his rage. Molly presses her advantage, explaining that it can only be lifted by a specific method during the Blood Wolf moon. For now, their only goal is to keep his sister alive. Lying beneath him, she holds all the power. Only I know how to save your little sister, she whispers, her voice a silken trap. A triumphant, dangerous smile spreads across her lips. That's why she concludes you have to obey me. Meanwhile, back at the academy, Osho is eagerly anticipating his next game with Molly. But instead of Molly, he's cornered by the lovely Rutas, who wonders where he's been for the past few days. He tries her off, saying he's busy, but she won't be deterred, her two powerful male friends glaring at him with open disdain. She grabs his arm, stopping him from leaving. Her expression fills with concern as she asks if he's not feeling well. Insists he's fine. When she presses him about where he's been, he panics, blurting out a lie about playing games with Prince Ilier because he can't possibly be with Molly. Taking his hand, Rutas' face lights up. She missed his, suggesting they go on a date to his favorite dessert shop. Her sweet invitation turns sour when she mentions that the crown prince, Sanlin, is waiting for them. Osho pulls his hand back. Rutas' face falls, her eyes welling with tears. Is it because you want to play games with Ilier? She asks, her voice trembling. Then her demeanor shifts, becoming intense and possessive as she leans in close. Games are fun, her breath ghosting over his skin, but I think you'd rather go on a date with me, right? And so Osho finds himself trapped on a date, watching the public fawn of Rutas and the crown prince, Sanlin, remarking what a feast for the eyes they are. Sanlin smiles at Rutas, happy that everyone finally accepts her. She beams, relieved to no longer be hated. As Sanlin lovingly feeds her a piece of cake, Osho's in the background, a miserable third wheel, wondering he got dragged into this. He watches the intimate gesture, a pang of something he can't name twisting in his gut. They look so happy together. The scene is a painful reminder of his own conflicted feelings. Molly's words echo in his mind, questioning why he insists on hurting himself over Rutas when he could be happy with someone else. Why must it be her? What kind of love do you truly want? Pulled back to the present, he finds Rutas holding a strawberry to his lips, asking what he's thinking about. He just stares, lost in thought, prompting Sunlin to ask if he's unwell. Seizing the excuse, Osho stands, declaring he's not feeling well and is leaving. Sunlin's friendly drops, replaced by a cold threat. Hey, he calls out, reminding Osho he only tolerates him because he's useful to Ilier. Don't be too greedy. Osho finally snaps. He fires back, mocking the prince for being affectionate with another woman right after calling off his own engagement. Sunlin slams the table in fury, but Rutas cuts in, asking why they're arguing. She turns her tear-filled eyes on Osho. All I want is for you to be happy, she whispers, and the sight of her beside the prince solidifies his resolve. This is it. He has to end this misguided relationship now. He opens his mouth, his heart pounding, ready to finally say the words, to break up with her. He can't. He runs. Why couldn't I say it? He screams internally as he flees the cafe. The pain in his chest is unbearable. What should I do? One name, one face cuts through his agony. Molly, I want to see you. A vision of her confident smile fills his mind, a beacon in his confusion. Tell me, he begs the empty air, his heart shattering. What in the world should I do? The atmosphere in the sun-drenched room was thick with negotiation as the statuesque, silver-haired prince stared down at her, his expression unreadable. So, she was proposing to publish table games in his name? That was right, she explained with a sweet, almost cloying smile. It would be difficult for the Demon King to find craftsmen, and besides, her own reputation among the students was so wretched that no one would buy it if she published it herself. But it was a gentle story if the product was tied to the beloved prince of the demon race. He was very popular among the girls. The prince's icy gaze didn't waver. He simply told her to get to the point. Unfazed, she beamed, holding up 3 fingers. She would graciously give up, she declared, but in the final profit split she would take 7 and he would only get 3. A dangerous glint appeared in his eyes. Wasn't that a little out of place, he challenged, his voice dangerously low. Didn't she just say yesterday she didn't miss money? Shamelessly weaponizing her cuteness, she leaned in, patting his arm with a cheerful laugh, chiding him getting caught up on such a small gain. He crossed his arms, a sigh escaping his lips, clearly fighting a losing battle against her audacity. Her eyes sparkled with triumph. He accepted. He repeated his earlier question, a hint of resignation in his voice, still thinking her demand was out of place. Just as about to celebrate her victory, the door slammed open with a deafening crash. Osho was there, his expression stormy. She greeted him cheerfully, but he was in no mood for pleasantries. He wanted to know where Ariel was. Molly calmly explained she had very important things to do with Ariel these days and couldn't play with him. She gestured to the table, suggesting he play board games with Ludas instead. The name was a lit fuse. Osho's face contorted with rage. What was she saying? His golden eyes blazed with fury, asking why Ludas, of all people, was his girlfriend. What was she playing at? They had just broken up a few days ago, and now she was trying to push them back together. In a fit of anger, he swiped the box of cards from her hand, sending them scattering across the floor like fallen leaves. The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by his ragged breaths. Was it fun, he snarled, his voice dripping with venom, to play with him like this? Without another word, he turned on his heel, stalking out of the room and leaving a stunned Molly in his wake. The heavy door slammed shut, echoing the turmoil in the room. Lucis's piercing blue eyes landed on her. Was she going to catch up to him? Molly was utterly bewildered. She wasn't a punching bag. She had no idea why he was so mad, so why should she be the one to chase him and apologize? The boy was clearly just going through puberty. She'd let him calm down for a few days. The rain began to fall outside. Her mind shifted back to what was truly important, making money. A few days later, Lucius entered her room to find her diligently working. His attendant mentioned that Osho had come by earlier, probably to Ludas. He sat down, his presence filling the room, and asked if the sample was ready. His attendant continued, clarifying that Osho hadn't found Ludas. Witnesses had seen Osho with Ludas before he came looking for her. Apparently all 3 of them had fought, and Osho had been the first to leave. Lucius's gaze sharpened with suspicion. Why had she been so active lately, taking the initiative to ask about Osho? He told her not to get him wrong. He just wanted her to achieve her goals as soon as possible so she could focus on treating his sister. Molly realized with a sigh that he was still angry about that day. She tried to placate him, saying she hadn't expected her plan to go so well, but unexpectedly Osho had fought with them. It seemed her previous advice was still working wonders. Now was the perfect time, she thought, when Osho was at his most confused and vulnerable. Lucius questioned her timing. It was already night. A smile played on her lips. Night, she explained, is when people are most vulnerable. It was time to go pick up their little kitten. Invisibility magic truly was a useful tool, allowing them to slip unseen into the boys' dormitory. As they walked the silent halls, a small gift box on the floor caught Molly's eye. It was a letter from Ludas, asking what was wrong and if Osho could talk to her. How strange, Molly mused. How did she manage to leave this in the boys' dorm? Lucius's instincts flared. Something wasn't right. He pushed open the door to Osho's room without a second thought. The sight that greeted them was one of utter disarray. What on earth happened? Had Osho gotten into a fight with someone? No, Molly realized there were no traces of a struggle. It seemed Osho had trashed his own room. Her gaze drifted to the window, where the rain continued its relentless downpour. Lucius let out a small, startled noise, drawing her attention. Outside, standing under a pink umbrella amidst the flowers, was Ludas. It was 11 p.m. and she was just standing there, waiting. Lucius noted that she'd been coming every day for the past few days, assuming Osho was still in his room. Molly shuddered. That was just plain scale. Lucius, ever the pragmatist, wondered if girls found that sort of thing romantic, mentioning that his little sister's novels often had scenarios like this. Molly looked at him in horror and told him to please give his little sister some proper novels to read. Finally, Ludas turned and left, her silhouette fading into the rainy night. Molly sighed. Ludas's personality was far more persistent than in the original story. But if Osho wasn't in his room, then where could he be? A new determination hardened her emerald eyes. They had to go look for him. Lucius asked if she had any idea where he could be. She nodded grimly. If her hunch was correct, she knew exactly where to find him. Lucius's hand shot out, grabbing her arm, his brilliant blue eyes searching hers for an answer she couldn't give. They ran out into the storm, the rain soaking their cloaks as Molly desperately called Osho's name into the wind. So, she pushed through the wet foliage, remembering a key detail from the story. According to his character profile, Osho always came to this garden when he was in a bad mood. The rain lashed against her face, but she pressed on. And then she saw him. It was Osho curled up amongst the bushes, but he was in his cat form. Her heart plummeted into her stomach. He only turned back into a cat when he was extremely weak, in life-threatening danger. It had only happened once in the entire original story. How could things have escalated this far? Before she could move, a hand clamped down on her arm, yanking her back with surprising force. Lucius's face was inches from hers, his expression colder than the winter rain. How did she know so much about Osho? Not only his secret hiding spot, but also his cat form. He connected the dots with terrifying speed. She knew about his sister's illness, too. The human Molly couldn't possibly know these things. His voice was a low growl as he demanded the truth, his eyes boring into hers. Who in the world was she? Oh no. A cold dread washed over her. The demon clan's original forms were a secret kept from all humans. The real Molly wasn't supposed to know any of this. Panic seized her. Should she tell him she transmigrated? Would he even believe such an insane story? If he told other humans she wasn't the real Molly, would she be able to complete her mission? Would Molly's parents forgive her for taking over their daughter's body? Would she die? Why was the cold, distant crown prince of the demon clan suddenly so interested in these things? But as she looked at him, truly looked at him, she saw past the anger. She saw the fear and desperation swirling in his beautiful, stormy eyes, and in that moment, she made a decision. Her expression softened, and she met his gaze without flinching. "I want to trust you," she whispered, her barely audible over the rain. Luce's harsh facade crumbled, revealing a raw vulnerability that broke her heart. His voice was a choked plea. "So, tell me," he begged, "why do you know so much about us?" The doctor assured them he should be fine. He'd wake up after a short rest. However, something was strange. There seemed to be a magic power she'd never seen before inside him, extremely faint and difficult to detect. Molly's heart skipped a beat, her green eyes hardening with worry. This scenario wasn't in the original story either. She had to know more, asking if the doctor could perceive what type of magic it was. The doctor pushed up her glasses, explaining that it was too faint to be certain, but it felt like a kind of ancient magic. A chilling thought crossed Molly's mind. Could this mysterious magic be the reason Osho collapsed? The doctor couldn't rule out the possibility, and with a solemn nod, Molly accepted the grim news. You had been silent this whole time, dismissed the doctor with a cold wave of his hand. As the doctor left, his piercing blue eyes filled with a deep, haunting regret. He should have come looking sooner. This was his fault. He turned his gaze to Molly, who stood vigilantly by the bedside. It was getting late, he said, his voice low, asking if she wanted to rest. But Molly shook her head, her resolve firm. She was fine. She would stay here to accompany Osho. With a curt, "All right," Ilier turned and left. Molly watched his lonely retreat down the hall, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Ilier leaned against the door, lost in a painful memory. He remembered his own cruel words echoing back at him, words he had spat at her in the pouring rain. He told her their relationship was merely transactional, that she had no right to intervene in his private affairs. All she needed to know was that he could save her younger sister. The memory was a dagger to his heart, his eyes closing in self-loathing. He walked down the long, empty corridor, a solitary figure swallowed by the gilded cage he'd built around himself. Back in the room, a weak sound broke the silence. A hand twitched from under the covers. "Molly," Osho whispered, his voice raspy. Molly's head snapped up, her eyes wide with relief. "You're awake," she cried, rushing to his side. "Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Osho's golden eyes fluttered open, hazy and confused. "Where am I?" he asked. "You're in Ilier's mansion," she explained gently. He clutched his head, memories flooding back in a painful rush. He remembered now. He wanted to break up with Ludas. He had to go tell her. A sharp pain shot through his chest, his heart thumping violently. A sudden, violent cough racked his body, and to Molly's horror, blood splattered from his lips. "Are you okay?" Screamed. Her mind raced in a panic. The doctor said he was fine. Was he vomiting blood? It had to be that ancient magic. "I'll go call the doctor," she yelled, turning to flee. But a weak hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. "Don't go," Osho pleaded, his voice fragile and desperate. "Don't leave me alone." He looked away, ashamed. He was sorry. He had tried to break up with Ludas, but every time he opened his mouth, his heart ached with unbearable pain. He felt so useless. He even got angry at her. He was so sorry. Molly's expression softened, all her panic melting into gentle sympathy. "Do you want to play Gomoku?" she asked softly. "Or maybe Mahjong or Uno?" Osho just stared at her, utterly bewildered. She gave him a small, radiant smile. She would give him a special benefit, she declared. He could play for as long as he wanted. She would stay and play until he had forgotten all the pain. He warned her they might be playing for a very long time. Molly's smile never faltered. "It's fine," she said, voice like a balm to his wounded soul. "You still have a lot of time." She held her hand up, a promise shining in her brilliant green eyes. "This amount of time is enough for you to forget one person." He was mesmerized. "Then to accompany me?" He whispered, his voice thick with emotion. She reached out, her fingers gently tilting his chin up. "Does it hurt?" "Very much," he confessed, his voice breaking. He leaned into her hutch, pressing his cheek against her soft palm and closing his eyes as if she were his only salvation. "But when you're by my side, doesn't seem to hurt that much anymore." A single tear escaped his eye. He knew it now. If it was her, she would never put him through such pain. "Molly," he began, his heart on his sleeve, ready to confess everything. But just as the words were about to leave his lips, she leaned in close, placing a delicate finger on them. "Shh," she whispered, her eyes locking with his. She couldn't promise him anything, not here, not now. If she said yes to Osho, she would be no different from Ludas, the woman who had tormented him. And if she followed that path, the tragic ending where everyone was wiped out might not change at all. More than that, she carried a secret that separated them more than in any rival ever had. One day, she would be leaving this world for good. Osho's shoulders slumped, as if he could read her thoughts. "I know," he murmured, his gaze falling. He still heshily broken up with Ludas. The current him had no right to tell her these things. He was sorry. Suddenly, a sharp smack echoed in the room as Molly flicked him right on the forehead. She grinned, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "I've heard your apologies all night. When did you become so easily shaken?" Osho rubbed the sore spot, looking utterly dumbfounded. "Let's make an exchange," she proposed. She would wait for him for the day he was qualified to say those words to her. But in return, if she ever did something that made him mad, he had to forgive her once, no matter what. A slow smile spread across his face. What a strange condition. From now on, they were partners, she declared, holding out her pinky. He sealed the deal, hooking his own on hers. Yeah, 2 days later, a fully recovered Osho returned to school. Molly stood on a sun-drenched balcony, lost in thought. She gazed down at her hand, a faint blush dusting her cheeks. The ghost of his touch, the memory of his lips against her palm, still lingered. Goodness, even if this was an otome game, Osho was just too good at flirting. It was hard for a 20-year-old girl to calm. "Stay calm," she shook her head. "Trying to in-game characters, there's no future for us." Her self-pep talk was violently interrupted. "Molly," furious voice roared. She turned to find Osho storming towards her. He shoved a stack of glossy photos into her face. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, his face bright red. Molly's eyes widened as she saw the pictures. Osho draped seductively over red roses. Osho with his shirt falling off his shoulder. Osho with cat ears. "Why do all the girls in school have these pictures of me?" he wailed. Molly simply plucked one from the stack, admiring her handiwork. "These turned out pretty good," she commented coolly. Osho stared at her, absolutely flabbergasted. "Those are to promote our board game," she explained with a dazzling smile. "After including your photos, our sales doubled. Of course you'll be compensated." "Molly!" he sputtered. But she just put a finger to her lips. "You promised me," she chirped, the realization hit him like a lightning bolt. "So that promise was for this?" His soul visibly left his body as he collapsed to his knees. "It's over. My reputation is gone." Molly leaned down, her smile positively wicked. "I've heard you've become very popular among the human girls. Congrats." "I don't want thaw yet," he shrieked. Then his entire demeanor shifted. He grabbed her hand, his voice dropping to a low, intense murmur. "Such a waste. You clearly know that I only want your attention." He pressed her hand to his lips, his golden eyes burning with a desperate sincerity. But their moment was shattered. The balcony swung open to reveal Ilier, his handsome face a mask of pure fury. His icy blue eyes were narrowed, a murderous aura radiating from him as he took in the scene. He glared at them from the doorway, his presence suffocating. Osho looked up, confused by the sudden killing intent. "Ah, your highness, what's wrong with him? Why does he look so mad?" "Did you two fight?" he asked Molly. Molly glanced at Ilier's thunderous expression without a hint of fear. "Probably," she said with a casual shrug. With the 2-week confinement finally over, the grand gates of the academy beckoned. The long-awaited campus life was about to begin, and somewhere, Ilier was still over the chest window Molly had sneakily removed from his uniform design. The whispers followed her down the hall like a plague, sharp and cruel, a constant reminder of her precarious position. Why was she back in class? Didn't she have any shame? The Crown Prince was far too kind to a wretch like her. Molly sighed, her chin resting in her hand as she gazed out the window, the endless rumors a dull ache in her mind. But a small smile played on her lips as she overheard a different conversation nearby. Students were buzzing about the new board games, Gomoku and Mahjong, the very ones she had introduced from her world. It seemed her little business venture was a roaring success, a small victory in this chaotic new life. Ilier might still be furious, but at least she was getting paid, her earnings carefully tucked away for her grand escape plan. The god's warning echoed in her memory. For failure, to be executed just like the original Molly. Did that mean a public execution? A death at the hands of the very people she was meant to rule? An image of a hangman's noose flashed in her mind, cold and terrifying. If execution was the price of failure, then she would simply not fail. She would escape before any trial could take place, which meant she needed money, a lot of it, disappear completely. It was always best to prepare for the worst. Suddenly, a voice shattered her thoughts, screaming her name. Molly! Goodness, her popularity was really soaring these days. The voice grew closer, thick with accusation. Where had she locked Ludas this time? Before she could even process the question, a devastatingly handsome man with flowing brown slammed his hands on her desk, his eyes burning with rage. He was Shide, the school's heartthrob, and he looked ready to throttle her. He demanded to know where Ludas was, his voice a low growl. Molly blinked, utterly bewildered. Why would she possibly know? He sneered, revealing that Ludas had been missing all afternoon, and who else could be the culprit but the infamous villainess Molly? Her eyes widened in disbelief. Or perhaps he mused cruelly, Ludas was hiding simply because she couldn't bear the sight of him. Of course, a man like Chide, with his statuesque build and godlike features, couldn't fathom being rejected. He even had a dedicated fan base, for heaven's sake. That's impossible, he scoffed, his pride wounded. Molly found herself sizing him up. Ilier was definitely more handsome, but Chide, he seemed far more approachable, more touchable. Her silent appraisal only infuriated him further. He leaned in close, his handsome face contorted with impatience. Are you speechless? Just tell the truth already. His proximity was suffocating, his anger palpable. Molly leaned back, a smirk gracing her lips. How is it impossible? She shot back, her voice with sarcasm. There aren't many people in this world quite as dramatic as yourself. You? He began to roar, his face flushing with anger, but he was cut off by a frantic shout from the doorway. Ludas has been found. Both of them whipped their heads around, their expressions a mixture of shock and confusion. The scene they arrived at was chaos. A small crowd had gathered around an open locker, where Ludas was being pulled out, sobbing hysterically. Shide immediately rushed to her side, wrapping her in a protective embrace as she trembled. It was locked from the outside. Someone in the crowd murmured, the word sending a fresh wave of suspicion rippling through the students. There's no way she did it herself, another added. Could there be other bullies targeting Ludas? But all eyes inevitably landed on Molly. She's getting more wicked, they whispered, their gazes like daggers. The greenhouse was too kind for her. She should be stuffed in a luggage bag. Let her taste her own medicine. The venom in their voices was startling. Was this the kind of hatred the original Molly faced every single day? Through her tears, Ludas clutched Shide's shirt. Wait, she whispered, her voice barely audible. It wasn't Molly. Shide's expression softened as he looked down at her. Did you see who did it? Ludas shook her head, tears streaming down her face. She was knocked out right after being kidnapped. She didn't get a good look. Shide's anger returned, but this time it was directed at Ludas's kindness. You kind, he exclaimed. You're the victim. Why are you defending her? Molly could only sigh inaudibly. She'd been telling them it wasn't her from the start, but would anyone believe her? A sly, determined glint entered her eyes. She turned her gaze to the one person, her voice cutting through the noise. Osho, you believe me, don't you? Osho stared back, his golden eyes unreadable, and a shiver went down Molly's spine. There was something deeply unsettling about him. She felt the weight of their collective judgment pressing down, isolating her in a sea of hostile faces. This whole world has gone mad. Enough. She took a confident step forward, the click of her heel echoing in the tense silence. Since it's come to this, let's settle it. You all claim I did it, but where is your proof? Shide sneered back, you've done it before. Who else could it be? You? His lips twisted into a cruel smirk as he leaned in. In fact, do you have proof that it was? His accusation was wild and possessive. He suspected she hid Ludas because she wanted the girl all to herself, planning to imprison her after school. Molly's green eyes narrowed in dangerous slits, her lips curling into a predatory smile. An interesting theory, she purred, flipping his absurd logic got him. But perhaps someone found Ludas before you could complete your plan, so you had no choice but to pin the blame on me. He sputtered, his face paling. There's no way I'd do something so wretched. He choked out, utterly scandalized. Well then, who knows? She countered, her gaze sharp as a shard of glass. Do you have proof it wasn't you? She threw his own question back at him, watching with satisfaction as he froze, completely speechless. In one swift motion, she grabbed the front of his shirt, yanking him forward. Their faces were mere inches apart, the air crackling with tension. Anyone can slander another person, she hissed, her voice low and intense. Her eyes blazed with righteous fury. Listen carefully. Wasn't. With a final shove, she pushed him away. And I can prove it. Just the words left her lips. A clear voice from the crowd rang out. It wasn't Molly's doing. As she pushed him, her hand slid across the firm plane of his chest. A tiny, wicked thought flashed through her mind. She'd just assaulted him, and it felt good. A girl with long, twin-tailed hair stepped out from the crowd, her expression serious. I can attest to it. Molly was in class the entire time. She hasn't gone anywhere. All her mates saw her. It was Karma, the original Molly's one and only true friend. The one who would have defended her to the bitter end. The crowd grumbled, telling Karma not to shield such a wretched person, but Karma ignored them, grabbing Molly's hand. "Let's go," she said, pulling away from the toxic scene. Molly's heart skipped a beat. Karma's loyalty hadn't wavered. She was still on Molly's side, but then why hadn't she spoken up sooner? Later, under the dappled sunlight of a quiet courtyard, Molly turned to thank her friend. Karma stopped abruptly, her back still turned. "Well," she began, her voice hesitant. The air grew heavy, thick with an unspoken tension. In a flash, Karma spun around, her hand shooting out to grab Molly's wrist in an iron grip. Her eyes, sharp and piercing, bored into Molly's soul as she leaned in close. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice a low, danger whisper. "You're not Molly." Molly's heart hammered against her ribs. Badump, badump. How could she have known? Was their bond as best friends so strong that she could sense the change? How could she possibly explain that she was an imposter in her best friend's body? The original Molly was prickly and withdrawn. She would never have let anyone this close. Just as panic began to set in, a bird's cry echoed through the garden. "Molly." A messenger bird swooped down, a scroll tied to its leg. "You are to head to the principal's office immediately." Seizing the opportunity, Molly pulled her hand free. "I don't know what you're talking, Karma. Remember, you're Molly right now," she said, her voice deliberately firm, before turning on her heel. "I need to go." She left Karma standing alone, a storm of suspicion brewing in her eyes. One crisis after another, Molly thought as she hurried down the corridor. What now? She knocked and pushed the grand office doors open, a sense of dread pooling in her stomach. Inside sat not only the principal but her father, the Duke, his presence as cold and imposing as ever. She bowed deeply. "Father." The Duke wasted no time. He demanded, his voice iced. "Do you want to break engagement?" Her brother chimed in, explaining it was because the crown prince's heart belonged to another. Molly began to explain that she had no place to interfere, but her father cut her off with a withering glare. "You're going to give up your position as the future crown princess for such a small matter." A small matter? This annulment was the very event that erased her family. Her father's words were a heavy weight. She was born to be the glory of their family, to become the queen. "Molly Hermenegildo," he said, his voice a steely command, "you will never disappoint me." As her father swept out of the office, the door opened again. It was the crown prince. He stepped inside, his expression unreadable. "Don't worry," he said softly, "I have no thoughts of annulling our engagement." Molly wanted to scream. Fuck! This world should just burn to the ground. To hell with the protagonist, she was just going to save her money and run. "Wait," Ilier said, stopping her before she could leave. He knew perfectly well that if the engagement was cancelled, her family would disown her. His words dripped with misguided concern. Her emerald eyes flashed with fury. "So, are you pitying me?" He looked away, unable to meet her gaze. He couldn't give her love, he admitted, but he could guarantee safety, a life of luxury. The sheer hypocrisy of it made her sick. Wasn't also her suffering his fault to begin with? "No," she said, voice dangerously quiet. "You can't. Do you have any idea how difficult life is for a commoner? For most people, living is a daily struggle. Love is a luxury they can't afford." She looked at this pampered prince with utter contempt. "Your Highness, do you understand the sufferings of your people? You're nothing but a hypocrite." He was stunned into silence. "What do you feel towards me?" she pressed, her voice dripping with scorn. "This pity of yours is nothing but your own selfish arrogance." She stood tall, her presence more regal than his. "Even without the duchy, without the title of your fiancé, I would still be better than you." Her words were a final, devastating blow. "That's why you should carry the guilt you feel for me for the rest of your life." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving him to drown in his own inadequacy. As our heroine stepped through the grand, ornate doors, a shocked voice cried out from behind her, demanding to know who on earth these people were. A girl with pink hair and an overly sweet smile stepped forward, her voice dripping with false concern as she cooed a greeting. She asked about Molly's health, a question that immediately put our girl on high alert. Molly's eyes narrowed. This sudden kindness felt like a carefully laid trap. "She was fine," she replied coolly. "Why the sudden interest?" The girls held firm, explaining how relieved she was, because Molly had scared her half to death when she supposedly jumped to the lake to kill herself. The words hit Molly like a physical blow. "Jumped into the lake?" The girl continued her award-winning performance, lamenting that she'd caught a fever for days from this shock. But then her voice turned cold, her eyes losing their sparkle and gaining a sharp, piercing edge. "It feels like you've completely forgotten about it," she accused. The air grew thick with tension. It was as if she had become a completely different person. The girl's final accusation hung in the air, a blade aimed at Molly's greatest secret. "That's why I'm thinking you're not Molly, are you?" From the side, the statuesque, silver-haired man watched their exchange, his handsome face an unreadable mask. His voice was a low rumble, stating coolly that it seemed someone had come looking for her. With a triumphant smirk, the pink-haired girl turned to leave, purring while she had many questions. They could talk next time. Her retreat left Molly fuming, trapped with the intimidating presence looming just behind her. Molly's mind raced, her green eyes flashing with a sudden, terrible understanding. So that was it. The reason she had transmigrated into this body was because the original Molly had jumped into that lake. Suddenly a hand shot out, grabbing her with bruising force. The silver-haired man's face was contorted with rage and desperation. "Ever since she jumped into the lake," he snarled, "his sister's health has deteriorated." "What on earth happened that night?" he demanded, his raw cry of anguish, as he how much this strange girl knew. "Molly..." he shouted, his face inches from hers, the sheer panic in his eyes startling her into silence. She stared back, utterly bewildered by his outburst. What was he even talking about? His voice cracked. My sister fell into a coma again today. He pleaded with her, his eyes begging for an answer, asking if she knew how to help. Molly's heart plummeted. Impossible, she thought, her mind reeling. She was the one who set the prescription. Without thinking, she grabbed his sleeve, her voice with an authority that surprised them both. It's impossible for her health to get worse. He stared down at her, suspicion clouding his desperate features. Why was she making that face? He pressed closer, his voice low and dangerous. You know about my sister's illness, don't you? What'd that girl mean just now? She tried to back away, but he was relentless, cornering her against the wall. His eyes, as beautiful and cold as sapphires, bore into her very soul. Are you really not Molly? The whispered question held the weight of an executioner's axe. Then who exactly are you? He demanded. What was your person approaching me? Her mind was a chaotic storm. Everything was spiraling out of her control, twisting the plot as she knew so well. She couldn't tell him now, she insisted, pushing aside her panic. Take me to your sister, she commanded, grabbing his arm. Once I see her symptoms, but he violently snatched his arm away, his face a mask of betrayal. How long do you plan on lying? He snarled. You were also sent by them, weren't you? To force me. Molly stared at him, completely lost. Wait, what was he talking about? His glare was a wall of ice she couldn't break through. He turned his back at the finality of the gesture like a door slammed. I won't kill you, he said, voice void of all emotion. So don't ever show up in front of me again. The words were a final, chilling dismissal. Trust me, she cried out, her voice desperate. He spun back around, his expression tortured. How can I trust you? He roared. How could he trust someone when he didn't even know her true identity? A heavy silence descended between them. His jaw clenched, his profile as sharp and unforgiving as carved marble. I don't wish to see you again, he stated, each word a final nail in the coffin. And with that, he walked away, leaving her utterly alone. To understand his paranoia, we must delve into the tragic story of a young prince named Ilier, being fitted for a crown he never wanted. His life began in sorrow. Not long after his sister was born, their mother passed away. On her deathbed, she whispered her only wish was to live an ordinary life, apologizing that she could no longer protect them. Young Ilier could only weep, the light left her eyes. At her funeral, no one came. It was just him, a small boy in black holding his infant sister. They were utterly alone, two unloved children left behind by the world. He knew then that no one would ever care about them. Years later, when his sister fell gravely ill, a powerful ability awakened him. But this power came at a price. To save her, he became the king's weapon, completing bloody tasks that stained his soul. His skill was praised as a once-in-a-thousand-year genius, and the king declared him crown prince. But Ilier knew it was all just a test. His terrified little sister would hide behind him, her only shield in the suffocating darkness of the imperial castle. He would look down at her and promise to find a cure, no matter the cost. However, even after becoming crown prince, he searched the entire demon clan and found nothing. He couldn't save her, and the title became a meaningless burden. He was sent to a royal academy, a gilded cage to imprison him while his sister wasted away. He was trapped in a pitch-black darkness, unable to protect the only person he loved. But then, a voice cut through his despair. I know how to save your sister. It was her, the strange girl with the confident green eyes. And miraculously, his sister's condition began to improve. For the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope. If maybe, just maybe, he could trust her a little. But the hope shattered like glass. A memory of a dark, stormy night surfaced where he confronted her, demanding to know how she knew secrets only demons should know. He wanted to trust her so badly. But a terrifying thought took root. What if she was an assassin sent to kill his sister? Who are you? He had pleaded. The fleeting hope she offered was like a beautiful butterfly on a rose, always flying away just as he reached for it. Back in his chambers, the moonlight illuminated his sculpted form as he brooded by the window, telling himself he shouldn't trust so easily. Suddenly, a shrill alarm shattered the night. The break-in alarm. Oh no, Hyenan. A single thought screamed in his mind as he bolted towards her room. But when he burst in, he was met with a bewildering sight. The story's original heroine standing by his sister's bed in a halo of light. I've found a way to cure your sister, she announced with an angelic smile. Ilier froze, his mind in turmoil. What should I do? He stood there, between two mysterious women, his thoughts drifting back to Molly's face so close to his. Can I really trust you? His heart cried out. Can I depend on you just a little? The silver-haired prince sat with an icy indifference as the crown was placed upon his head, his gaze as cold and sharp as a shard of glass. In a lavishly decorated room, that same coldness was directed at Molly as Ilier stood before her, his perfectly abs glistening in the dim light, his voice a low growl telling her to leave. He couldn't trust her anymore, not after everything that happened. But Molly stood her ground, her green eyes shining with newfound determination. It didn't matter if he trusted her or not, she declared with a conviction that made him pause. In 3 weeks, she swore she would bring him the medicine to cure his sister. His blue eyes, a tempest of suspicion and desperation, narrowed at her words. He lunged forward, his strong hand closing around her delicate wrist, his grip painfully tight. Did she make these kinds of empty promises to everyone? He demanded, his voice laced with the agony of a brother on the brink of despair. He warned her not to dangle hope in front of him only to snatch it away. Unfazed, she revealed her plan. In the king's treasure vault, there was a magic artifact, a relic capable of freezing time for a person's body, preventing his sister's condition from worsening. He stared dumbfounded. He'd never heard of such a thing. Of course not, she said, her tone maddeningly calm. It was a precious object the king kept for himself to maintain his eternal youth, a magnificent clock-like device whose existence was a secret known only to the king and his successor. There were only 3 in the entire human kingdom. The gears in his mind turned, suspicion warring with a sliver of hope. Then how did she know? A mysterious smile played on her lips as she closed the distance between them, her aura suddenly immense and powerful. The air grew thick with a pressure he couldn't comprehend. "'Cause," she whispered, she knew everything about this world. Whether it was the secrets of the demon clan, the inner workings of the humans, his own deepest fears, or even the girl named Molly, she knew it all. She slammed a hand against the wall, trapping him, her confidence leaving him utterly breathless. Who was she? He stammered, his mind reeling. She leaned in closer, her gaze pinning him in place. He shouldn't ask. After all, if she truly wanted to harm him, his sister would have been dead long ago. She admitted things were progressing a little differently than she remembered, but she vowed to get everything back on the right track. He was still struggling to process her words, but one question cut through the haze. Even if this artifact existed, how could she possibly obtain it? Her smile was sly and brilliant. The school sports day was coming up, and tradition dictated that the MVP would be granted a single wish by the king himself. His eyes widened in horror. She was going to participate in that brutal competition? That's right, she confirmed, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. He started to protest, his face etched with worry for her safety, but she knew what he was thinking. She knew it was a grueling 5-day competition where students were gravely injured every year. She knew that as a demon, she was completely isolated, surrounded by a sea of hostile red eyes waiting for her to fail. So many people would use this as an opportunity to harm her, and the risk was immense. If this weren't the only way, she confessed, her voice softening, she never would have chosen such a dangerous path. He looked her in the eyes, his own filled with a desperate plea. He needed the absolute truth. Without that artifact, could his sister hold on until the spell was broken? The silence that followed was suffocating. His voice trembled as he asked the question he feared most. How long did she have left? The answer was a dagger to his heart. At this rate, she didn't even have a month. The strength drained from his body, and he collapsed onto the bed, his formidable frame shuddering with despair. Molly's heart ached watching him break. All she could offer was a soft, whispered apology. His back was turned to her when he finally spoke, his voice heavy with the weight of his world. Could she win? Could he trust her? It was the last prayer of a drowning man. A confident, gentle smile graced her lips. She would definitely win. She had given him her word, and she would cure his sister. She held out her hand, an offer of an unbreakable pact. All he had to do was trust her. His gaze lifted, and he saw her hand as a lifeline in his sea of despair. His own hand trembled as he reached for hers, deciding to place his faith in her one last time. Of course, even in a moment this serious, Molly's brain couldn't help but short-circuit, internally screaming at herself to stop staring at his magnificent abs. On the day of the competition, Molly observed the bustling grounds, that the teams were split exactly as they were in the original game, but her eyes narrowed when she spotted a flash of silver hair. Ilier, the delinquent who skipped every class and event, was here. He sauntered over with an infuriatingly handsome smirk. Didn't she say she'd definitely win? Surely she didn't need him to participate just to make it harder for her. Molly was screaming on the inside. In the original story, the hero's team only won because Ilier was on it. Facing him as an opponent was a terrifying, impossible scenario. Her mind raced, trying to find a way out of this disaster. But then he leaned in, his warm breath a whisper against her. Relax, he murmured, I'm here to protect you. Her thoughts screeched to a halt. Wait, what did he just say? Before she could ask, he gently turned her around by her shoulders. She felt a cool weight against her skin as he fastened a necklace around her neck. Her eyes widened in surprise at the beautiful, sparkling pendant. If she was ever in danger, he explained softly, she just needed to channel her magic into it to contact him. She touched the pendant, her heart fluttering. And with that, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. She watched him go, a small smile on her face. What an awkward guy. She clutched the necklace, a warmth spreading through her chest. Suddenly, she was tackled in a hug from behind by a cheerful Karma, who was thrilled they were on the same team. Karma flashed a peace sign, and Molly weakly agreed, feeling a sense of whiplash from the girl's ever-changing attitude. This was all getting so confusing. Just then, another girl with flowing pink hair approached them. It was Rutas, the original heroine of the story, looking as lovely as ever. She smiled politely, suggesting they get along as teammates. Rutas then took Molly's hand, her grip surprisingly firm, and casually mentioned she'd been on a date with Osho and Songlan. Molly's senses went on high alert. This felt like a power play, an attempt at an alliance. Rutas' smile turned icy as she lamented that Osho had left in a huff, wondering aloud if some annoying bug had bothered him. Molly fired back with a saccharine smile of her own, suggesting that maybe there was someone else he preferred to see. The air crackled with unspoken animosity as their handshake became a battle of wills. Karma broke the tension, wondering where the rest of their team was. Lutas explained she'd sent them to get information. At that moment, a wave of excited shrieks through the crowd of girls nearby. They were all screaming about how handsome someone was. Molly turned, annoyed by the sudden noise. And then she saw who they were screaming about, and a torrent of blood erupted from her nose. Molly's mind was in a daze, a pleasant fog of appreciation for the absolute works of art before her. Oh God, she thought, her eyes sparkling with delight. Underneath that skin-tight black shirt, she could just make out the glorious outline of chiseled muscles. It was somehow even more attractive than if they were fully exposed. While one was a statuesque god of pure muscle, the other was a handsome, princely figure in a crisp uniform. From a distance, another student chuckled at the utterly silly expression on Molly's face. The silver-haired demon prince Ilier cast a cold glance over his shoulder, his brilliant blue eyes narrowing slightly. He figured she had probably seen something she liked. His companion, a boy with soft purple hair, looked utterly confused. Something she likes? He glanced down at his own slender, almost weak-looking frame, a pout forming on his lips. A sudden wave of jealousy washed over him, and he yelled out that he wanted to go to their group, reaching desperately for Molly, but his plea was cut short. Ilier grabbed him by the collar, his voice laced with ice. Don't even think about it, he warned, reminding his friend that they were demons. The purple-haired boy was dragged away, his voice still echoing Molly's name in a desperate wail. Competition was about to begin, and the rules were laid out for all to see. The human and demon teams would be pitted against each other in the treacherous wild area, a landscape riddled cliffs and danger. The goal was simple: be the first to destroy the opposing side's crystals. Each team had to protect their own crystal at all costs. The moment it shattered, they would be eliminated. But the forest wasn't empty, it was teeming with monsters that dropped buffs and valuable items, and defeating them would rack up points for the coveted MVP title. To keep things fair, teleportation and flying spells are strictly forbidden. Shide, one of Molly's teammates, smirked as he effortlessly dispatched a beast with a single clean strike. Good, one has been taken care of. He turned, ready to boast to Molly. Molly, leave this area to me, he began, but the words died in his throat. She already standing triumphantly at a much larger, vanquished beast, her sword resting casually on her shoulder. What did you say? She asked, an innocent tilt to her head. Chide quickly backtracked, stammering that it was nothing. How was this possible? He was sure she'd never taken swordsmanship lessons. She shouldn't be so proficient. Molly, meanwhile, was tending to their injured teammate, placing a healing potion on his back. Her mind drifted back to her past life, to a family that had crushed her dreams becoming a swordswoman. But they couldn't stop her. She had secretly trained under a swordmaster, honing her skills in the shadows, and luckily, her muscle memory remained sharp, and more importantly, she had survived Ilier's week of absolutely hellish training. A small, confident smirk played on her lips. She glanced at Shide, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes. Why am I in the same group as you anyway? She muttered to herself. She remembered his brilliant plan. One person guards the camp while two hunt. Of course, his real goal had been to get grouped with Ludas, the story's heroine. Inside, Shide was fuming. He was supposed to be playing matchmaker for the Crown Prince and Ludas, not babysitting this girl. He could see them now, chatting intimately, and his whole plan was falling apart. Molly's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp and clear. She knew he hated her, but she told him he'd just have to bear with it for the week, because they were teammates. Shide left utterly speechless, staring at her back. Suddenly, a hulking beast, a monstrous werewolf, burst from the trees. That's my prey, Shide declared, but before he could even move, Molly was a blur of motion. She dashed forward, her footsteps impossibly light. With a powerful leap, she soared into the air, her green eyes blazing with focus as she brought her sword down in a deadly arc. The blade connected with a sickening crunch. The beast collapsed, its lifeblood staining the forest floor. As Molly stood over her kill, her sword dripping, she noticed a glimmering healing potion on its body. But just as her fingers brushed against the vial, an arrow whistled through the air, embedding itself in the monster's corpse. A group of girls emerged from the trees, their leaders face a mask of arrogance. Hey, that's our prey, she sneered, her eyes filled with contempt as she called Molly a thief. Meanwhile, back at the demon camp, Ilier's subordinate was dying of boredom. Why am I the one guarding this place? He whined. Ilier appeared silently, his presence commanding. His Highness, have you come to rest? The boy asked. The purple-haired demon then effortlessly lifted a pile of sleeping demon hounds, stacking them with surprising precision. Ilier's eye twitched, stunned by his subordinate's hidden strength. The boy declared his task complete and announced he was going to rest, asking where Ilier was headed. Ilier simply walked off into the woods, leaving his friend utterly bewildered. Back in the forest, the confrontation was escalating. Thief hand over the blue potion, the lead girl demanded, her hand on her bow. Molly simply held up the potion, a challenging glint in her eye. Finders keepers. The girl's face hardened. Don't regret your decision, she snarled as her friends launched hack. An arrow flew, a scythe swung, but Molly dodged with fluid grace. Another girl lunged, but her sword was met with a resounding clang as Molly parried the blow, not even flinching. From the sidelines, Shaw watched in total disbelief. Molly moved with a deadly elegance, deflecting their attacks with ease. Compared to Ilier, she thought with cold confidence, you guys are weak. What? The girls shrieked, their faces pale with shock. A dangerous smile touched Molly's lips. You asked for it. She summoned a shard of red magic, a second-rank spell, and without hesitation, pierced her own palm to activate it. But before she could unleash her attack, Shide leaped between them, a massive shield materializing to block her. "What are you guys doing?" He roared, reminding them their enemies were the demon clan. The girls immediately pointed fingers, accusing Molly of stealing their catch. "Shide, why are you helping her?" one of them demanded. He hesitated, looking at Molly with a complicated expression. "Move," the girl insisted. "This is a conflict between us." But Molly gently pushed Shide aside. "Didn't I say it before?" she asked, her voice calm as she held out the potion again. "Finders keepers." The other girl's eyes burned with fury. How can someone be so unreasonable and cruel? One of her friends whispered, trembling. Molly's smile widened, becoming almost predatory. "I don't mind all four of you coming to attack me together," she offered sweetly. She readied her sword, an intimidating aura radiating from her. Shide broke into a cold sweat. A woman's battlefield is very scary. He was completely frozen. Just then, another group arrived, led by the heroine Ludas. "Are you the one who—" "This beast?" she asked. Shide instantly snapped out of his stupor, shamelessly stepping forward to live his teeth. He claimed Molly was nearly killed, and that he saved her by shooting the beast, so the potion should be his. Molly's eye twitched in disbelief. How shameless! But Ludas was no fool. The fatal wound at the throat was obviously from a sword, she pointed out coolly, while his arrow only hit the arm. Another girl piped up, trying to claim credit for the sword wound. Shide's expression darkened menacingly. "Lovely ladies, do you really think I can be deceived so easily?" He purred, his voice dangerously low. The girls paled, immediately apologizing for their mistake. "Let's go," their leader mumbled, and they scurried away. Once they were alone, Molly turned to Shide. "Why did you help me?" she asked, genuinely confused. "I hate you, so I thought you were an unreasonable person," he scoffed, retorting that shit was the unreasonable one. He explained that he'd initially thought she had locked us again, but he'd reconsidered. He gently covered her eyes with his hand, a hint of shame on his face. He confessed he'd checked with her classmates and realized she couldn't have done it. From now on, he promised he would verify the truth himself. Looking her in the eye, he offered a sincere apology for last time. Molly was stunned into silence. A moment passed, and then a brilliant, mischievous smile spread across her face. "If you really want to apologize," she chirped, her eyes sparkling, "then come help me with something." The sun filtered through the lush green canopy as Molly hatched a mischievous plan. She pointed towards a rustling bush, whispering to the handsome Shide, asking if he saw those two demon girls hiding there. They were members of his fan club, she revealed with a grin. Shide's expression remained stoic. He thought he might have seen them before. He simply asked what she needed his help with. A wicked glint appeared in Molly's eyes. She told him it was time to flaunt his masculinity, giving him a firm shove out in the open. "Go help me distract them," she ordered, leaving him to stumble out with a shocked weight on his lips. The two fangirls looked up, their faces a mask of pure, sweat-drenched panic at his sudden appearance. What was happening? Shide, caught completely off guard, could only manage a painfully awkward hi. Instantly, the girls evaporated, replaced by heart-filled, sparkling eyes as they squealed his name. "Lord Shide, who could possibly bring him here?" One clasped her hands to her chest, breathlessly asking if their tower had caught his eye. But Shide, ever the charmer when cornered, smoothly replied that it was their beauty that had led him there. As if a cascade of roses bloomed around him, his hand placed elegantly over his heart. He offered to leave if he was intruding on their tea, a move that sent the girls into a blushing frenzy, insisting he wasn't intruding at all. It was a defense mechanism. When faced with women, Shide on this charming facade to protect himself. From the safety of the bushes, Molly watched the swooning girls, little hearts floating above their heads. Internally, however, Shide was screaming, his face burning with humiliation. Oh God, what was he even saying? He plastered on another smile, asking if he might join their wonderful tea party. Of course, they eagerly agreed, and Molly knew this was her chance to get moving. The plan was simple. Infiltrate the tower and smash the crystal at its core. She stood before the colossal glowing blue structure, her gaze filled with determination. Knowing it would attack any intruders, she pulled a jagged beast antler from her inventory, fully prepared. First, she would use the beast as a shield, then smash the crystal. She hurled the antler, and the tower immediately zapped it in a blinding flash of light and blood. But as she moved in, an arrow suddenly shot out from the foliage with a deadly swoosh. Molly dodged just in time, her eyes wide with shock. Back at the party, one of the girls wondered aloud if something had just moved. Shide, meanwhile, was mentally cursing his luck for being caught in this situation, telling himself his heart was pounding because of beautiful ladies. He turned to one of them with a gentle smile, apologizing if he had startled her. Inside, his chibi form was having a full-blown meltdown. "Molly, please hurry up," he screamed in his mind. His heart couldn't take any more of this humiliation, but Molly was in grave danger. Just as another arrow flew towards her, a figure materialized behind her, pulling her into a protective embrace. It was Ilier, his voice a low murmur as he told her the arrow had been aiming for her right leg. He held her close, his silver hair glowing in the dappled light as Molly stared up at him, her heart hammering in her chest. If he hadn't shown up, her leg would have been— He noticed the small gash on her calf, reminding her that the human body is fragile and she needed to bandage it. Molly's eyes narrowed as she looked at the arrow. This wasn't from the same person as before. She turned to Ilier, her voice tense. "Did you see who it was?" He nodded, his icy blue eyes glinting dangerously. "Follow her," he commanded. But Molly's mission came first. She would catch up after she destroyed this tower, her expression turning vengeful. Elsewhere, the culprits were gloating. A smug girl asked Group E if they succeeded in teaching Molly a lesson. They grumbled that if it weren't for the demon clan, she'd be in a miserable state. The girl sneered, asking if they weren't afraid Molly would find out. They were confident the arrows couldn't be traced, and even if she knew, there was no proof. The girl added with a cruel smile, "Getting hurt is just a normal part of the competition, isn't it?" How cruel, she thought, realizing everyone was out to get Molly. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the nearby bushes. One of the bullies was saying they'd wait until Molly was alone to have some real fun, that it was one of the pleasures of the competition. "Is that so?" A cool voice interrupted. Molly stepped out from the shadows, Ilier a silent, intimidating presence behind her. With a deceptively sweet smile, she asked if she could join in on such pleasures, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword. Fun fact, these bullies were no match for Molly at all. In a flash, she disarmed one and blocked another's attack with a summoned shield, much to their shock. Ilier watched from the side, a flicker of irritation on his face. "What are you guys doing here?" Molly demanded, her voice dripping with disdain. She strode towards the ringleader, her gaze sharp as steel. "You were the one who shot that arrow at me, right?" The girl smirked, saying it was a pity Molly could still walk. She sneered, accusing Molly of seducing Demon Clan's young master and wondering what she had to trade to do it. Her life must be pretty easy, hiding behind a man's back. Molly's face hardened. "Easy?" Ilier started to move, but Molly held up a hand. "Ilier, stand down." He reluctantly obeyed. Molly turned her cold gaze back to the bully. "It seems there's no point in communicating with you." The girl scoffed and charged forward. But Molly was a blur of motion, closing the distance in an instant. The bully's eyes widened in terror at her blinding speed. Since coming here, Molly's voice was a low growl. She had been isolated, misunderstood, and hurt. She struck, and the girl cried out as a sharp pain shot through her foot. "I do my best to survive," Molly declared, parrying another attack with a loud clang. "I've never once depended on anyone." She disarmed the second attacker with a swift smack, her movements precise and brutal. "I've gotten this far on my own 2 feet." She then turned on the third, her eyes blazing. "If you ladies didn't cause trouble, you wouldn't have to suffer. It's truly detestable." Another cry of pain echoed as Molly continued her assault, wondering why they were all so hostile. The first girl grabbed her leg, screaming that it was because she was bullying Lady Ludas. "We're just helping her teach you a lesson." Molly looked down at the hand on her. "Let go. That's wrong," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You're just looking for a justifiable excuse to vent." She drove her sword into the ground inches from the girl's face, making her scream in terror. "Hurting others seems to be fun for you guys. It doesn't even matter if I bullied or not." She leaned in close. "Listen up, you bunch of bullies. I've never learned how to be patient." She pointed to her own injured leg. "The next time I'm injured, I've thought it through. The debt will be paid back in double." Her eyes burned with an unbreakable will. Later, as she and Ilier walked through the quiet forest, she asked if he thought she was too ruthless. He shook his head. "No, if you hadn't warned them, they would only get worse." His gaze softened. "Even so angry, you avoided their vital spots. I'm more worried about your injuries." Molly couldn't help, a teasing light in her eyes. "Humph. By the way, why are you even here?" Ilier looked away, a faint blush dusting his cheeks as he mumbled that he was just passing by. Molly's inner chibi wasn't buying it for a second. She instructed him to sit so she could bandage his wound. He tried to refuse, saying it was just a scratch, but she was insistent. "No, even a small wound can get infected." She knelt before him, gently wrapping his ankle, her own cheeks flushing slightly. She recalled that he had studied medicine to protect sister, and a warmth spread through her chest. Ilier watched her, his blue eyes filled with a soft light. Just now, Molly looked at him, her smile radiant and sincere, and placed her hand over his. "Thank you for saving me." In that moment, it felt as though a field of roses bloomed around them, and he was utterly captivated. His silver hair seemed to capture the moonlight, his violet eyes wide with an emotion she couldn't quite place. Just now, her words had echoed in the quiet air, a bright, cheerful confession as she smiled up at him with her emerald eyes. She had thanked him for saving her small hand bravely taking his larger one, a gesture that sent a jolt through him. Her leg was bandaged, a stark white against her skin, but her spirit was anything but broken. She held out a bouquet of lush pink roses, a peace offering and a thank you all in one. The boy's cheeks were dusted with a faint blush, his expression a mixture of shock and something softer, something vulnerable as he stared at the audacious girl before him. Back in the present, that same tension hung in the air, but it was far from sweet. Osho's voice cut through the woods, dripping with theatrical betrayal as he accused Molly of tricking him. Ilier, the silver-haired duke, looked down at the scene with an expression of utter boredom, his gaze colder than a winter frost. What were these children doing, he wondered, before announcing with chilling finality that he was leaving first. Osho immediately sat up, a pale smirk on his face, teasingly asking if the stoic duke was shy. Molly, however, was in no mood for games, her voice sharp as she demanded to know why a demon like Osho was even here. With a graceful turn, Ilier vanished into depths of the shimmering, magical forest, leaving them to their own devices. Osho's gaze then fell upon Molly's bandaged foot, his playful demeanor melting into one of exaggerated concern. He demanded to know what happened, his voice laced with melodrama as he asked if this was her punishment for leaving him. Molly's patience snapped, an angry vein pulsing on her temple as she told him it was getting late and they needed to go back. He just laughed, waving it off as a joke, telling her not be so mad, but the air remained thick with unspoken things. Later, back at the camp, the atmosphere was no better. A girl with vibrant pink hair leaned against Shide, whining about how hungry she was and wondering when dinner would finally be ready. Her tone was sweet, but her eyes held a possessive glint as she clung to the handsome blonde. She then turned her entitled gaze on Molly, her voice dripping with command as she ordered Molly to go pour her a glass of water. Molly's eyes widened in disbelief. Why in the world did she have to do it? Karma didn't answer, simply turning her head to give Shide a pointed, expectant stare as if he would enforce her petty demand. With a glare that could curdle milk, Molly bit out that she got it, her pride stinging at the blatant disrespect. Just as this little drama unfolded, Osho and Karma's friend returned from the woods, Osho fussing over the girl's injury. Shide's head snapped up, his brilliant blue eyes immediately locking onto the injured girl's foot. He rushed forward, his voice tight with worry as he asked what had happened, if she was seriously hurt. But before he could get close, Molly shoved him back with surprising force. She stood like a shield, her voice a low growl as she warned him not to come near Molly, that he would only hurt her. Shide was utterly bewildered, asking what she was even saying. He was Molly's fiancé, he said with a strained smile. Wasn't it his right to care about her? Karma's friend whispered to Molly, her words like poison, suggesting he was only acting this way out of a sense of duty and responsibility. Molly's hand clenched into a tight fist at her side. She spat the words at Shide, her voice trembling with rage, saying she thought he wouldn't even care if the girl died. Shide's expression hardened, the warmth draining from his eyes. What kind of wretched person did she take him for? Molly was his fiancée, and his gaze softened with hurt as he looked at her, asking why she suddenly hated him so much. Because you're a wolf in sheep's clothing, she screamed in her mind, her eyes blazing with a fire he couldn't comprehend. Visions of the future flashed through her mind, Shide smiling lovingly at Karma, the two of them happy while she was cast aside. Her head throbbed with the weight of it all. Why did she have to see this? Another image surfaced, Shide presenting Karma with a beautiful bouquet of roses, a mirror of a painful memory. Her hands trembled. Did she have to go through that again? A wave of fierce determination washed over her. No, she wouldn't let it happen. She would never let those things happen again. The spell was broken by Karma's saccharine voice calling her name. She claimed there was no water left and sweetly asked if Molly could possibly go get some. Molly's eyes narrowed. Why her, she demanded, when there were two perfectly capable men sitting right there. Her gaze flickered to Shide and Osho, and a chill went down her spine. They were naturally quiet, their eyes vacant, staring into nothing. Something was terribly wrong with them. Acting on pure instinct, she put on a bright smile, telling Shide she'd trouble him then, and tugged on his sleeve. But as they walked, the silence was deafening. It was too weird they had no reaction at all. This was bad. Her mind raced as she grabbed his wrist, her grip firm as she declared she would go with him. As they walked side by side, Molly's thoughts were a whirlwind. Then, a horrifying realization struck her. Karma. She wasn't affected at all. Back at the camp, Karma looked utterly bewildered by the strange turn of events. She then smiled brightly, seemingly recovered from whatever strange spell had fallen over the boys, chirping that it would be a bother to them both. The world dissolved, the campsite fading into a tranquil lakeside shimmering under a dark, star-dusted sky. Was this scene manipulated? Molly found herself walking beside a familiar girl, her best friend from the past. She was still puzzling over the events at the camp, wondering aloud why Karma hadn't been affected by the strange phenomenon. Her friend smiled knowingly, guessing correctly that Molly had followed her because she wanted to talk alone. She had a question for Molly. With a mischievous twinkle in her eye, surrounded by a whimsical flower era, she asked, "Did Molly like Ilier?" Molly sputtered, completely flustered, insisting he was just a friend. Her friend pressed on, asking about Osho or Shide, but Molly shut it down immediately, stating firmly that she didn't like anyone. Her friend was aghast. How could that be? Molly simply stated that some people just weren't interested in relationships. "You're weird," her friend declared, wonders because this was an otome game world, making her lack of romantic interest seem abnormal. With a sad, wistful smile, her friend confessed that for her, love was like salvation. Why, Molly asked, a strange premonition creeping into her heart. Was there no romance plot for this friend in the original story? Her friend stopped walking. "You are so different from Molly," she said, her voice soft but heavy. Molly stood frozen, her silence a confession in itself. "It's fine," her friend continued, her gaze piercing. "Even if your soul doesn't belong to Molly, this is her body. For her sake, you must protect this body." Molly speechless at the fierce loyalty in her friend's eyes. Molly is really lucky to have a friend like you, she thought. Then her friend's expression turned grave. She needed to know what really happened on the night of March 2nd. A horrifying image flooded Molly's mind. Molly, her blonde hair fanned out like a halo, sinking into the dark, cold water. Her friend explained that Karma had discovered Molly sneaking out of the dorms alone, so she followed her to the lakeside. At first, she thought Molly was just enjoying the night air, but suddenly there was a splash. Molly hugged a heavy rock to her chest and leaped into the lake. Without a moment's hesitation, her friend had jumped in right after her. She remembered desperately trying to save Molly, her arms reaching out in the murky depths, but that's where her memory ended. She didn't know what happened after that, only that she woke up at home, sick for days. That slammed into Molly with the force of a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. That means, the original Molly, she was gone since that night. The competition continues, but the air is thick with a strange tension. Ludas is being seen off, her friends warning her to be careful while guarding the tower alone. Her safety's above all else. But Molly watches the touching farewell with a scowl and the dry, drawn-out goodbyes. Ever since yesterday, Shide and Songlun's attitudes had turned cold again, and she simply didn't have the energy to figure out why. Besides, her mind was on something far more important. If she had left with Ludas yesterday, she would have activated the Shide road. The competition would have been forcibly stopped, all because of the game's cruel plot. She clings to Songlun's arm, a small smile on her face, but her thoughts are a whirlwind of strategy. A major plot development was supposed to happen today. The scene where Molly pushes the original female lead, Ludas, off a cliff. In the game, this would trigger Shide to heroically dive after her, a pivotal moment in their romance. But this wasn't a game anymore, and Molly had to stop this from happening at all costs. Spotting Ludas, Molly puts on her most charming smile, suggesting they hunt together. She found a place yesterday where beasts gather, she explains, thinking it would be more efficient. Her true motive was far more desperate. She couldn't risk the plot correcting itself. She wouldn't push Ludas, but what if someone else did? She had to stay close enough to pull her back from the brink if the worst happened. Ludas, completely oblivious to the danger she's in, beams with a brilliant, trusting smile. Sure, let's go, she agrees cheerfully. As they walk, Ludas grows suspicious, noting that they're heading in the opposite direction of yesterday's hunting grounds. Molly waves it off with a laugh, claiming she discovered this new spot herself. Suddenly, a rustle from the bushes catches their attention, and a figure darts from behind a tree. It's a magnificent deer, and incredibly, it's carrying a rare red potion. Without a moment's hesitation, Molly shouts for them to let her handle it. She summons her staff and unleashes a blinding ball of light, striking the creature's leg with a loud bang as the potion falls. But the beast is resilient. With a great swoosh, it escapes into the dense forest, leaving a very unhappy Molly staring after it. She missed. She grits her teeth, declaring that it won't get far with that injury. Songlun, ever the gentleman, offers to catch it for her, but Molly's pride is stung. No, she insists, she wants to catch it herself. She sprints into the woods after it, ignoring Ludas's frantic warning not to run off. A cold dread washes over Ludas. That's the direction of the cliff. Panicked, she and her friend race after Molly, praying she stays safe. When Ludas finally reaches the clearing near the edge, her heart pounds in her chest. They're gone. Where did they go? Peeking through the foliage, she finds them. Songlun sees her first, noting they caught up. Molly is there too, proudly holding the defeated deer, the red potion she retrieved all by herself. She shoots Ludas a smug little smirk, teasing that she was too late. Ludas lets out a breath she didn't realize she was holding, just thankful Molly wasn't hurt. She wipes a bead of sweat from her brow, relief mixing with a lingering sense of unease. Karma, Molly chirps playfully. Just as the group reconvenes, Molly spots a friend and excuses herself to say hello. Seizing the opportunity, Songlun suggests they all admire the famous scenery from the cliff's edge. Ludas internally screams of all the places they really just had to be near the cliff. She can't relax for even a second. As another student introduces themselves, Songlun leans in close to Ludas, a sly grin on his face. Why she's so tensed up, he whispers, is she planning something bad? He's just kidding, but Ludas is not amused. She turns away, her gaze falling upon the breathtaking vista. Her emerald eyes widen. Since transgrading, she's so wrapped up in survival that she never once stopped to appreciate the beauty of this world. In that moment, a hand appears behind Molly's back. A sudden, violent push sends Molly lurching forward. Ludas watches in horror as Molly stumbles towards the edge. Her head whips around to see the culprit, Songlun smiling serenely as if nothing happened. The scenery here is truly, isn't it? He says, his voice unnervingly calm. It makes one's heart calm down instantly, and he just wanted her to see it too, yes. Really beautiful, Ludas manages to choke out, her mind a maelstrom of shock and confusion, but her reflexes are faster than her thoughts. As Molly begins to fall, Ludas's hand shoots out, grabbing her wrist in a vice grip. With all her might, she pulls Molly back from the abyss, holding her tightly. She pants, asking if Molly is okay, telling her how dangerous that was. But Molly doesn't look relieved. She looks up from Ludas's embrace, her eyes dark and cold. Why, she whispers, do you keep interfering? Before Ludas can process the question, Molly's hands are on her chest. With a powerful shove, Molly sends Ludas plummeting into the chasm below. As she falls, the world turns into a blur of red and black, her own scream lost to the wind. Molly stands at the edge, her expression a chillingly blank mask as the others cry out in shock. A single terrifying realization pierces through Ludas's panic. In the story, she survived this fall because Shide jumped after her, saving her with a magic shield. But that was before. Now Shide hated her. He would never save her. Is this it? Gonna die here? Just as despair consumes her, a hand latches onto her, grabbing the delicate chain around her neck. A voice cuts through the roaring wind, calling a name she hadn't heard in so long, Ilier. Her eyes snap open. Elsewhere in the forest, the crown prince chides Shide for wandering off, teasing him about building relationships with his subordinates. He slyly asks if Shide has anyone he likes. Shide's piercing blue eyes look into the distance. He admits he had a certain child on his mind, but there are too many annoying flies around her. The prince's smile turns predatory. He muses aloud that he should make her his should he kidnap her, or would imprisoning her be better. He laughs, seeing little difference between the two options. Psycho, his companion mutters. Shide's gaze hardens. If it weren't for the prince's constant pestering, states coldly, he would already be with Molly. Suddenly, a faint, ethereal voice calls out his true name. Ilier! The prince notices his silence, but Shide is no longer listening. His entire demeanor shifts, his senses on high alert. That sound, it came from the cliffs. Ignoring the prince's baffled teasing, he takes off, sprinting through the trees with a desperate urgency. The prince watches him go, utterly confused. Why the sudden agitation? Shide arrives at the cliff to a scene of utter chaos. He was only gone for a moment. He hears snippets of conversations. Someone fell. They didn't see who. Someone else ran to get a teacher. His eyes find Molly safe, being comforted by another girl. A cold dread seeps into his bones. His gaze darts around frantically. It was only a second. He heard someone say they saw Molly fall. Then another voice adds that it looked like a second person fell too. The pieces click into place with horrifying clarity. His breath catches in his throat. What does it have to be? He storms over to Molly, grabbing her shoulders, his voice shaking with a desperate rage. Weren't you with her the whole time? Through a flood of tears, the girl sobs that she's so sorry, it's all her fault, she couldn't catch her in time. Shide doesn't hear her. He can only stare at the vast, empty space where Ludas had been standing. The world fades away. There is only the cliff, the wind, and the gaping abyss below. Without a single thought for his own safety, he leaps, throwing himself into the void and screaming her name, Molly. Darkness recedes as consciousness flickers back into existence. Molly's emerald eyes fluttered open, a wave of confusion washing over her as every muscle in her body screamed in protest. The last thing she remembered was the cruel smirk on Ludas's face as she was shoved from the cliff's edge. That heartless, wretched woman. But as she tried to push herself up, her hand sank into something unexpectedly soft. This wasn't the hard, unforgiving rock she expected. It felt warm, and there was definitely something solid beneath her waist. Her eyes widened in horror as she looked down, realizing she hadn't landed on mossy stones, but on the unconscious body of a man. And not just any man, it was Shide. His handsome face was marred by a nasty bruise, his eyes closed, completely still. Panic seized her as she called his name, shaking him gently. Wake up! As she looked up at the sliver of sky visible from the bottom of the ravine, the memories flooding back. She remembered the sickening sensation of falling, the wind whipping at her face, but then she remembered a desperate, terrified scream. It was Shide, his eyes wide with horror as he yelled her name. Without a second of hesitation, he had thrown himself off the cliff after her, a look of pure desperation on his face. Why? Why would he save her? He had caught her midair, wrapping his body around hers in a protective embrace as they plummeted towards the earth below. She thought he treated her like a stranger, cold and distant like everyone else in this wretched world. Yet here he was, risking everything as they crashed into the icy water at the bottom of the ravine. Back in the present, she frantically tried to rouse him, her voice trembling. Shide, wake up. Can you hear me? Her hand came away sticky and red, and her heart dropped blood. But when she checked herself over, she found she had barely any injuries at all. A chilling realization dawned on her. He had used his own body as a shield, risking his life to protect her. A fierce determination burned in her eyes. She had to heal him no matter what. Forgive me, she whispered his unconscious form, steeling herself for what came next. His wounds were deep, his uniform shredded and soaked in blood, but thankfully she had brought emergency medicines for the competition. After carefully cleaning his wounds, she wrapped his torso in fresh bandages, the sight of his well-defined abs doing little to calm her racing heart. The external injuries were treated, but she had no way of knowing the extent of the internal damage. As if on cue, the sky began to weep, dark clouds gathering above the ravine. It was about to rain. She had to get him to shelter. With a grunt, she tried to lift him, but he was impossibly heavy. Just as she was about to give up, his eyes fluttered open, his voice a weak whisper. Molly. Relief washed over her, quickly followed by exasperation. Are you awake? Try to walk by yourself. You're too heavy. He blinked slowly, a flash of his usual arrogance returning as he asked if she was crazy. His gaze was intense, even in his weakened state. He questioned why she would save Ludas, who hated her, and then why she would jump to save him. Her answer was simple, spoken with a conviction that left no room for doubt. If someone was about to die in front of her, of course she would try to save them. A faint smile touched his lips as he leaned on her for support. The same reason goes for me, he murmured, his voice laced with a strange new emotion. I really don't understand you. Meanwhile, back at the top of the cliff, a commotion was brewing. The handsome, silver-haired Ilier heard the chatter and his sharp ears picked up the news. Someone fell off the cliff. Let's take a look. His golden eyes narrowed. Who fell? The ant sent a shockwave through him. It was Molly. Someone tried to placate him, insisting they didn't see Ludas push her, that Ludas only wanted to pull her back from the edge. But it was too late. It had already snapped. He lunged forward, his hand clamping around Ludas's throat like a vice. She choked, gasping that she didn't do it, that it was all a misunderstanding. One student courageously spoke up, declaring she saw it with her own eyes. Ludas pushed Molly, but the others were quick to dismiss it, suggesting Molly must have tripped. Ludas was probably just trying to help, they murmured amongst themselves. The lone witness looked on in despair, wondering why no one would believe her. Ludas put on the performance of a lifetime, tears streaming down her face as she pleaded her innocence, claiming she was being framed. But Ilier's grip didn't loosen. The murder radiating from him was suffocating, sending shivers down her spine. Did you or did you not? His voice was colder than ice. We can go down there and ask Molly ourselves. He began dragging her towards the edge, an insane glint in his eyes. His threat was terrifyingly real. If anything happened to her, or if he caught her in a lie, he would leave her down there forever. Lutas's mind reeled in terror. This absolute maniac was about to jump down the cliff with her. Coughing, she desperately tried to reason with him, blurting out that Molly should be since Shide was with her. Ilier paused, his gaze piercing. What's your basis? She couldn't explain, she just knew. But his grip was unbearable and he took another step towards the edge, his patience gone. I have no reason to believe you, he snarled. Lutas screamed no, just as he activated a communication device, his voice echoing into the valley below. Are you fine? Are you hurt? A faint voice crackled back. I'm fine. Ilier's eyes shot to the unconscious form of Shide by the fire. But Shide is injured and unconscious. It was just as she said. He stared at Ludas, a flicker of confusion in his cold eyes. Was this just a coincidence? He spoke into the device again, his voice softer now. It's good that you're fine. I'll come down to find you now. Molly panicked on the other end. You aren't thinking of directly jumping, are you? His simple mum confirmed her fears. She yelled that the cliff was too high, that even he would get hurt. His reply was utterly possessive. What of it? How can I feel at ease without seeing you with my own eyes? Molly was stunned into silence. This guy, he was genuinely worried about her. Pulling herself together, she reassured him. Trust me, I'll be fine. Don't let our fall interfere with the contest. Your sister doesn't have much time left. She needed him to explain the situation to the teacher and ensure the contest continues. Then, she gave him clear, concise instructions. There's a hidden map, a secret path. Bring the rescue that way. But she warned him to be careful. There's a sleeping dragon and strong magic will wake it. Don't move too much. Don't worry, he said, his tone reassuring. But then it shifted, becoming sharp as a razor's edge. Also, did you get pushed down by someone named Ludas? Molly confirmed. Ludas felt her blood run cold. What was he going to do? Ilier's eyes blazed with a murderous red light as his hand shot out, grabbing Ludas by the throat once more. She screamed that she did nothing wrong, that Molly pushed her first. Ilier, don't kill her. Molly's desperate plea came through the device just in time. Down in the cave, Molly fretted. Knowing Ilier's obsessive character, she was terrified he'd take revenge. A part of her wanted to let it happen, but if Ludas died, her mission would be a failure. Now's not the time, she told her solemnly. There was a long, tense silence from the other end. He hasn't made a move yet, has he? She worried. Finally, Ilier's calm voice returned. I see. I'll come get you right away. Molly let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Phew, now I just need to wait. But she knew she still had to be careful, because as she glanced into the deep, dark corners of the cavern, she remembered exactly where they were. They were in the cave of the ancient dragon, and they must not, under any circumstances, wake him up. Rain lashes against the window of a dark, lonely cave as her brilliant ruby eyes stare out into the tempest, a flicker of something unreadable within them. He awakens slowly, his consciousness drifting back to a world of pain and confusion, his gaze landing on an unfamiliar ceiling. A soft voice asks if he's awake, if his body hurts, and his mind immediately snaps to one person. Molly. The last thing he remembers is her, then a searing pain, and a sudden shocking realization floods his mind. He jolts upright, his eyes flying down to his own body, only to be met with the horrifying sight of his bare chest. He's naked. He whips head towards Molly, his voice a panic squawk, demanding to know what she did to him. A sharp sting radiates from his shoulder, pulling a ragged cough from his lungs and grounding him in the grim reality of their situation. That's right. He jumped off that wretched cliff to save her. They were now stranded together, huddled by a crackling fire in the dark mouth of a cave. A wave of relief washes over him. He's still alive. But that relief is immediately replaced by the most audacious assumption imaginable. His lips curl into a smug, satisfied smirk as he decides she clearly couldn't resist his godlike physique while he was unconscious. He informs her that she must now take responsibility for her actions. Molly stares at him, her expression utterly deadpan, wondering just how narcissistic one man could be. She clarifies with patience that she was simply changing his bandages, nothing more. He looks genuinely shocked, his ego wounded. Was there really someone in this world who could resist such an attractive body? Molly internally fumes, thinking she should really just seal his mouth shut for good. His playful mood evaporates as he asks the serious question. Are they stuck here now? Molly's expression trim. She explains that Ilier has already gone to get help, but they'll need around 3 days to reach the cave. 3 days. The words hang heavy in the air. He glances down at his bandaged hand, the grim reality of his condition crashing down on him. The situation isn't great. His organs feel like they're in pieces, a dull ache spreading through his chiseled torso. Surviving for 3 days would be difficult enough, but if a monster appeared in this unknown territory, he would be nothing but a handicap, putting Molly in even greater danger. He can't let that happen. He turns to her, his voice firm, telling her it's dangerous. With the current strength, he can't use transportation magic, so she should go first. He'll follow once he's recovered. Molly's eyes widen in disbelief. What is he even talking about? He reaches out and gently pinches her cheek, a soft, almost fond gesture. He tells her not to feel too guilty about leaving him behind. He's just doing what any other person would do, so all she should think about is her own survival. His words are so unexpectedly kind, so sincere that her breath catches in her throat. He seems to realize how it sounded, a faint blush creeping up his neck as he awkwardly trails off, suddenly embarrassed. But Molly's gaze is resolute. She tells him plainly that she doesn't have a heart big enough to abandon her savior. With surprising strength, she shoves him down onto the makeshift bed, ignoring his pained groan about his poor, battered organs. She declares that since he was the one who demanded she take responsibility, she will see it through to very end. So he can just rest easy. He stares up at her, momentarily stunned, weakly protesting that he was only joking. But her eyes are burning with determination. This world, she tells him, is already full of cold bystanders and apathetic people. And no matter what she's been through, she will never allow herself to become one of them. A slow smile spreads across his face as he looks at her, truly looks at her for the first time. In that case, he murmurs she'll have to work hard. Meanwhile, far from the relative safety of the cave, a torrential downpour rage. Ilier's subordinate urges him to wait for the storm. But the silver-haired prince ignores him, slicing through thorny branches with a single, furious swipe of his sword as lightning cracks across the sky. His men try to reason with him, reminding him that he himself said Molly was safe. His grip tightens on his sword hilt, his piercing blue eyes colder than the storm itself as he snarls one simple command, piss off. His men freeze, shocked into silence. They've never seen him like this. One of them thinks to himself that this is the first time he's ever seen His Highness so worried about someone other than his own sister. Ilier's mind is a storm of its own. Molly freed him from his pain. He's grateful for her. He even loves her. The thought is so powerful, so undeniable, that his subordinate can't help but ask the question aloud. Your Highness, do you like Molly? As Kane rests, his mind is dragged back into the cold, dark recesses of his past. He's a small boy again, being kicked and berated. You're stupid, just like your mother. Whispers Han from the shadows. He's the master's illegitimate child, a servant's whelp who never should have been allowed in the manor. A cruel, aristocratic woman looms over him, her voice dripping with venom as she asks if he wants to live. Then he must think of a way to please her. After all, it wouldn't be so strange if an illegitimate child simply disappeared. He wants to live. The thought is a desperate prayer. He forces himself to kneel, to press his lips against her shoe in an act of utter humiliation. Tears of shame and rage stream down his face as he chokes out the words, "Yes, madam." The memory fades, a phantom pain from a childhood he'd rather forget. Is it because his body hurts so much now that he recalled that time? He feels a strange warmth on his forehead, pulling him from the nightmare. It's Molly's hand, gently smoothing his brow, asks softly why he's frowning in his sleep, if he had a nightmare. He mumbles that it was just a dream about the past. He feels groggy, asking how long he was out. A day, she says cheerfully, offering him some fish she grilled. But her heart sinks. He wasn't sleeping. He blacked out. His condition is getting worse, and they only have one left until help arrives. As if on cue, he lets out a sudden, sharp sneeze. He tries to brush it off, insisting it was just a cold breeze. But a second sneeze betrays him. Molly's eyes widen as she realizes he's wearing nothing but thin pants, having given her his jacket. She immediately tries to give it back, but he pushes it away, insisting he's fine. She shoves it back at him, covering him firmly. He's already injured. He can't afford to catch a cold. He protests that he isn't that frail, but she cuts him off with a sharp no-can-do. She knows from the game that a simple cold could worsen his condition and lead to his death. She won't let that happen on her watch. He watches her, a flicker of amusement in his tired eyes. Then, a devilish smirk plays on his lips. How about you come in? He lifts the blanket, giving her a full view of his bandaged, but undeniably ripped torso. Come in where? She asks, completely missing his implication. He leans closer, his voice a seductive whisper. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to share a bed with a handsome man. You don't want it? Molly just stares at him blankly. He lifts her chin, his eyes glinting. Aren't you afraid I'll eat you? When she still doesn't react, he turns away with a huff, a blush creeping up his neck as he mutters that he was only worried she'd catch a cold. Molly can't help but smile. He's embarrassed. How cute. She assures him she's not cold, even as she sees him shiver. Liar. He's clearly freezing. That settles it. She grabs his wrist, her expression determined. If you really do want to eat me, then I'll just have to accept it. And with that, she slips under the blanket beside him. He looks at her, utterly bewildered, as she adds that she doesn't have the strength to fight back anyway. His heart immediately starts hammering against her ribs. Wait, too close. He can hear a frantic heartbeat. Wait, no, that's his heartbeat. His face turns crimson. How could he possibly fall asleep now? He glances over, ready to argue, only to find her already sound asleep, breathing softly beside him. The culprit who sent his heart into a frenzy is already in dreamland. He lets out a frustrated sigh. In the end, he was the only one who was nervous. But as he watches her sleep, the tension drains from his body. It's thanks to her that he's still alive. In the cold darkness of the cave, her presence is the only warmth he needs. He leans closer, his voice barely a whisper against her hair. Thank you. Molly's eyes fluttered open, the dim, flickering light of a cave greeting her consciousness. A warm, inviting aroma filled the air, and as her senses returned, she saw the broad back of a man tending to a crackling fire. Drawn by the delicious smell, she crept closer, her face peeking right beside his, startling the life out of him. He yelped, clutching his chest where his shirt lay open, revealing a set of perfectly sculpted, bandaged abs that did little to hide his impressive physique. He coughed, trying to regain his composure, a faint blush creeping up his neck. "What a cute little cat," he murmured, trying to sound suave as he asked if she slept well. But his flustered expression and the bright red hue of his face gave him away. Molly tilted her head, confused. Why was his face so red? Did he catch a fever? Without a second thought, she pressed her cool hand against his forehead, sending a jolt through him. He was burning hot. Panic seized her heart. Could his wound have become infected? She had to check. Her hands flew to his shirt, ready to rip it open and inspect the injury, but he frantically grabbed her wrists, his face a mess of panic and embarrassment as he begged her to stop. Molly froze, utterly bewildered by his strange behavior. How was she supposed to check his wound without taking off his clothes? She had literally touched him all over yesterday to treat him. So why was he acting so weird now? He couldn't meet her eyes, whispering that it because he remembered the feeling of her sleeping against him, something soft and warm pressed against his chest. The memory hit him like a lightning bolt. Molly curled up peacefully on top of him. He must have been dazed from the pain yesterday. How could he have let her sleep with him? If anyone found out, it would be a scandal of epic proportions. He watched her sleeping form, and she let out a tiny, contented sigh in her sleep, making his heart race. But Molly was lost in dreamland, mumbling about delicious hot and roasted duck as she snuggled even closer against him. And with that innocent touch, his last shred of rationality completely shattered. His face burned as he tried to control his body's very natural, very inconvenient reaction, internally screaming that this was just a normal physiological response. Back in the present, a completely oblivious Molly offered him the roasted fish she'd prepared yesterday. He was still beet red, mortified beyond belief. Why wasn't she embarrassed at all? Did she truly not see him as a man? Before he could spiral further, a deep rumble shook the entire cave. A blinding light erupted at the entrance, followed by a terrifying vortex of fire swirling towards them. "Look out," screamed, tackling Molly to the ground in a flash, his body shielding hers from the blast. He grunted, asking if she was okay as she thanked him, her mind racing. The ancient dragon had awakened. Could it be Ilier? She told him not to use magic. He wouldn't make such a mistake. Her thoughts were cut short as a monstrous, scaly beast emerged from this ancient dragon, the most difficult monster in the entire competition. Shide's expression was grim as he asked her if she could run. He clutched side, pain frosting his face. He wanted to, but he thought his wound had just opened up again. A look of grim determination settled on his handsome features. "Molly, I'll lure it away. You take that chance and run." He was ready to sacrifice himself, but she grabbed his arm, telling him to wait. She dropped to her knees, her eyes scanning the ground. This feeling, could it be? Suspicion sharpened her gaze. The ground rumbled once more as the colossal dragon roared, and Molly took off running, deeper into the cave. But she quickly realized there was no road ahead. She was trapped. Still, she kept moving, buying time. 10 minutes had passed. Shide should be safe by now. Blood stained her dress, but she ignored the pain. The dragon's attacks were powerful but slow, easy enough to dodge as long as she kept her distance. Just as she was about to find a way past the beast, sinister purple chains erupted from the floor, ensnaring her ankles. Limitation magic, her strength wasn't enough to break free. This was wrong. This never happened in the novel. Her heart pounded in her chest. Could there be other people in this cave? Trapped and helpless, she could only watch in horror as the dragon opened its maw, unleashing a torrent of hellfire directly at her. Just as the flames were about to engulf her, a body slammed into hers, pushing her out of the way as a massive explosion rocked the cavern. It was Chide. He had shielded her once again. He smirked, remarking that it was a close call, but Molly was furious. "Why did you come back? You should have been long gone." He just gave her a dazzling, infuriating smile. How could I let an injured lady escape on her own? She couldn't believe it. He was still in the mood to act charming at a time like this. His expression turned serious as he gently covered the bloody patch on her dress. "This small injury is nothing," he whispered, his voice low and urgent. "We are not alone in this cave." He'd found footprints that didn't belong to them. Molly's eyes widened in realization. So there was a third party pulling the strings. Was it Ludas? She pushed me off the cliff, after all, but something felt off about her actions. She sighed, looking at Shide with exasperation. "It seems people are trying to assassinate you. Who on earth did you offend?" He had the decency to look away sheepishly. "It seems there are a lot." The dragon roared again, its movements controlled by a hidden caster who had to be nearby. Shide prepared to fight, but Molly stopped him. "We can't kill it! Who said I wanted to kill the dragon?" she retorted, summoning her gleaming sword. There was no running now. Instead of waiting for death, they would hunt the hunter. She laid out the plan. She would attack the dragon, drawing the mastermind's attention. The moment they attacked her, Shide was to the magic trail and catch the wretched coward. Her green eyes shone with unwavering resolve as she looked at him. "I trust you." Shide was momentarily stunned her fierce declaration, but he nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. "I understand, then I'll leave the rest to you." With that, Molly charged towards the beast while Shide knelt, gathering his own formidable power. A voice suddenly echoed in her mind that Ilier. He was near the bottom of the cliff, asking for a status update. "The dragon has already awakened," she yelled back into the void. "I can only hold him back for a little while longer. Come quick!" Her mind raced as she dodged and weaved. The mastermind wanted to make her death like an accident. With Shide here, they would have to use subtler, more undetectable magic. Where would they strike from? She parried a claw, her sword ringing against the dragon's scales as blood sprayed into the air. All she could do was trust Shide. Suddenly, his voice cut through the chaos. "Careful. Behind you, wind slat." A powerful gale erupted from his hands, not at the dragon, but at the empty space behind Molly, revealing a cloaked figure caught in the vortex. "I found him," Shide yelled in triumph. "We did it," he grinned. But their celebration was cut short as the enemy tossed a glittering magic stone into the air. It exploded in a blinding flash of light, releasing a strange gas. Molly's eyes widened in horror, a brainwashing drug. Her entire body went numb, and she collapsed, completely paralyzed as her sword fell from her grasp. Screamed her name as the blast hit him, his vision blurring from the pain. The dragon seized the opportunity, roaring as it prepared another fireball. But Shide, ignoring his own injuries, lunged forward and swept Molly into his arms, erecting a magic shield just in time. He held her tight as the explosion rocked them, his body taking the brunt of the impact. "How do you always get yourself into these dangerous situations?" She grumbled, her voice weak. He gave a pained smile. "Sorry, I was paralyzed and couldn't move." A single drop of crimson blood fell from a gash on his face, landing on her cheek. "You're bleeding," she cried out. He tried to brush it off as a small injury, but she saw the dragon gathering power for another, even bigger attack. "What are you joking about? You can't block the next attack in your state." His gaze held hers intense and unwavering. "Is this my fault? Then can you block it? It's still better than watching you die." This was her fault. The dragon unleashed its final, devastating attack, a wave of pure destruction. "I'm begging you, move away. Let me suffer the consequences," she pleaded. But he only held her tighter, a sad, beautiful smile gracing his lips. "What a pity, I don't have the strength anymore. Just accept my act of kindness, since we have shared the same bed." "No!" Molly screamed, tears welling in her eyes. But before the flames could consume them, a magnificent, intricate purple shield materialized out of thin air, deflecting the blast completely. The flames died down, revealing a tall figure with ethereal silver hair and piercing blue eyes that were colder than ice. A chillingly calm voice echoed in the silent cave. "Can you explain to me in detail what you meant by sharing the same bed?" A tantalizing glimpse into a world of dangerous romance, where a delicate beauty holds the reins of a handsome, powerful man, a collar around his neck like a tamed beast. In the dark recesses of a cave, Molly's heart hammered with relief as she threw her arms around him. "Ilier, you're here," she cried. "We're saved." But her joy was cut short by a sharp sting that made him flinch in her arms. He collapsed against her, his voice a pained whisper. He was sorry. He had no strength left. His back was killing him. Molly's heart went out to him, telling him not to apologize and just rest while she applied medicine. From the side, the ethereal Ilier watched them, his own face pale with distress. The medicine he'd taken hadn't kicked in yet. He was paralyzed too, struggling uselessly as he muttered that he just wanted to rest for a while. Seeing Shide in such a state, he offered to help, pulling out his own medicine. But Shide, even while half unconscious, protested vehemently. He absolutely did not want a guy's hands all over him. His protests were ignored as Ilier, with a surprisingly rough touch, began slapping the ointment on, earning a loud yelp of pain from the injured man. The lighthearted moment vanished when Molly's expression turned grim. She looked at Ilier with piercing eyes, asking if he had an antidote for Kira dust. Ilier's gaze hardened as he confirmed her fears. Shide had indeed been poisoned by that wretched substance. He explained the horrifying truth of the poison. Dust was a forbidden substance that could numb the brain and turn humans into mindless puppets, only found in the darkest corners of the black market. Thankfully, Shide would recover by morning, but a chilling realization dawned on Molly. This banned poison was the very same one used to awaken the ancient dragon. Her mind raced. There was a connection she'd missed, a deviation from the original story. Had the plot changed after she fell from that cliff? Was this the infamous butterfly effect she'd only read about? She desperately asked Ilier if he knew anything, but he simply looked away, answering with a curt no. All while perfectly sculpted abs were on full display. Setting aside the mystery, Ilier presented her with a mountain of antidotes, telling her to keep them. He confessed that by teleporting here to save them, he had been eliminated from the competition. His expression was grave as he warned her to be careful. Molly's hunched. He'd sacrifice his chance for them. Clutching a vial, a fire ignited in her emerald eyes. She made a vow, her voice ringing with determination. She would win this competition and rescue his sister. Ilier was visibly taken aback, a faint blush dusting his cheeks as he stammered, at a loss for words. He couldn't form a coherent thought. After a moment, he turned away, only to turn back with a new proposal. He told her to take the medicine now, and he'll help her kill the dragon afterwards, asking if she already knew how to do it. She did. With the confidence of a seasoned player, she laid out the strategy. The dragon's weak point was between its eyebrows. Just like in the game, its attack patterns were predictable. She needed him to be the decoy to draw its fire, vowing that this time no one would get hurt because of her. The plan was simple. He would use a long-distance attack to get its attention first. Then he would lead the beast into a narrow canyon, boxing it in. After it unleashed its predictable physical and stun attacks, her chance would come. She would scale its massive back, and if it tried to shake her off, he would interrupt with another spell. Once his attack ended, she would sprint toward its head. The ancient dragon unleashed a torrent of fire, a roaring inferno meant to incinerate her, but Molly was faster, dodging the flames with impossible grace. Her eyes gleamed with focus. Now was her chance. With a powerful leap, she raised her sword high, plunging it deep into the beast's weak spot as a spray of hot blood erupted, painting the cave crimson. Silence descended upon the battlefield. Shortly after, the rescue team arrived. Shide, severely injured, was carried off on a stretcher, officially out of the competition, while Ilier was also disqualified for using forbidden teleportation magic. But for Molly, slaying the dragon brought a massive reward, a powerful buff and new equipment that skyrocketed her to the top of leaderboard. She was now in first place. All that remained was to defeat the demon clan and claim final victory. She hadn't forgotten the assassin who escaped. Shide had managed to mark them, a clue that would lead her to vengeance. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the forest, the original story's heroine ran for her life. Her face a mask of terror as sinister purple chains burst from the earth, ensnaring her ankles and dragging her down. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, a cruel playing on their lips. "Now you can't escape," the voice taunted, as the poor girl could only watch in horror, trapped and at the mercy of a new, unknown enemy. In the quiet solitude of the forest, Molly's thoughts drifted far away, wondering how the game she'd left behind was progressing. Suddenly, a hand clamped down on her shoulder, yanking her from her reverie. It was the story's original heroine, her face twisted in anguish and accusation, demanding to know Molly had saved that wretched villainess, Rutas. Tears streamed down the heroine's face as she clutched Molly's arm, her voice cracking with desperation. Ludas was the real culprit behind Molly's first death, she sobbed, and she had come back to this life for the sole purpose of punishing her. If Molly had died again, the thought was too much to bear. Molly watched her, a strange sense of detachment washing over her as she realized the immense guilt this girl carried, death that hadn't even been her fault. Pushing the complicated emotions aside, Molly's was firm as she stood, her own agenda taking precedence. She needed to know where Ludas was. The other girls looked away, but the heroine only stammered that Ludas was gone. Molly's eyes narrowed. She had come to settle the score with Ludas, and she wouldn't be deterred. She found Chide, the handsome crown prince, his golden hair glinting in the firelight, and confronted him with the same question. His expression was grim, his blue eyes filled with a somber light as he delivered the news. Ludas had vanished without a trace. Molly's heart sank. He explained it happened 2 days ago, right after her fall from the cliff. A curse escaped her lips. This was bad. Her mind raced, frantically trying to piece together this deviation from the plot. In the original novel, Ludas's disappearance was a major event, but it was tied to a route that shouldn't have been activated yet. More importantly, in the story, Molly herself was the one who pushed Ludas, but she hadn't done anything this time. A terrifying thought took root in her mind. Who was the new player in the pieces on the board? Her gaze met Shide's, her green eyes reflecting the flickering flames. She saw it instantly in the depths of his own troubled blue eyes, suspicion and doubt. The realization was a punch to the gut. The crown prince, the man she was trying to navigate a complex relationship, actually he suspected she had ordered a kidnapping. He tried to soften the blow, running a hand through his hair in frustration, saying he knew it wasn't her. But he had looked everywhere, asked everyone, and there were no other leads. Molly's patience snapped. Her voice was sharp, cutting through his excuses. If he truly believed she was the culprit, he wouldn't be pleading with her. He'd be using every method in his arsenal to coerce the information out of her to save his precious Ludas. He flinched, unable to meet her gaze, murmuring a pathetic apology about not wanting to give up any possibilities. That was the final straw. Molly turned her back on him, the chill between them colder than any winter night. But then, his voice rang out, filled with a sudden, startling certainty. He had figured out who did it. As she turned, he dropped the bombshell. Someone had attempted to assassinate him at the bottom of the cliff. The other girls gasped in horror. The audacity was unthinkable. For Molly, however, it was the final piece of the puzzle. The person who pushed Ludas, the mysterious figure who awakened the dragon in the cave, and the one who ultimately kidnapped her. It was all connected. A shadowy third party had been orchestrating everything from the beginning, with Ludas as their prize and Molly as the perfect scapegoat. Armed with this truth, the power dynamic shifted entirely. She faced the crown prince, a dangerous, knowing smile gracing her lips as she extended a hand, offering a deal. He saw the confidence in her eyes and knew she held the key. He just had to know what she knew. Molly let the silence stretch, enjoying his desperation. He finally broke, his pride crumbling as he begged her to just tell him the culprit's name, not even asking for her help to save Ludas. Her response was ice. Why should she? Someone had just tried to kill his only concern was Ludas. The truth had struck him, and he had no reply. Her voice dripped with righteous fury as she reminded him that Ludas was the one who pushed her off that cliff. If Shide hadn't been there to save her, she would be dead. So why in the world should she lift a finger to save her own attempted murder? Her eyes blazed with an intensity that made him tremble. "Then don't blame me," she declared, her voice low and menacing, "for using you to my heart's content. Meanwhile, in a gilded cage of vines and roses, Ludas's eyes fluttered open. A soft, masculine voice welcomed her back, calling her his princess. Before her stood a devastatingly handsome man who smiled as if they were old friends. He pointed to the candles, explaining they were made from a special dust, and casually mentioned he thought the poison he'd used on her would have been more effective. Ludas, however, was unintimidated, her gaze sharp as she cut him off. She already knew who he was. He chuckled, intrigued that she knew him when this was supposed to be their first meeting. But he dismissed it, getting to his true, twisted point. He had originally planned to bring her Molly's head as a gift, but someone had warned him away. He toyed with a strand of her hair, his touch sending a chill down her spine. Ludas's voice was cold as stone. Why did he want to kill Molly? He leaned in close, his smile never reaching his eyes. Because she ruined his plans, he tried to frame his obsession as a form of wooing, laughing as he assumed she must hate Molly as much as he did. A smirk played on Ludas's lips. Why should I hate her? His smile faltered, his own game turned against him. He leaned closer still, his voice a harsh whisper. And do you think you truly like me? What was he talking about? He pulled back, his expression turning melancholic. He told her not to bother. She could never give him what he wanted. Because the person who truly liked him, who truly cared for him, is already dead. A single red rose fell upon a cold, lonely gravestone, a testament to a love lost and a vengeance born from grief. The crown prince was left reeling, his world turned upside down by Molly's declaration. Just moments before he was the one in control, and now he was the one begging, completely dismissed by the wronged. She had reminded him of the brutal truth. Ludas, the woman he was so desperate to save, was the very person who had tried to murder Molly. If he hadn't been there, Molly would be a memory. Her question hung between them, and unforgiving. Why should I save her? Her ultimatum was clear, his inaction had forced her hand, and now she would use him as a pawn in her own game of survival. And as their battle raged on, the so-called villainess at the center of it all awoke in a twisted fairy tale. Her handsome captor greeted her with a chilling smile, commenting on how the poison he'd administered had failed to keep her unconscious. But Ludas was no damsel in distress, meeting his gaze with defiance. Amused, the man revealed his original, horrifying plan, to present Ludas with Molly's severed head as a courtship gift. He painted his murderous intent as a romantic gesture, a shared hatred for a common enemy. He laughed, believing he understood her heart. But Ludas shattered his delusion with a single, cutting question, refusing to be a character in his sick story. The charming mask fell away, and the man's own tragic tale was laid bare. He dismissed her feelings as meaningless, for they could never replace what he had lost. The person he sought, the one who truly loved him, was gone forever, buried beneath cold earth, leaving him with nothing but a burning desire for revenge. A new, dangerous game had just begun. The first time he ever laid eyes on her, the late afternoon sun was casting long shadows. A sudden splash broke the campus tranquility as she was shoved into the shimmering blue water of the fountain, her books and papers scattering around her like fallen leaves. From a balcony above, the cruel laughter of her tormentors echoed, the so-called friends who found amusement in her humiliation. One of them cackled with another girl as they tore at the pages of what looked like her novel, mocking her for daring to make herself the main character. Beside him, a handsome, dark-haired young man watched the scene unfold, his expression unreadable. "Who's that girl?" he wondered aloud. His companion scoffed, asking why he was even interested. The dark-haired boy's gaze hardened, and he turned away with a dismissive click of his tongue. Forget it, he didn't like people who were weak. However, as his golden eyes took one last look, a flicker of something else sparked within him. Her expression hadn't changed at all while she faced them. Soaked and humiliated, she showed no fear. In a way, she didn't sink at all. A single drop traced a path down her cheek, but her eyes held a chilling stoicism. He shook his head, pushing the thought away. Whatever, it had nothing to do with him. He turned his back on the scene, the image of her defiant face seared into his mind. He didn't know why, but from then on, he saw her everywhere, especially during the times he skipped class. He would watch from a distance as she endured endless bullying, always with that same unnervingly calm expression, as if she was simply used to the cruelty of the world. But then he'd see another side of her. A hidden softness would emerge when she thought no one was watching, her lips curling into a gentle, radiant smile as she doted on a grumpy little stray. His draws him to that smile, a warmth that seemed so out of place with the cold resilience she usually wore. He watched her carefully tend to the little creature's bandaged paws, her voice a soft murmur. "You're injured again today," she'd whisper, her touch full of a tenderness he'd never witnessed. One day, he left a small vial of medicine for her, a silent offering she discovered on the steps. The next time their paths crossed, the world was weeping. He found her kneeling in a memorial garden, utterly drenched by the relentless downpour. The mask of indifference was gone, shattered completely. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the rain, her body trembling with a sorrow so profound it seemed to shake the very air around her. He watched, unseen, his heart a confusing mix of emotions. His golden eyes drank in the sight of her raw despair. Ah, what a beautiful look of desperation in her eyes, he thought, a dark and possessive thrill coursing through him. A slow, dangerous smirk spread across his lips, his own eyes beginning to glow with an otherworldly light. That despair was a treasure, something he wanted to see again and again. He remembered another time, a scene that brought him a twisted sense of joy. She was smiling sweetly, but at her feet, her former bullies knelt in submission, utterly defeated. Watching her step all over her wretched enemies gave him so much pleasure at the time. But soon, others began to flock to her, drawn to her light. More and more people were gathering around her, and what an absolute eyesore they were. He wanted to make every single one of them by her side disappear. A silver-haired man had warned him then, advising him not to mess with the royal family. That man Ilier had sighed. It would be troublesome, and he hated dealing with such things. But his own obsession had grown too strong. There was really no other option. It seemed he had to kidnap her. He wanted her all to himself, every broken, beautiful piece. He would be the only one allowed to see those expressions on her face. And now, in the present, he held her captive in a greenhouse with vines and flowers. He knew her better than she thought. He whispered, his voice a possessive caress. He urged her to hurry and forget those who dearly love her. Just stay by my side, okay? But her eyes, though fearful, blazed with defiance. No, she spat, her voice unwavering. Songlun will definitely come and save me. His grip tightened, a flash of fury in his golden eyes. Why did she believe in that pathetic prince so much? Because she said, her gaze distant, this has all been predestined. The prince will climb the tower and rescue the imprisoned princess. This is what fate is. His anger melted away, replaced by a chilling intrigue. A slow, predatory smile crept onto his face. This so-called fate, what an interesting concept. He wondered what kind of reaction she would have if he were to overcome it completely. He would definitely make her as he vowed, even if it meant he had to ruin her in the process. He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his gaze. She didn't flinch. You'll never win against him, she declared, her faith absolute. He sighed, a wave of annoyance passing over him. What a bunch of annoying pests. He softened his expression, his voice becoming dangerously sweet. Good girl, he purred. Just let me get rid of those pests for you, and then I'll come right back. Meanwhile, from the greenhouse prison, Molly and Songlun walked through a sun-dappled forest. Songlun's face was a mask of suspicion. Was she really willing to save Ludas? Molly arched a brow. Why'd he ask? Hadn't he always wanted Ludas to disappear? He couldn't shake the feeling that she was up to something. That look on her face screamed, I'm thinking of doing something bad, and she just told him to relax. As long as he followed their agreement, she'd help him save her. Internally, Molly's mind was racing. If she failed this mission, she was just as screwed as he was. But Songlun was still hesitating. She's the culprit who pushed you down the cliff, he remembered with a pained expression. Why should I save her? Molly just crossed her arms, her expression cool as ice. He stammered, insisting there must be some sort of misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. A sharp voice cut through the air as the original Molly uttered. Would he rather believe that woman over the fiancé he'd known since childhood? Songlun was completely flustered, denying it meant anything like that before giving up entirely. He turned to our Molly, his voice filled with desperation. Tell me your conditions. Saying he'd even never act as again. He was willing to accept anything as long as it could save her. A flicker of understanding crossed Molly's face. So this was the kind of blind infatuation that had driven the original Molly to such extremes. She knew that it was pointless to pester him any longer. She smirked at him. You're really infatuated. She held up 3 fingers, her voice ringing with authority. I have 3 requirements. Number 1, she declared, break off our engagement. Songlun and the original Molly stared in shock. Are you sure? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Molly's eyes were like chips of green ice. She had no need for an unloyal fiancé. The moment he felt attracted to Ludas, he shouldn't have held on to any fantasies about her. His face fell, utterly defeated. He admitted it wasn't a decision he could make alone, but he promised to speak to his father and mitigate any backlash she might face. Molly held up a second finger. Number 2, after Ludas is saved, you cannot obstruct me from punishing her. He immediately asked the final condition. You'll know when it's time, she said with a mysterious smile. Her mind was already working ahead. Honestly, she didn't even need to do much. The Crown Prince would solve everything on his own. She just needed to speed up the plot and bring this fight to a swift conclusion. Time was running out after all. As they arrived at their destination, a slow, mocking clap echoed from a grand throne. There sat Adrien, the game's infamous villain, surrounded by a sea of blood-red roses. Welcome to my domain, how courageous, he drawled, his golden eyes gleaming with amusement. Humans, are you here for me? Molly's breath hitched, so this was Adrien. His striking aura was suffocating. Songlun stepped forward, his posture radiating a princely confidence he didn't feel. Sorry to bother you, but we're here to pick someone up. As expected of the Crown Prince, Molly thought he's not even frightened by this immense pressure. Adrien let out a soft chuckle. What might your excellency be laughing at? Songlun asked, his jaw tight. The Prince of the Humans is nothing much, Adrien mused, his gaze dismissive. He couldn't understand what Ludas found so attractive. His eyes slid to Molly. Compared to him, obviously better, wouldn't you agree? Molly cut him off, her voice flat. I'm not interested in either of you. She gave Adrien a venomous glare. Thanks to you, I almost died at the cliff. A bitter smile touched her lips. If it wasn't for Ilier, I would have already won. And you abandoned him just to mess around with this guy? Adrien's playful demeanor vanished, replaced by a chilling coldness as he toyed with a dagger. As I thought, he murmured, his smile turning deadly. I should just kill you. Songlun roared. He threw himself in front of Molly, shielding her protectively. A new voice chimed in, airy and light. Don't worry, I'm not going to let him do anything to you again. I just felt so sorry for our poor young master. Songlun had had enough. Enough of this nonsense. He threw his glove to the floor. I challenge you to a fight. If I win, you have to free Ludas. Molly's voice was calm and steady from behind him. And if you lose, then you may have our group's tower. She met Adrien's gaze with a confident smile. A flicker of interest crossed Adrien's face. The members of their team were the strongest humans. This was a perfect opportunity to eliminate them all. He recalled Ludas's defiant words. You'll never win against him. He sighed dramatically. I really didn't want to bother with you, but it looks like I need to prove myself to Ludas. He leaned back, a picture of lazy arrogance. Fine, I accept. I'll decide on the rules. I'll prepare the site. He began. I'm thinking the day after tomorrow. Set the date to tomorrow, Molly interrupted, her voice sharp, her mind raced. As expected, he wanted to delay. The brainwashing on Ludas must not be complete yet. She pressed her advantage, her eyes glinting. What are you scared? The sooner you obtain our tower, the better it will be for you. Unless there's a reason Ludas can't return now. For example, the use of brainwashing items or something. Adrien's smirk widened, his eyes flashing. He'd been caught. Very well, he conceded, his voice dangerously smooth. The game can be set for tomorrow. But for this fight, all 3 of your remaining team members must join. Molly and Songlun stood firm, ready for the battle to come. The jungle canopy cast dappled sunlight across his features, the light catching on his snow-white hair as his gaze, sharp and distant, cut through the lush greenery. A memory surfaced, a moment of almost comical tenderness before this perilous journey began. Molly had fussed over him like a doting mother, pressing a vial into his hand, an antidote for Caradust, she had said, something he absolutely had to bring. Then came a pouch of medicines, far more effective than the ones he had. With a sweet, reassuring smile, she handed him a messenger bird, explaining she could watch over him through its eyes. She didn't stop there, producing compressed food, treatments for heat stroke, even a sleeping bag, piling them into his arms. He had looked at her, utterly bewildered, and asked if she was his mom. But beneath the absurdity, a deep-seated worry for her safety gnawed at him. This worry was a familiar ache, one that had flared into a burning rage not long ago. The memory was sharp and bitter, that wretched man, leaning over him with a condescending smirk, his voice dripping with poison. Why so angry he had taunted unless it was about his precious sister? A cold threat followed, a warning whispered with chilling casualness. If Ilier didn't wish to die, he'd better not single finger on Molly. The sheer audacity sent a surge of fury through Ilier, his widening in disbelief as his hand shot out, grabbing the man's collar in a white-knuckled grip. But Ludas was unfazed, his smile never wavering. He sneered, just a disfavored daughter of a duke. So why the anger? Could it be that Ilier actually liked her? Ludas pulled him into a mock embrace, his words a venomous whisper against his ear. Like her. How was that even possible? Ilier had spat back, turning his head away in disgust. He was only doing this because she was the key to saving his sister, he insisted, his voice tight with desperation. That was the only reason she couldn't get hurt. It was just because of that reason, he told himself, even as Molly's face, framed by a bed of roses, flashed through his mind. Even his own attendant had asked him, his expression earnest under the pouring rain, if His Highness truly liked Molly. The question had struck him like a physical blow, a furious blush creeping up his neck as he covered his mouth, unable to form a coherent denial. How could he possibly entertain such feelings? Back in the present, different kind of fury was brewing. Karma's voice was shrill with indignation, her face twisted in a snarl. Why on earth did Acid have to go rescue that woman? She whirled on Songlun, her pigtails flying. That witch just pushed him off a cliff, and he was forgiving her so easily? Molly stood nearby, a single bead of sweat tracing a path down her temple. She didn't want to save her either, but her life was literally on the line. If the original female lead, Isabella, was successfully brainwashed, her divine mission would be a failure, and the cursed threads binding her fate would choke the life from her. Karma wasn't finished, her finger jabbing accusingly towards Molly. Did Songlun have any common sense at all, bringing his ex-fiancée to rescue his girlfriend? When would he finally stop torturing Molly? Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at him, her voice breaking as she asked why he was so cruel. Songlun looked pained, insisting that the incident was his fault and he would never let Molly get hurt again. Molly watched them, her expression unreadable. How would he prove that? She wondered aloud. A bitter wave of jealousy washed over her. It must be nice having a friend who cared so deeply. But Karma, ever practical, cut through the drama. What about the tower? Who'd defend it if they all left? Songlun simply stated that they were prepared. Just then, a silky voice cut through the air. There you are, it purred. It was Ludas, his smile as smug as ever, stepping out to greet them. He announced it was time to explain the final battle's rules. With a dramatic snap of his fingers, the world around them shifted. A beautiful princess is trapped in this high tower, he declared with a theatrical flourish. She can only be saved once you find the key. He held up a magnificent golden key, its heart-shaped head gleaming with magical light. The landscape was now a surreal dreamscape of floating platforms and ethereal fish swimming through the air. Lutas explained that there were many portals on the map, each leading to a random parallel space. And the key, he continued with a wink, is hidden in one of those spaces. By a witch, which of course was him. He tossed the key into a shimmering portal, posing the grand question. Will the princes find the key before the witch does? Molly stared, dumbfounded. This wasn't a battle, it was a VR game. Her mind instantly raced with business ideas. If she had this tech, she could make a fortune on board games and secure her escape route. Golden coins fled her eyes for a brief, greedy moment before she forced herself back to the present. This wasn't the priority. Wait a minute, she thought, a new worry dawning. Were all three of them playing this time? The plot of the final battle had completely changed. Luta simply smirked. Actually, he corrected, it's all four of us. He explained the rules of a simple game of rock, paper, scissors to determine their progress. Molly's mind whirred with calculations. She needed a 10-step head start. Did that mean they just had to 10 steps total? Song Lun, ever the noble one, voiced his concern about fairness. Lutas feigned a wounded expression, acting shocked that they would even think he might cheat. Molly wasn't buying it for a second. Who knew if there even was a key or if he'd just move it? He created the map. Cheating would be easy. She laid down her terms with unshakable confidence. Karma would be judge and would personally check where he hid the key. Lutas's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of annoyance crossing his face, though he quickly masked it. Thinking so lowly of him, he murmured. Molly gave him a saccharine sweet smile. It was all for fairness, she chirped. With a dismissive wave, he conceded. He was fine with that. He produced 2 maps, explaining the various difficulty levels of each area. The 5-star zones were the most dangerous. Molly pressed him further, asking if he'd control the scenes to launch sneak attacks. Unfortunately, he said with a serene smile, the scenes were all connected to other parallel universes and completely random. He couldn't control them. With a final snap of his fingers, he told them to leave. He could hide the key. As they walked away into a corridor of light, Molly's anxiety spiked. His skill was completely broken. Fighting him in his own space was impossible. Songlun advised her to just avoid being dragged into his space in the first place. Molly scoffed. They'd already been pulled in twice just by meeting him. How could they avoid it when they were standing in his dimension right now? That's when Songlun revealed the secret. The trigger for Lutas's skill was eye contact. If you don't look at his eyes, you can avoid it. Karma was stunned, wondering how he knew such a thing. Songlun brushed it aside, focusing on the immediate problem, the key's location. Molly knew at once. Given his obnoxious personality, he'd hide it in the most dangerous place possible. One of the 3 5-star places, she concluded, pointing at the map. Songlun agreed, recalling Lutas's vow to prove himself. It was obvious. Molly saw the entire pathetic scheme laid out. Lutas wanted Songlun to struggle through the most dangerous path and fail spectacularly. Then, Lutas himself would breeze through the same route to prove his superiority. She gave Songlun a firm order, do nothing when the game begins. She would find the key before Lutas even had a chance to enter. From his perch, Lutas watched them, a self-satisfied smirk gracing his lips. Then, let's start the game, he announced. Molly's green eyes narrowed, a sense of unease settling in her stomach. But was this game really going to be that easy? She had a terrible feeling that things were about to get much more complicated. He was so serious, he mused, as if giving her a little water was some grand act of mercy. The key, he explained with a sly smile, was in a very visible place. She'd see it as soon as she entered. Molly curtnod, her expression unreadable as she gazed up at the perilous, floating steps suspended over a shimmering abyss filled with ethereal blue fish. The game master's voice echoed, asking if decided who would take the first step. Songlun and Molly stood at the precipice, the intricate mandala-like pattern on the floor glowing beneath their feet. Without a moment's hesitation, the crown prince declared they would settle it with a game of rock, paper, scissors. His hand shot out in a fist, smashing her paper. He'd won, so he had to take 5 steps forward. A flicker of resolve crossed his handsome face. He decided it would be better to remove all the dangerous roads himself. That way, even if he chose the wrong path, Molly could get to the safe one. According to the game master, there was another world hidden behind this ornate golden mirror. He stepped onto the first platform, his posture straight and determined as he approached the shimmering, star-filled surface. He reached out a hesitant hand, his fingers brushing against the cool, dark glass. Suddenly, the mirror rippled and a horrifying swarm of bats burst forth, their leathery wings beating against the air in a cacophony of squeaks. It wasn't a portal, it was a cave. The creatures descended upon him, their sharp teeth sinking into his flesh as the ground beneath him turned to icy water. Looking back, he saw the frame was now wreathed in menacing flames. 3-star difficulty, he realized grimly, meant minor injuries but wasn't life-threatening. It seemed the only way out was forward. With a final burst of effort, he pushed through the illusion, stepping back onto the platform, leaving the nightmarish mirror behind. Molly watched the entire ordeal with a pensive expression, her finger resting on her chin, so she could just watch everything happening inside the mirror like it was a TV set. This system would prevent him from cheating, but could he really be honest? Her emerald eyes narrowed, filled with doubt as she glanced at the smug game master standing beside her. The game master simply smiled, watching as Songlun continued his treacherous journey, stepping from one floating platform to the next. For the next path, they once again resorted to the age-old tradition of rock, paper, scissors. His fist met her open palm. The game master laughed, waving a hand. What a pity, he'd won again. Songlun's eyes sharpened. He was starting to see a pattern. In this game, paper was the most advantageous choice, but the game master kept choosing rock. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He just wanted to make a fool of him in front of Ludas and Molly. As he stepped through the next mirror, he found himself in a desolate desert, the hot sand stinging his skin. He knew the game master wouldn't appear until he finished a 5-star difficulty scenario. First a horde of grotesque goblins, and then he was ensnared by thorny, sentient vines. He decided he would use his opponent's trick against him, advance through as many scenes as possible. He finally emerged, bruised and exhausted, his uniform torn and stained. The game master watched with a serene smile, clapping his hands softly. He'd finally finished a quarter of the map, and was now only 9 steps ahead. He offered a brief respite, asking if the prince was tired. But Song Lun, ever the proud crown prince, brushed it off. An injury this small didn't matter, he declared with a triumphant smirk as he sat on the victor's throne. The blood seeping through his pristine white uniform told a different story. They played again. His scissors against the game master's paper. Finally, it was time for the first 5-star difficulty on the main path. This was going to be dangerous. He knew he needed to be careful as he stepped through the mirror and was met with the vast, churning expanse of the ocean. Before he could even react, the water surged, pulling him under with a violent splash. He was sinking into the dark, cold depths. His eyes widened in horror as a monstrous, fish-like creature with rows of razor-sharp teeth lunged at him from the abyss. With a sickening snap, its jaws clamped down on his leg. The beast thrashed, its powerful tail whipping the water into a frenzy as it dragged him back to the surface. It tossed him into the air like a rag doll, its immense strength overwhelming him. The water crashed over him as the monster's tail fins sliced through the waves, binding him in an inescapable, crushing grip. Watching from the sidelines, the game master let out a delighted laugh, covering his mouth with a delicate hand. Was this really the crown prince? How utterly pathetic. He turned to Molly, his eyes twinkling with sadistic glee. How was it? Was she happy now? Molly's expression was one of pure disgust. Why should she be happy? But he continued, his face glowing as if he was waiting for a compliment. He was the man who left and hurt her, he cooed, the one who even brought his cheating partner along. Shouldn't she feel relieved to see him so miserable? Now that he thought about it, wasn't this the scumbag test she was always talking about? Molly's gaze was cold. It was a pity, she stated flatly, but she no longer liked him, so she didn't feel the happiness he was expecting. A thought crossed her mind. If the real Molly saw this, would she feel as relieved as he said? She pictured the original villainess with her innocent, doll-like features, but then a sly, almost vampiric smile spread across her face, revealing tiny fangs. Molly snapped out of it. That was enough, she told the little Molly in her head, telling her to stop the game even though it was really funny. She turned back to the game master, her voice laced with steel. Did he think the Emperor would let him go if she treated him like this? But the game master was unbothered. They were dueling, he reminded her. If the prince was dead, that just meant he was weak. Back in the mirror world, Song Lun was still struggling against Sea Serpent, its massive thrashing wildly. Hirsch frantically, but there was no key here either. It was true that the royal family's history showed most of them only had a few lovers. The game master's voice was like poison. How many people could achieve the kind of specificity he wanted? Song Lun knelt on the platform, a regal sword in hand, trying to recover. The game master's taunts continued. What about Ludas? Soon she would only love him. A chilling, possessive smile graced his lips, his fingers steepled in satisfaction. Molly's eyes flashed with fury. Was he brainwashed? How could that kind of fake love possibly satisfy him? The game master just chuckled. It didn't matter, he just had to get her. She clenched her fist. Seemed that what he wanted wasn't a doll to play when control. Her long hair whipped around her as she declared that this time she would fight with him. But from within the watery prison, Song Lun screamed at her not to interfere. He would get to the next 5-star difficulty scene. He insisted, telling her not to fall for the game master's tricks. But a fresh bruise marred his cheek, and his eyes burned with unwavering pride. He would win over him fairly. The game master's smile was infuriatingly calm. Then he would wait and see. He clenched his fist, ready for the next round. But the game master's hand was already open. Too bad, he chirped, he'd won this round. With a smug look, he took another step forward, increasing his lead. He now stood beside Molly, his victory palpable. He glanced back at the struggling prince with a triumphant smirk. It was his turn now. And of course, while our prince was fighting for his life, little Ilier was watching from afar, ready to kill the game master if he dared to hurt Molly. The swarm of bats that had injured Song Lun were instantly incinerated by the game master's flames. The thorny vines were sliced apart with a single elegant motion of his dagger. The goblin horde was left in a bloody pile, and the great sea monster, he ripped its still-beating heart right out of its chest, the warding crimson around him. He emerged from the mirror holding the grotesque trophy, a bored expression on his face. He had wondered how tough it would be after seeing the prince so drained. But Song Lun's eyes narrowed. A tense silence hangs in the air as Molly calculates her next move, her mind a whirlwind of strategy and prediction. She knows her opponent, this smug creator of worlds, is arrogant. To predict her path, he would probably let her win the first round. A calculated sacrifice to ensure his ultimate victory. Well then, she thinks, her hand clenching into a determined fist. Let games begin. The game board, a complex web paths and scenes, spreads out before her. She's just 3 steps away from the final, daunting 5-star scene where the key to her escape lies hidden within the Yander's territory. But he definitely won't let her win this time. Her only choice is to minimize his movements and serve him with hawk-like focus. From his throne, the creator watches her with a lazy, knowing smirk. Oh, he muses, she picked a really easy path. His voice, smooth as silk yet laced with condescension, echoes in the space. He challenges her to continue, to show him exactly where she thinks he had the key. The air crackles with anticipation as their hands meet in the space between them, ready for the fateful game of rock, paper, scissors. He taunts her, his smile widening, saying she's really selfish even if he let her move 5 steps ahead. She meets his gaze with a bright, confident of her own, apologizing cheekily that her competitive spirit is just quite high. Looks like he has no choice then. As she extends her own hand, her mind races. Continuing forward must mean the key is hidden behind Soren's scene, and moving right would prove her theory correct. Her emerald eyes narrow with intense concentration. Just then, the creator makes a subtle move, turning away from one of the paths. A jolt of realization shoots through her. He gave up his direction, which means she guessed right. The hardest scene in his path is now a 5-star one. He has 5 left, so if she wins this rock, paper, scissors, she'll reach her destination in one fell swoop. But she had to be smart. He would never let her win a 5-step move. The safest option was scissors. Even if she lost, he would only move 3 spots forward. Her gaze is unwavering, her mind set. But a flicker of a new, more daring idea flashes through her mind. The creator's voice cuts through her thoughts, dripping with impatience. Are you done deciding? He purrs, reminding her that she can't drag this out. After all, you're the true creator of this scene. A fire ignites in Molly's eyes. Bring it, a fierce grin spreading across her face. For someone as arrogant as him, what will he choose? The words hang in the air as they begin. Rock, paper, scissors. She throws out her hand, revealing paper just as he throws rock. A flicker of shock crosses his face. She won. A triumphant, knowing smile graces her lips. She knew he thought she would choose scissors, the safe option that would give her another chance, even if she lost. However, she likes a bit of excitement in her games. She leans in, her voice a low, dangerous whisper, asking if he's really thought this through. He could go through the same death experience as the other soul who crossed her. The feeling of death, she reminds him, is just as real as an actual death, even if his physical body remains unharmed. After all, Ludas was the one who stole away his precious fiancé. Is she really worth all this pain? But Molly's fight isn't for some other woman. Her goal is simple and desperate. She just wants to get through this alive. Her eyes snap open and the world transforms. She's standing in a sundialed garden where a delicate, ornate key glimmers among the leaves, practically calling to her. So he didn't trick her after all. The key was right here. But her relief is short-lived. A sliver of doubt creeps in. For a 5-star scene, isn't this a little too easy? She reaches out a tentative hand towards the prize. Suddenly, another hand snatches the key from the air. Is this yours? A sharp male voice asks. Molly looks up to see a handsome man with fiery red hair, his expression contorted with rage. Chide, he spits, his voice full of venom. Did you really do this? Why would you do such pointless things? He's absolutely furious, and Molly is utterly bewildered, asking what on earth he's talking about. Her eyes fall upon a girl with pink hair, sobbing pitifully on the ground. My kitten didn't mean to take your things away, the girl wails. Why would you kill him? The accusation hangs in the air, and Molly's blood's cold. Kill him? Is this that scene from Osho's story about killing a cat? She vehemently denies it, insisting she know nothing about it, but a horrifying realization dawns on her moving on its own, against her will. The statuesque crown prince, Song, arrives on the scene, his presence commanding attention. What are you all doing? He asks, his gaze sweeping over the dramatic tableau. Soren holds up the stolen key, his voice dripping with false righteousness. For this damn thing, he declares, your future fiancé killed Ludas's kitten. I just found it there, he lies smoothly. Molly is screaming internally. When would she have had the time to do something so horrible? The original Molly would never, and neither would she. The crown prince's gaze is cold as he looks at Soren. That damn thing Soren gifted to me, he says, his voice dangerously low. But that's still not an excuse to kill a cat. He turns his icy blue eyes on Molly. Just for this. Since when did you become this cruel and heartless? The words pierce her heart like shards of glass. Just for this pointless object. Her eyes widen in stunned disbelief. Pointless object, you say? The phrase echoes in her mind, a cruel mockery of something she once held dear. What do you mean by those words? She asks, her voice trembling. Do you also believe I did it? Before he can answer, the crying girl, Rutas, points a shaking finger at her, claiming she saw everything from her window. Molly explodes frustration. I was in the greenhouse the entire time. What could you have possibly seen? Rutas retorts, then who else would do such a thing? A cold dread settles in Molly's stomach. This afternoon, only she was present. A triumphant ha escaped Soren's lips. Desperate, Molly turns her one hope. We grew up together. You know I wouldn't do such a thing. But he turns away, his profile cold and unforgiving. Disregarding your previous stubbornness, you've gone this time, he says flatly. Her world crumbles. Why doesn't any of them believe Molly? He takes the key from his hand, his knuckles turning white as he grips it tightly. I'm truly so disappointed in you. With a sickening crack, the key snaps in two. No! The scream is silent, trapped in her throat. Her eyes reflect the shattered pieces of her hope. The key broke. Did I lose this round? The dark consequences flood her mind. Ludas will be brainwashed into liking him. I failed my task. A single, terrifying question remains. Will I die? The world fractures around her. Her consciousness fades, the last vestiges of Molly's spirit whispering a mournful plea. I really didn't kill the cat. Why do none of you boo me? Why? The crown prince stands unmoved, a cold statue amidst her despair. Why is it that not even you believe me? A memory surfaces, sweet and painful. A young crown prince peeks through the bushes, a playful smile on his face. Molly, I found you. She jumps, startled. Crown Prince? She quickly curtsies, trying to hide her tear-stained face. Good morning, Crown Prince. He notices immediately. Why are you crying? Mumbling about sand in her eyes, but he gently wipes a tear from her cheek. Father said that lying is not good. His sapphire eyes are filled with pure, undiluted concern. He then looks down and sees her small feet bleeding from the ill-fitting heels. Mom said that to be the crown princess, I need to be a perfect lady, he explains softly. Wearing heels in an elegant way is required. He kneels before her, his expression softening. He gently takes her foot in his hands, touch a balm to her pain. I will talk with the Duke to not let you wear shoes that hurt you again. You don't need to force yourself to be the perfect fiancé. Her cheeks flush as he looks up at her. Being yourself is enough. Because I will still love you no matter how you are. I believe you. Those 3 words were her entire world, the foundation of her life. A single tear falls, a memory of a promise now broken. The scene shifts. At the academy, cruel whispers follow her like shadows. Oh my, isn't this the virtual cat maniac Molly? I heard the ghost cats are all potential murderers. You should be careful. Molly whirls on them, her pride wounded. Hey, do you know what you are saying right now? How dare you insult the crown prince's fiancé? Don't you want it anymore? A girl snickers from the shadows. She's just the Duke's daughter who is not even favored by the Duke. Look how arrogant she is. Molly is stunned, confused. What are you talking about? What did I do that's wrong? The girl sneers, don't just rely on the crown prince to protect you. In this kind of matter, do you think he will still protect you? Suddenly, a sharp snap echoes as a hand strikes another student. Molly stares in horror, her own hand still at her side. She turns, her eyes wide with shock. The crown prince stands there, his expression grim. He rushes to the side of the crying girl who is slapped. Are you okay? She whimpers that her ankle is just sprained. Molly's heart breaks all over again. Songlan, please believe me, she begs, but he just looks down at her, his eyes devoid of any warmth. He's not saying anything. But those cold eyes, it's enough to bring me down. Her world plunges into darkness, and she feels herself drowning. Sadness, anger, hopeless. She's sinking in an ocean of despair, unable to differentiate Molly's feelings from her own. How painful. I don't care what others think about me, but you, only you. A ghostly apparition of the creator appears beside her. Ah, this is why. His voice booms through the water. Molly! Wake up. He's calling for her, but she knows the truth. He's only worried about saving Ludas. He chose to believe the girl that he just met over us. Die? She thinks numbly, but the real Molly is already dead. There is no key. He's slowly pushing her to the brink of despair. A cold embrace surrounds her as the ghost of the original Molly holds her from behind. Don't you want to see it? The ghost whispers, attempting poison in her ear. The guilty expression he'll have on his face when he finds out we are dead. The thought is intoxicating. If I die, then it'll make him regret it, right? That's right. So let's leave together, but that's your own thoughts. Why should I leave with you? They sink deeper into the abyss. Because we both are the same in this world, we are both lonely. With no one standing by our side. Molly's eyes are empty. There's no key anymore. Outside the game, the creator shouts her name in a panic. Ludas asks what will happen if she doesn't wake up. If her mind is dead, the creator explains grimly, then she will be stuck in a vegetative state. The crown prince's face is a mask of horror and dawning regret. I give up, he cries out, desperation cracking his voice. Hurry and let Molly leave the scenario. The creator looks at him with utter contempt. That would be hard. I can't make any changes to what happens within the scenario. And why are you worried about Molly now? You're the reason she doesn't want to wake up. His final words land like a death sentence, echoing in the terrible silence. You are the culprit. In the cold, silent depths of her fading consciousness, a voice sliced through the darkness, desperate and familiar. Molly, can you hear me? Her eyes fluttered open in the watery abyss. That voice, it was Ilier. It was coming from the brilliant necklace he had given her, a beacon in the suffocating gloom. His phantom image appeared, his face etched with panic, pleading with her to wake up to not fall asleep. But her chest was a knot of agony, a crushing weight that made every breath a struggle. She was about to suffocate. He insisted she hadn't lost the game yet, that she had to remember the rules. What was he even saying? Her mind was a fog of confusion and pain. Then a colder, more insidious voice slithered into her thoughts, a venomous whisper telling her not to listen, that Ilier was manipulating her. It was the voice of her own despair, asking if she was really willing to give up on somebody who didn't even love her. He was only worried, it hissed, that she wouldn't be able to save his precious younger sister. But Ilier's voice breathed through the poison, warm and frantic. He begged to go up, his ethereal form embracing her. He didn't care if they lost the competition, all that mattered was that she lived. As long as she could live, that was enough. But the darkness was done with her, sneering that there was nobody waiting her in this wretched world. Just one more time, Ilier's voice pleaded, raw with emotion. He wanted to see her. Her brilliant green eyes snapped open, a flicker of defiance rekindled within her soul. She reached out a trembling hand, trying to grasp onto his light. But the voice of her past self screamed that he was lying to her. If she couldn't save his sister, Ilier would cast her aside and never care about her again. The ghost of her past self continued its torment, suggesting it was better let Songlan have a change of heart, to make him remember them for the rest of his life. But what good was regret to a dead girl? Of course it mattered, the ghost snarled, her face contorting with the memory of betrayal. He had promised to love only her, to believe her no matter what. The memory of his broken promises was a fresh wound, and the hatred she felt for him was a burning fire in her soul. He was the one who all her hopes. He must be made to remember. Ilier's gentle voice cut through her rage once more. Even if he remembers, then what? What about her own desires, the ones she had risked everything to save? Her past self stammered, unable to answer. Ilier's spectral hand clasped hers, a touch both real and imagined. He told her to let go. If she continued down this path, there would only be endless suffering waiting for her. The voice of despair echoed his words, painting a bleak future where she would be abandoned by everyone she loved dearly, and betrayed by the people she trusted. She would be forced to bear their unreasonable cruelty in a terrible world where no one cared, where no one would ever help her. She closed her eyes, the weight of it all pressing down on her. Did she really wish to return to a world like that? A voice boomed from the heavens, the game master's condescending tone breaking her reverie. He never thought she would actually return, and what a pity the key was broken. Since she was unable to open the door, she had lost this round. Sprawled on the floor, defeated, she felt a surge of defiance. Pushing herself up, voice was quiet but firm. Who said she couldn't open the door? She acknowledged that this world was indeed a place. They all called her Molly, but not a single soul knew her real name. A smirk touched her lips. Now there was somebody waiting for her to return. With a roar of determination, she launched a devastating kick, turning the locked door into splinters. She landed gracefully in the snowy courtyard outside. The rules never specified that it had to be opened with a key. Her eyes glittered with triumph. She had won this round. Songlun was speechless, calling her unreasonable. She laughed, reminding him that he destroyed the props first, so by comparison, she was being perfectly reasonable. She turned to the tiny referee, who confirmed Molly was the winner. To everyone's surprise, Songlun burst into hearty laughter. He admitted she was a worthy opponent, finally understanding why His Highness Ilier was so fond of her. As the little referee urged a return, Molly stopped her. Her voice dropped, becoming dangerously cold. She hadn't forgotten the little matter of being pushed off a cliff. Ludas grabbed her sleeve, her eyes wide with fear, and Molly's gaze sharpened with suspicion. Back in the real world, Molly held the dazed girl, a terrible realization dawning on her. It had only been 3 days, but something was wrong. What was wrong with Ludas? Songlun feigned ignorance, asking what she was talking about. After all, wasn't Ludas still sitting prettily right over there? Molly's blood ran cold as she saw the real Ludas sitting with vacant eyes. She frowned, accusing Songlun of increasing the dosage of the medicine. He gave a lazy, chilling smile, admitting he gave her just enough for her body to handle, a mere 3 times the normal dosage. He'd already told her the outcome wouldn't change. Enraged at his callousness, Molly drew her sword. What did he treat human lives as? She lunged, the point of her blade stopping a hair's breadth from his throat. With a casual snap of his fingers, the world twisted. A prison of thorny red roses erupted around her, and he smirked, declaring himself invincible in this space. Invincible only in this space? She scoffed. She held up a shimmering shard, her own eyes glowing with a cunning light. With a deafening crack, his perfect world shattered like a broken mirror. He stared in disbelief, demanding to know what she had done. A serene smile graced her lips. She did say she understood him very well, didn't she? The illusion dissolved into darkness. They crashed back into reality, landing in a lush garden. Karma stirred beneath her, asking if they were back. Her blonde companion was baffled, asking how they managed to get out. She explained coolly that she'd thrown a mini long-distance grenade, and the shockwave had awakened them all. Songlun emerged from the smoke, an amused glint in his eyes. Since she understood him so well, was she perhaps interested in him? Piff, she retorted, holding Karma protectively. She didn't have such peculiar interests. She knew his power required eye contact to drag them into his consciousness. His plan was simply to trap them there until time ran out. But she had spent a long time thinking about how to counter his ability, and in the end, she found the perfect solution, and that is sunglasses. She whipped on a pair of aviators with a flourish, looking impossibly cool. Her companions gazed at her in shabby-fied awe. She'd even brought pairs for them. Songlun was unimpressed, dark energy crackling in his palm. Did she really think such an insignificant trick could possibly defeat him? He unleashed a terrifying wave of purple energy. Her teammates jumped in front of her, creating a barrier. They told her to go first and get the crystal while they held him off. With a determined nod, she took off. Elsewhere, enemy students were searching for a mere human female who had trespassed on their territory. They laughed at the idea of anyone being stupid enough to challenge the crystal's automated defenses. A voice came from behind them. "My apologies," she said coolly. "I am in fact stupid enough to do just that," as she knocked one out with a karate chop. It was the human female. Before they could react, she took them all down with a powerful psychic blast. She saw her goal, the massive blue crystal pulsating with power. She knew it fired at a deadly beam every 20 seconds. A monster wolf was instantly vaporized by the blast, proving its lethal power. She dodged the next attack, her brow furrowed. The crystal was impregnable. She couldn't destroy it with normal attacks. She drew her sword, was now pulsing with dark, chained energy. Suddenly, Songlun was behind her, his voice dripping with malice. How could she abandon her comrades? He decided to make her suffer a little. A torrent of dark lightning racked her body, forcing her to an agony. He offered to stop if she just gave up. But giving up was not in her vocabulary. She struggled back to her feet, using her sword as a crutch, her eyes fixed on the crystal. He was furious. Didn't she hear him? The crystal was about to fire again. She wouldn't withstand the next attack. He rushed forward, grabbing her from behind, pulling her back. Just a massive beam of light erupted. It would be a hassle for him if she died. He was stunned by her raw power. How was she so strong? She had planted her feet, aiming her sword directly at the beam, absorbing its cataclysmic energy. Power crackled around her, her eyes blazing with unwavering resolve. The energy surged through her blade, and with a final, desperate cry, she unleashed it, shattering the crystal into a million glittering pieces. A system window appeared. Red team wins. As the shards rained down, she let out a long breath. Finally, it's over. The long, arduous journey had come to an end. The morning light streamed into Molly's recovery room, but the atmosphere was anything but peaceful. Song Lun, ever the doting caretaker, held up a perfectly peeled apple, insisting it was far better than anything the standard doctors could provide. His gentle smile was immediately overshadowed by a chilling presence as Ilier stood silently by, his silver hair and icy gaze adding a layer of frost to the room. But the relative calm shattered when the door opened and Prince Shide, her supposed fiancé, stormed in with a face like thunder. "Hey, that's my fiancé," he declared, his voice with possessive anger. "Aren't you guys getting a little too close?" Molly sat up in her bed, a wave of exhaustion washing over her as she stared at the three ridiculously handsome men crowding her sickbed. Why, she groaned, were they all here? Shide had brought flowers, Ilier was offering to treat her, and Songlun had even made soup. Her head throbbed. "I thought we broke off the engagement," she thought, her etching in irritation. The sheer audacity! Her internal monologue was a scream of frustration. "You guys are too noisy." "Why," she asked, trying to keep her voice level, "are you even here?" Their answers were a chorus of unwanted concern. To visit, to treat her, to discuss proper matters. That was the last straw. "Okay, you stay," she said, pointing a decisive finger at Shide. "The rest of you get out." With a resounding slam, she kicked Ilier and Songlun out of her room, leaving an awkward silence in their wake. Alone with the prince, Molly's patience was wearing thin. Shide, however, seemed oblivious, immediately asking about Ludas's condition. He explained that Ludas was still being treated, and thank God the antidote had worked just in time. But a shadow of suspicion crossed his handsome features. It was 3 times the normal amount of poison. How could something like that have happened to her? Molly met his gaze, her own eyes cool and distant. "So what's your business here?" Shide's expression softened slightly. He revealed he had started a reinvestigation into the incident with Killed Cat, promising that as long as she wasn't the culprit, he would definitely restore her reputation. His voice dropped and he mentioned their engagement. "I got it," Molly cut him off, her tone sharp. "I hope you keep your promise too." A flicker of regret crossed his face. He knew she had endured a lot of grievance recently. "That's why. Can you give me a chance to redeem myself?" he pleaded, his blue eyes earnest. He opened his hand, revealing a breathtakingly ornate brooch sparkling with jewels. Molly stared at it, utterly bewildered. "Why are you giving me a brooch?" Then it hit her like a bolt of lightning. The awards gala for the competition was in a few days. It was a grand affair, a night where partners were meant to attend wearing matching brooches. Her heart sank as she remembered the original novel's plot. Shide and Ludas attending together. How could she have forgotten this critical event? His next words confirmed her fears. "Be my partner." Her expression hardened. "In the past, haven't you always invited Ludas? Is she not able to attend the gala this time?" Shide looked away, a faint blush on his cheeks. He just felt it would be better if they attended together this time. Molly's mind raced. She remembered the cruel fate of the original Ludas, who became a laughingstock for Turnip alone, bullied more harshly than ever before. Later, after Shide had left, Ilier stood in her room, holding the very same brooch. "Did he end up inviting you?" he asked, his voice low. She confirmed, sighing. "Well then, did you agree to it?" Ilier pressed. Molly scoffed. "Ha, as if. I don't ever want to get involved with that fella again." Ilier's expression remained stoic, but a chibi version of him cheekily offered to toss the brooch away for her. Flustered, Molly snatched it back. "Don't need to do that, just put it back." Though a part of her desperately wanted to throw it away, it just didn't feel right. As she contemplated, Ilier's intense gaze fell upon her. Then he presented her with a different piece, a delicate silver earring shaped like a flower. "Would you be willing to go with me?" Molly was stunned into silence. Him, the cold, distant Ilier, asking her to a gala? "You've never invited a female partner to a gala before," she stammered. "Weren't you planning to ask the king for medicine to treat your little sister?" He admitted that was true, but he was just worried something might happen to her. "Is that so?" she murmured, her suspicion piqued. She studied his face, trying to decipher his true intentions. "Is there anything else?" asked. Ilier faltered, a rare blush creeping up his neck as he ran a hand through his hair, his shirt collar falling open to reveal his sculpted chest. "No, it's nothing," he mumbled, before quickly adding, "Forget it, I'll help you return this brooch." As he turned to leave, Molly called out, "Right, do you know where Shide's room is?" A scowl immediately formed on his handsome face. "Huh? How would I know?" But despite his protests, he ultimately told her where to find the prince. "So he does know where it is," Molly thought with a smirk. When she arrived at Shide's room, he looked surprised to see her. He congratulated her on being awarded MVP of the competition, his tone warm. He asked about her injuries, and she assured him she was healing well, thanking him for his help during the fall. "It was my honor to be able to save such a beautiful princess," he said smoothly, his smile framed by a shower of imaginary roses. Molly remained unmoved by the flattery. She knew the truth. A soft, knowing smile graced her lips. "Indeed, you became the game's beloved character because of the way you treated everyone equally to your sense of justice." Shide's cheeks flushed with a faint pink at her praise. "Your performance this time wasn't that bad," she continued, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "But don't slip next time." The romantic atmosphere evaporated instantly. "Slip?" he repeated, his brow furrowing. "You saw how I fell off the cliff. Of course you were standing next to me." His gaze darkened with the memory. "Back then you were looking at the scenery, and maybe the ground was too slippery. You suddenly fell down the cliff face." A horrifying flashback replayed in his mind, her body tumbling into the abyss. The image was seared into his memory. Molly's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. "Are you sure you saw it clearly?" "I was definitely pushed by Ludas." Shide's face hardened into a mask of disappointment. "What do you mean?" "Ludas wanted to pull you back up, but she was a Stahind. She didn't even touch you." "How could you insult Ludas like this?" Molly's blood ran cold. What's happening? Did everyone else see it that way too? The bystanders? The wolf? All of them? A fragmented memory surfaced. A girl with pigtails sprang frantically. "I saw it. I saw Ludas push you off." But then the memory warped, the girl's voice changing. "But everyone else swears that you slipped on your own." Molly's mind was a whirlwind of confusion and suspicion. "It's too suspicious." Thinking back the competition, everyone's personalities suddenly changed. Everyone's false memories, and Molly killing the cat. The pieces were clicking into place, forming a terrifying picture. A dark power was at play, manipulating memories and reality itself. A cold resolve settled in her heart. "I should find an opportunity to meet Ludas." She had to get to the bottom of this twisted conspiracy before it consumed her completely. The air in the academy was thick with poison, whispers slithering through the grand halls like snakes in the grass. The latest gossip was on everyone's lips. That wretched Molly had tried to push the sweet, innocent Ludas off a cliff during the competition. Some escaped, but Molly, in her wicked haste, lost her own balance and fell instead. "Oh, she definitely did that to herself." The students sneered, their faces a mask of righteous indignation. "She deserves it," they spat, finding grim satisfaction in her misfortune. But the real shocker, the news that sent ripples of disbelief through the crowd, was that His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince Songlun, had invited that very venomous woman to the party tonight. What could he possibly be thinking inviting such a person? They couldn't understand it, their hearts burning with jealousy and confusion. Why did that handsome Shide have to save her? A vicious person like that should have been left to meet her demise. Meanwhile, the subject of their hatred stood with an unbothered, almost amused smile, her green eyes shimmering with a secret confidence. She coolly faced the stunning silver-haired man before her, Ilier, whose presence alone could silence a room. So, she had called him here just for this. He gestured towards a box, revealing an exquisite jeweled brooch. A playful idea sparked in his piercing blue eyes. Since they were going to wear the same brooch, he murmured, his voice a low, captivating rumble, they should match their outfits too. Molly's gaze fell upon the garment he had prepared, and her breath caught in her throat. It was a masterpiece of black lace and deep crimson, a dress fit for a dark queen. The workmanship was so fine, so intricate. This wasn't something thrown together in a hurry. A startling realization dawned on her. He must have prepared this a long time ago. Her mind was a whirlwind of other concerns. Ludas was being treated by the royal physician, an arrangement made by Songlun himself, making her completely unapproachable. There was something she desperately needed to ask her, a piece of a puzzle only Ludas could provide. Seeing the flicker of distraction in her eyes, Ilier's brow furrowed slightly. He asked if she didn't like it. Molly immediately snapped back to the present, her lips curving into a dazzling smile. No, she liked it a lot, she assured him. It definitely suited her tastes. A quiet tension settled between them as his gaze lingered on her. By the way he asked, his tone deceptively casual, had she returned the brooch to Songlun. Molly's heart skipped a beat. She confirmed, her voice barely a whisper. Did he say anything? Ilier pressed, his eyes narrowing, searching her face for any sign of a lie. He leaned in closer, his fingers gently brushing her chin, forcing her to meet his intense gaze. Did she care about him that much, he asked, a dangerous hint of jealousy coloring his words. Molly was completely flustered, a question mark materializing above her head. No, of course not, she was just asking, she stammered, trying to regain her composure. He didn't say anything, she lied, hoping he would drop it. Internally, she analyzed the situation, judging by his reaction. It seemed like nothing had happened, which was odd. Just then, two maids in adorable bunny-eared uniforms burst into the room, their voices filled with panic. Miss Molly, it's getting late, they chirped, we should start getting you ready. Molly and one of the maids jumped, startled by the sudden intrusion. Ilier, however, remained perfectly relaxed, leaning back with an air of nonchalant grace. Wait, it's only 10 o'clock in the morning, he pointed out, a picture of statuesque beauty even while lounging. In another part of the palace, a far colder confrontation was taking place. Crown Prince Songlun held up the very same brooch, his expression stormy as he faced Ilier. This is the brooch he gave Molly, so why did Ilier have it? He was here to return it, he stated, his voice tight with restrained anger. Ilier, standing on the balcony with an infuriatingly calm demeanor, simply waved a dismissive hand. It's because Molly has already agreed to go with me, he answered, each word a carefully aimed dart. Songlun was stunned into silence. Why, he demanded, his composure cracking. Ilier's lips curved into a cruel smirk. It's probably because she thinks you have someone else accompanying you, he taunted Tut. But his true attack was far more insidious. No, what I'm really saying is, have you really been in love with Molly? The question hung in the air, sharp and accusatory, striking at the Songlun's pride. The prince's eyes blazed with fury, his face contorting into a mask of rage. You need to think carefully, he snarled, his voice a low growl. Molly is me fiancé. The words, however, had hit their mark, ricocheting back to pierce Ilier's own heart. I like Molly. The thought was a foreign, shocking concept. How is that even possible? Memories flooded his mind of her standing in the rain, of her defiant eyes, the strange pull he felt towards her. When did this happen? When did this wretched, fascinating woman burrow her way into his soul? At the grand banquet hall, the party was in full swing, and so were the venomous tongues of the nobility. Look, they whispered, pointing towards the entrance. As expected, His Royal Highness Songlun is accompanied by Ludas. The two of them made a radiant pair, the perfect couple in everyone's eyes. Of course, he wouldn't invite Molly. That would be absurd. Ludas clung to his arm, a picture of demure perfection, while Songlun maintained a stoic facade. But as the crowd murmured their approval, another pair made their entrance, and a collective gasp swept through the room. Oh my god, is that Molly? And she's with His Highness Ilier? Lutas's smile vanished, replaced by a flash of pure venom as she glared at the newcomers. Molly was a vision, a dark star descending upon the glittering assembly. Her black and red gown flowed around her like midnight and embers, a stark, breathtaking contrast to the pastel silks of the other ladies. On Ilier's arm, she radiated a dangerous and captivating beauty, every inch the villainess they all believed her to be. The gossip shifted instantly, the whispers turning sharp and cruel. Heavens! As the fiancée of the human crown prince, she unexpectedly arrived with the young master of the demon clan. She must have failed to seduce Songlun and simply moved on to Ilier, the shameless creature. Her goal is just to be a queen, they hissed. Doesn't matter if it's the human or demon queen. Fortunately, Ines was quick-witted enough to get rid of that scheming woman in time. Suddenly, a herald's voice boomed through the hall. His Majesty the King has arrived. The king appeared on a grand balcony, regal and imposing in his red cape. He welcomed everyone to the banquet, raising a glass of wine to toast their recent victory in the competition. He was so proud he boomed, though some nobles sneered in the corner. What was he so proud of? It was one victory after 4 years of consecutive losses. The king ignored them, his voice carrying over the crowd. It was time to congratulate the MVP of this victory. Molly. Oh, all eyes turned to her, stepped forward, curtsying with a grace that silenced the whispers. I pay my respects to your majesty, she said, her voice clear and steady. The king smiled, reminding her of the promise he'd made to fulfill any wish for the MVP. So, tell me, what do you want? Molly lifted her head, her green eyes locking with his, her expression deadly serious. Reporting back to your majesty, she began, I want the clock of Bosidonia. A stunned silence fell over the hall. The crowd exchanged confused glances. What was that? No one had ever heard of it. Songlun's blood ran cold. How could she possibly know of that artifact? It was a state secret, known only to him and his father. His mind raced back to her 3 demands, and the horrifying truth dawned on him. This was it. Her last demands for him to help her cast off suspicion, and this was how she was doing it. Was he supposed to just stand by and let this happen? He glanced at his father, whose face was a thunderous mask of shock and suspicion. Molly pressed her advantage, her voice laced with a sweet, undeniable challenge. His Majesty the King has always kept his promises, she cooed, a cunning glint in her eyes. Regarding this small request, you'll definitely fulfill it, right? The king's jaw tightened, his authority publicly challenged by this audacious girl. He had no choice. After the celebration, he conceded through gritted teeth. He would assign people to deliver it to her. Molly curtsied deeply, a triumphant smile playing on her lips. I thank His Majesty the King. As the king swept from the balcony, he grabbed his son's arm, his voice a furious whisper. Were you the one who told her about the clock of Bosidonia? Songlun bowed his head in shame. Yes, he admitted. The face was dark with rage. You good-for-nothing fool, he hissed. He gave his son a chilling order. Observe her closely. Make sure to watch who Molly gives that clock to. Yes, Father, Songlun replied, his own heart a knot of dread. Later, Molly stood on a quiet balcony, the cool night air a welcome relief. The atmosphere in the hall had been suffocatingly tense, but she had succeeded. Plan was in motion. This time, she thrummed satisfaction. Ilier's younger sister will be able to escape from danger for now. A soft voice broke her reverie. Would you be willing to dance one song with me? It was Ilier, looking impossibly handsome as he extended a hand towards her. Surrounded by fragrant blossoms, Molly smiled warmly. Of course, she said, placing her hand in his. They glided onto the dance floor, a perfect, elegant pair moving as one. But even in his arms, the hateful wallowed her. It's all her fault, they muttered, that Shide was injured trying to save Ludas from her wicked plot. For the MVP to be such a shameful person. Molly's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but Ilier noticed everything. Are you okay? He asked, his blue eyes filled with genuine concern. He offered to make them shut up, his protective instincts flaring. She shook her head. I'm fine, just a little wary, she insisted, though she couldn't help but wonder why the rumors had twisted so completely. Ilier's gaze softened. He wasn't talking about the rumors. Doesn't it feel infuriating to be so misunderstood? She was still fine, she said, trying to convince herself as much as him. Because of his earlier warning, they didn't dare harm her directly. They were just talking behind her back, and words couldn't hurt her. After all, a sad, distant look in her eyes, the one they're talking about is Molly, not the real. An image of the original Molly, lonely and isolated on a balcony, flashed in her mind. A choice cuts through her thoughts. Why are you not dancing with the crown prince, but instead standing here and thinking? Molly turned to find Ludas standing there, her expression a mixture of contempt and curiosity. Molly arched a perfect eyebrow, her composure flawless. Aren't you doing the same? She retorted smoothly. Why did you abandon his Ilier and come out here? The two rivals stood facing each other, the golden light of the ballroom casting long shadows, the air crackling with unspoken animosity. On the moonlit balcony, the air was thick with unspoken accusation. Molly stood before Ludas, her voice a low murmur as she mentioned the strange rumors swirling around campus. With a saccharine smile that didn't reach her eyes, Ludas turned, finding it utterly ridiculous that some students were saying was the one who pushed Lutas. But Ludas's expression was ice, her voice cutting through the night. Those weren't rumors, she insisted, her eyes on Molly. She remembered it clearly. It was Molly who pushed her down. Molly feigned shock, her voice a small whisper asking if it was truly her. Ludas pressed on, a cruel twist to her lips, asking if Molly had seen it with her own two eyes, dismissing it as a mere suspicion. Ludas was adamant, her voice rising with conviction. She definitely remembered correctly. Her facade began to crack, her hand flying to her mouth as she feigned being overwhelmed. The world around her seemed to bleed into a furious red as she spat out her true venom. She kept quiet before only because Songlun used to like Molly, but how dare Molly question her now? The memory, false as it was, flashed in her mind, a hand shoving her from behind. Molly's heart hammered in her chest, a wave of confusion washing over her. Did she really do it? Had she remembered wrong? But wait, a jolt of clarity shot through her. Whose memory these? This wasn't her memory. It was the game's plotline playing out. Her expression hardened with defiance. No, it couldn't be her. Her hand clenched into a tight fist at her side. She had to fight back. That time, she told Ludas with unwavering certainty she clearly wanted to save her. Ludas's eyes widened in feigned disbelief. She pushed you down the cliff, she shrieked, her voice dripping with false victimhood. Then tell me, who else could have pushed me off? Molly was momentarily silenced, her mind racing. That was his right, and wasn't by her, the villainess. So who was the real murderer? Was it someone else who hated Ludas? She stared at Ludas, a sudden doubt creeping in as she saw a flicker of something calculating in the other girl's eyes. Hey, what was with that expression? Could it be that it really wasn't you either? Ludas simply turned away, her profile cold and unreadable against the starry sky. She dismissed the conversation with a wave of her hand. Never mind, she sighed. It's pointless to debate this. Her next words were a chilling promise. Even if it wasn't you who pushed me, as long as everyone thinks that way, the murderer will be you. Molly desperately tried to reason with her, insisting she had witnesses and these wretched rumors would be debunked soon. Ludas shot her a look of pure pity. You're really naive, aren't you? Do you really think they want the truth? Her gaze was sharp as glass. They'll only believe what they want to see, she whispered, her voice laced with a terrifying cynicism. The truth is not important at all. And with that, she stepped onto the stoning of the balcony, her heels clicking ominously. Like this story, she mused, it needs a villain. It doesn't matter if they're actually the villain. What's adding more fire gonna do? A wicked smile played her lips as she painted a new, twisted narrative for the world to see. Because Molly failed at murdering Ludas, she pushed her off the balcony in a fit of frustration. Molly's blood ran cold. Are you crazy? Get down. It's reaching out. But Ludas just looked down at her, a chilling smile on her face, the moonlight catching in her eyes. I'm looking forward to your resispered. Then, she jumped. A sickening whoosh cut through the silence as Ludas plummeted towards the ground below. But she didn't crash. Instead, she caught gracefully, landing in the strong arms of the handsome, silver-haired Ilier, surrounded by a cascade of ethereal blue flowers. They landed with a soft clatter on the stone path. A sharp smack echoed through the courtyard. Molly, her face a mask of pure fury, had just slapped Ludas with all her might. Is it interesting to take your own life as a joke? She seethed. What do you possibly do me? Ludas clutched her stinging cheek, a triumphant, wicked grin spreading across her face. So what if I accuse you? She taunted. You're supposed to be a villain who's selfish, self-reliant, and has no morals. Molly could only choke out a single word, her voice trembled with rage. You! Suddenly, a firm hand grabbed her wrist, stopping her. It was Songlun, his handsome etched with disappointment. Molly froze, staring at him in shock. He ignored her, turning his attention to Ludas, his voice soft with concern as he asked if she was hurt. His gaze then fell upon Molly, cold and accusing. I've already fulfilled my promise. Why are you still bullying Ludas? Molly's heart sank. It was the same expression she saw in the illusion, the prelude to her death. A crowd was gathering, their whispers like venomous snakes. It must be because she's angry that His Royal Highness Songlun and Ludas came together. She clearly provoked me first. Molly clenched her fist, trapped in the web of lies Ludas had woven. She's so greedy, another voice hissed. She was clearly the one who seduced His Royal Highness Ilier. They're wrong. Why do you dare to question me? The statuesque Ilier stepped forward, his eyes flashing with a cold fire as he began to speak about the people who just spread the rumors. But Molly placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. There's no need. Just then, Songlun took Ludas's hand. Let's go, he said, leading her away from the scene. Over her shoulder, Ludas shot Molly a look of pure, unadulterated triumph. As the crowd dispersed, Ilier walked with Molly under the vast, starry sky. He gently took her hand, noting the angry red mark left from the slap. Is it still painful? He asked, his voice low. Molly was startled by his tenderness, quickly pulling her hand back and insisting it wasn't, but he gently took again, pulling her a little closer. Why don't you explain it to him? He asked softly. It wasn't your fault. They stood close, the galaxy glittering above them. Explaining wouldn't be useful, she admitted with a sigh. I gave her a solid slap in the face. A tiny, mischievous part of her couldn't help but think that while it was impulsive, the look on Ludas's face had been priceless. She glanced up and saw it, that expression. He was worried about her. Her own emerald eyes widened in surprise. Don't worry, she said, her voice softening. I'm really okay. What's more important now is that there might be others at school who want to harm Lutas. Ilier looked at her, a mixture of confusion and admiration in his eyes. But what can we do to find out? How can you be so calm? He observed her thoughtfully. Compared to others who have been misunderstood, you're incredibly logical. It's like you're a reader of a novel who is analyzing a story. Even when you're angry, it's like you're mad at something else entirely. His words hit too close to home, and she was left speechless. That's because the truth is secret aged in her heart. This is only a game. Once the mission is complete, I will return to the real world. Suddenly, a disembodied voice boomed in her mind, cold and powerful. So you do remember that you have a mission. Molly flinched, her eyes darting around wildly. This voice, is it God? The world around her dissolved, replaced by a grim throne room where she was being judged by the story's main characters. Molly, do you plead guilty? The voice demanded. In the next instant, she was tied to a wooden stake, the scent of fire thick in the air. Her lips moved, but the words were not her own. Ha, she sneered with the original Molly's defiance. I simply committed the crimes you had accused me of. Wasn't this what all of you wanted? Her body was moving on its own accord again, playing out the villainess's finalments. This was Molly's death scene in the game. Are you not afraid of being ridiculed? The original Molly taunted. The royal family is lying and framing an innocent person. Still lying until the end. One of the males spat with disgust. Songlun, his arm around a smug Lutas, gave the final, chilling order. Carry out the execution. Flames erupted around her feet. The smoke was suffocating, choking her as she coughed violently. It's so painful. I can't breathe. The searing heat felt terrifyingly real. The godlike voice returned, dripping with condescension. Things have been going pretty good for you these days. A vision of the original Molly, smiling cruelly from the flames, appeared before her. Any progress on your mission? The voice mocked. God, you finally revealed yourself. Molly thought, a desperate anger rising within her. Why are you making me complete this stupid mission? She screamed into the void. Send me back to my own world. A serene, smiling image of God appeared in the flames, completely unmoved by her suffering. Sorry, but I can't do that, the voice said calmly. You're also partially at fault for this situation. Anyways, if you don't put in more effort in getting Ludas and one of the male leads together— Wait! Clear the mission for me, she shrieked, desperate. Then this will become your outcome, the voice declared as the flames surged, a sword of fire piercing through the inferno. An unholy scream was torn from her throat as she was consumed by the fire. She shot up in bed, gasping for air, sweat beading on her forehead. Her body trembled as she sat up. Her eyes were wide with terror, her hands flying to her face. I'm alive? Panting, she clutched her throat, the phantom sensation of burning still searing her skin. It was still there, the ghost of the pain. A wild, desperate laugh escaped her lips. What the heck that? Some sort of warning? With a furious cry, she swept her arm across the night, sending a glass crashing to the floor. Ridiculous. Seethed. The glass shattered, the sound echoing the state of her frayed nerves. She stumbled out of bed, her mind racing. Shide and Osho have started to move. So let's start with them. She took a step, her bare foot pressing down on the sharp shards of glass, but she didn't even flinch. But how do I match them with a person they'll like? The students are cautious of me at the moment. Who can I ma'am with? She walked the window, oblivious to the blood now staining the floor beneath her feet. She stared out into the night, her silhouette framed by the starlight. A cold resolve settled over her. I have to get them to like me as quickly as possible, and then find a way to get Ludas and the Crown Prince together. She closed her eyes, a grim determination hardening her features. I guess I will have to be the villain. Her eyes snapped open, a dangerous glint in their green depths. After all, this story definitely needs one. Ilier recalls the very first time he met Molly. He was lounging under a tree, escaping the tediousness of his royal duties when a cheerful voice cut through the peace, calling out his name and chiding him for ditching class again. He opened his eyes, annoyed by the interruption. So loud. It was the ever-righteous Prince Songlun, smiling down at him with that gentle expression he always wore, reminding him that the finals were next week. Ilier remained reclined, utterly unimpressed by his rival's presence. Songlun proposed a bet. He may have lost their last contest, but if Ilier lost this time, he had to stop clinging to him. Ilier shot up into a sitting position, his chibi form radiating pure defiance as he gave a single, firm answer, no. Songlun clicked his tongue, a flicker of annoyance crossing his perfect features. He tried to reason with the silver-haired prince, appealing to their shared duty. They were both heirs to the throne, and Ilier was a once-in-a-generation genius. If they worked together, they could create a world free from the chaos of war. He painted a picture of himself as a gentle and honest leader working tirelessly for his people, but Ilier's piercing blue eyes were cold and distant. He had absolutely no interest in the throne. Unlike Songlun, the only thing that mattered in this world was his younger sister. Just then, a sweet voice called out to Songlun. A beautiful girl with warm brown hair and vibrant green eyes appeared, her arms clutching a book. This was Songlun's fiancée, and in Ilier's eyes, she was the perfect match for the crown prince. He watched them from a distance as she presented Songlun with materials for the upcoming sports competition. Ilier's internal assessment was clinical and detached. She was smart, capable, and considerate. Then, those startlingly green eyes turned to him. Prince Ilier, she greeted him politely. He saw her as a flawless doll, meticulously crafted to be the perfect crown princess. She played her role with an elegance that never faltered, even in the face of criticism. To him, she was nothing more than an empty shell, a puppet blindly obeying the strings of fate. Her eyes, so beautiful yet so hollow, only ever seemed to fill with genuine light when she was gazing at Songlun. Boring. Utterly boring. He watched them, ready to dismiss them from his thoughts, telling himself theirs had nothing to do with him. But he pinpointed the exact moment everything changed. Suddenly, the image of that empty doll was replaced by a fierce woman with a sword to his throat, her eyes burning with a dangerous fire. She was no longer a hollow shell. She was a force of nature, promising to cure his sister in exchange for his help in capturing 2 other men. This was a woman who would rebel against prejudice and fight for what she wanted. A woman who would bravely carve her own path. She strode forward with unwavering determination, never once hesitating. The way she looked at Songlun was different now, filled with something more complex than simple admiration. He didn't know if this change occurred because she finally dropped her mask, or if it was the moment he heard she'd fallen from a cliff, a terrifying, soul-crushing fear gripping his heart at the thought of losing her. He remembered seeing her in the rain, broken and crying, a mirror of his own battered state. The fear that engulfed him was absolute. It was in that moment, seeing her held in another man's arms, that he finally understood. He realized it with chilling clarity. He wanted to possess Molly. The thought consumed him, a dark and powerful obsession. Day by day, this burning desire grew stronger. He didn't care that she was a rival's fiancée, nor did he care if it would tarnish his own reputation. He still wanted her. He began to vex over it, his every waking thought consumed with how to capture her attention. But she always felt just out of reach, like a character in a story that could vanish at any moment. This wouldn't do. He had to confess, and soon. His gaze was filled with a desperate resolve. He had to make her his before she left this world for good. A sharp knock on his door pulled him from his dark thoughts. A servant announced that Lady Molly was waiting for him. All right, he replied, his voice calm despite the storm raging within him. He ran a hand through his silver hair, his heart pounding against his ribs. A confession? What did he need? What would she like? A faint blush crept up his neck as an idea sparked. Maybe she would like red roses. He pictured a lavish bouquet, their velvet petals as deep and passionate as his feelings. Touching the flowers, he strode to the waiting room. As the doors swung open, his breath caught in his throat. There she was, looking ethereal, her green eyes widening slightly in surprise. His heart hammered in his chest. She graced him with a gentle smile. "Ilier, you're here," she said, and the simple word sent his pulse racing. He had to tell her how he felt. He looked at her radiant smile, her very presence a balm to his tormented soul. "Ilier, you're here." His cheeks flushed as he opened his mouth, the words on the tip of his tongue. "Molly, his confession was brutally interrupted by a loud groan from inside the room. Oh, how'd I lose again? The romantic atmosphere shattered. 2 other handsome men were in the room with her, one dramatically lamenting his loss to the beautiful princess. Ilier's expression turned glacial. "Why are you here?" he demanded, a menacing bloom erupting in his hand, scorching the rosy to ash. Molly, oblivious to his murderous aura, explained she'd invited them for board games and innocently asked what he was about to say. Playing it cool, Ilier hid his fury and embarrassment, smoothly saying he just wanted to ask if she liked flowers. His eyes then fell upon a document on the table. What's this? It was a labor contract, slave contract, really binding Osho and Shide to Molly's service after they lost a bet. Molly smirked like a triumphant villainess flanked by her 2 new minions, explaining that is no fun without high stakes. She would treat them well, of course. They were now her employees. Ilier was stunned. Why would they agree to such a thing? Osho beamed, saying he could now play board games whenever he wanted. Shide just gave a lazy, charming smirk, finding the whole situation amusing and unable to decline a request from such a cute lady. Ilier had reached his limit. "You've played enough," he said, his voice dangerously low. "It's time to go back." Molly looked confused, saying she just arrived, but his possessive gaze was unyielding. "No, it's been a long time." He unceremoniously grabbed Shide and began dragging him toward the door, ignoring his protests. As he pulled the man away, he glanced back at a bewildered Molly. "You guys seemed quite close," he muttered, the jealousy in his tone unmistakable. He thought he could still salvage this, still find a moment to confess. But then he remembered their deal, her words echoing in his mind. He had to help her make these men fall for her. The memory of their bargain came rushing back, a promise made in desperation to save his sister. Ilier buried his face in his hand, groaning internally. He desperately wanted to punch his past self for being so foolish. Molly, unaware of his inner turmoil, brightly announced her plans to open a board game store. As she spoke about choosing a location, he watched her, trying to mask his conflicting emotions. He leaned in, his proximity making the air thick with tension. "Do you like them?" he whispered, his voice laced with a plea. "Don't chase them. Is that not okay?" Surrounded by an illusion of flowers, his intense blue eyes searched hers for an answer. "No," she said softly, "I don't like them romantically." Her heart fluttered at how close he was, a blush rising on her cheeks. "Then why?" he pressed, his voice barely audible. "Why are you doing this?" All she could offer was an apology, her eyes downcast, his heart sank. She still didn't trust him, a dark impulse flared within him. Fine, then he'd just get rid of them. Molly gasped, pleading with him not to joke about things. But he wasn't joking. She quickly explained they were just her shop assistants. All she needed now was a shop owner and name. She wanted him to take the role. "I'm not interested," he scoffed, turning away. How could she be so dense? Why would he ever help the woman he loves pursue other men? She explained her strategy. It was a way to boost her reputation. And then she played her trump card. She presented him with an ornate clock, a magical artifact that would slow the progression of his sister's illness. Her eyes gleamed with a clever, calculated kindness. "You will definitely help me, won't you?" He fell silent, studying her face and noticing the deep exhaustion she tried to hide. She looked so tired. Her eyes held a world of secrets he couldn't decipher. She gently took his hand. "It's really unfair," she murmured. He looked down at their joined hands, confused. "You know everything about me, yet I'm clueless about you." She intertwined their fingers, her touch sending a jolt through him. "I hope there will come a day when you don't keep anything from me." Their hands clasped tightly, a silent promise hanging in the air. Her gaze was so earnest, so sincere. "I will wait for you." A small, hopeful smile touched his lips. He would wait. He would wait for the day she finally opened her heart to him completely. In the hallowed halls of the academy, there was once a legend, a prince who enchanted hundreds of teenage girls with his very presence. His name was Shide, and every frown, every smile, every single gesture held the power to captivate their hearts. No one could resist the sweet, honeyed phrases that dripped from his lips when he spoke in his magnetic voice. And this very same prince was now in the middle of a ridiculous party game. Rang out, declaring the next command. "Number 3 must carry number 5. Style. Shide's handsome face twisted in annoyance as a small, trembling girl held up a card with the number 5. Him again? He was number 5, and his luck was just the absolute worst. With a sigh of resignation, Shide plastered on a gentle smile. It seemed he had no other choice. He gracefully scooped the girl into his arms, murmuring that she was so light she felt like a feather. She really should eat properly instead of worrying about her weight, he added with a doting tone, because if she didn't, he would be upset. His smooth words sent a jolt through the room, and the other girls erupted in a chorus of high-pitched squeals, their hearts melting on the spot. But inside, Shide was dying. This was already so unbelievably embarrassing. Flash forward to the grand opening of Molly's board game store, a charming cafe filled with sunlight and excited customers. Shide, ever professional, was in the midst of entertaining a table of adoring girls. The tension was thick as Molly and another girl faced off, a silent war of flying between their eyes as they prepared to draw cards. A triumphant laugh suddenly cut through the air as a girl with pigtails declared herself the king of the round. Her royal order was for number 6 to feed number 2 a piece of cake. Shide's shoulders slumped dramatically. He put on a pained expression, pleading with the ladies that they were far too good at these games and to please have mercy on him. With the elegance of a seasoned performer, he delicately picked up a chocolate-dipped strawberry, a sight that sent his fangirls into another frenzy. But internally he was screaming. Molly had clearly said all he needed to do was stay here, so why was this so utterly exhausting? He wanted to quit right now. On the other side of the cafe, however, Osho was having a much better time. He was being pampered by 2 lovely women, enjoying delicious snacks and being asked if he wanted to play a game. They cooed over how cute he was, and Osho was simply basking in the attention. This was exactly what Molly had promised, just stay here and look pretty. It was so relaxing. But the chaotic peace of the cafe was about to be shattered. Outside, an elegant high-heeled shoe clicked decisively on the cobblestone path. The business was booming, the store was packed with customers. A woman with long, flowing hair and an impossibly smug smirk stood watching. It was Ilier, and she decided that now was the perfect opportunity for her to make an entrance. The bell on the door chimed as she stepped inside, welcomed unassuming staff. The girls at its table immediately fell silent, their expressions souring. They whispered amongst themselves, wondering why on earth Osho had come here. What horrible luck. Ilier ignored Iliers, gliding over to an empty table and taking a seat as if she owned the place. Her sharp eyes found Shide, and her voice, clear and demanding, cut through the room. "Hey, you come here and play with me." Shide's eyes widened, a wave of pure relief washing over him. His savior had finally arrived, but Molly shot to her feet, her face contorted with rage. How dare Ilier still try to meet Shide, she seethed, reminding her that if it wasn't for her, Molly wouldn't have fallen off that cliff when Shide was trying to save her. Her friend nodded furiously, adding that Molly had been bedridden for half a month, and they had been terribly distressed. She then sneered, questioning why a prince like Shide was working at a common board game store. Ilier didn't deign to respond with words. Instead, she simply let a stream of glittering gold coins cascade from her fingertips onto the table. The metallic cling silenced the room. She raised a brow, her voice dripping with condescension. "Is all this money enough to play with me?" Molly's friend sputtered, insisting that being rich wasn't that amazing. Shide would never be swayed by her dirty money. Molly's face was flushed with a mixture of anger and humiliation. Ilier just smiled, a cunning glint in her eyes. She calmly pointed out the store rules stated customers could only play with a store worker for 2 hours each. Hadn't their time slot already reached its end? Since she was a new customer, serving her wouldn't be a problem, would it? She directed her question to the store manager, wherever they were. At that moment, a statuesque man with silver hair and piercing blue eyes stepped forward. He announced coolly that since the eldest daughter of the Duke's family wished to play, there was no reason to reject her request. Chide's face scrunched in displeasure. This newcomer clearly didn't want him playing with Molly. But Shide, ever the host, stepped in with a practiced smile, welcoming Ilier as their valued guest. He turned to his disappointed club, purring that he would play with his dear kittens after this. Then he turned back to Ilier, his eyes practically sparkling with dollar signs as he prepared to collect his payment. Watching this all unfold, Molly felt her will to work evaporate. She wanted to quit. But Ilier was ready for that, sweetly reminding her about the penalty fee for breaching the contract, which was clearly written in the fine print. "You evil businesswoman," Ilier teased. Defeated, sighed, and asked what game Her Highness would like to play. Ilier tapped her chin thoughtfully. "I want to play this then," she said, pointing to a box labeled Heart Attack, Heart Attack. Shide was utterly confused. What kind of game was that? Besides, they didn't have enough players. Ilier simply suggested they invite Molly and her friend. Molly scoffed, declaring that the air around Ilier was nauseating and she wanted no part of it. Ilier completely ignored her, launching into an explanation of the rules. Everyone gets cards, and you flip them one by one. When the number of the same fruit on the revealed card's 5, you ring the bell. The first person to ring it gets all the cards. A sudden shocking realization dawned on the faces of Molly and her friend. Ilier's smirk widened into a predatory grin. "That's right," she purred. "This is the best chance for you to touch the hands of your beloved prince." Molly's eyes blazed with fury. "You are really such a sinister and sly woman." Ilier leaned back, clearly enjoying the chaos. "Come on, let me see what choice you guys will make." Poor Shide, meanwhile, was still staring at the rulebook, a giant question mark floating over his head, having understood absolutely nothing. The game began in a flurry of cards. Suddenly, a hand slammed down on the bell with a sharp ding. It was Ilier. "I hit the bell first," she said with a smug smile. "All these cards are mine." Shide's mind was racing, finally catching on. So it was a game that tested your reflexes. He focused intently on the table. There were 4 grapes already showing. Next card was being flipped. It was a strawberry. Then another 5 grapes. He lunged, but several hands slammed down at the same time, piling on top of his with another loud ding. "Oh no, I hit it first again," Ilier chirped, batting her eyelashes. Shide could only admit her reflexes were quick. But as the rounds continued, he felt a creeping suspicion. Was it just his imagination? The round, another pile of hands, and another girl squealed in delight at her victory. But every single time, without fail, the hands landed on top of his. It was like a slow-motion horror film. It has to be. The awful realization finally struck him like a bolt of lightning. She's actually unconcerned about the card on the table. Her goal has been my hand all along. Panic seized him. What was he supposed to do? He had to get his hand touched every single time he hit the bell. Suddenly, a new rule was introduced, hitting the bell by mistalted in a truth or dare penalty. Trapped, Shide chose dare, knowing that if he didn't hit the bell at all, he would surely lose. His desperate eyes met Ilier's challenging gaze from across the table. The dare was read aloud, each word a hammer blow. "Kiss the cheek of the person across from you." Shide's blood ran cold. Across from him was Molly. Molly and her friend immediately formed a human shield, screaming for Ilier not to approach Shide. Ilier just shrugged, saying it was a penalty for losing, so it couldn't be helped. A furious blush crept up Shide's neck. He turned to Ilier, flustered. "Why did you write this kind of dare?" he demanded. But she looked at him with wide, innocent eyes. "I didn't write it," she said sweetly. "Ilier wrote it." Shide was floored. Why would Ilier write this type of punishment? Ilier leaned in close, her voice a low, intimate whisper just for him. "Don't be afraid. After all, we've shared a bed before." Shide's brain short-circuited. Don't say anything ambiguous that others will misinterpret," he hissed. But it was too late. She leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to his burning cheek. Gasped through the cafe as he got shock, one even snapping a photo. In his mortification, something popped out from behind Shide's back, a fluffy red tail, twitching with agitation. Ilier's eyes widened, a flicker of understanding and fascination in them. It appears the tail and ears only show when Shide's emotion is agitated. The tail vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving her intrigued. Chide, now beet red and touching his cheek, stammered for her to go back to her seat if she was finished with the dare. Ilier was lost in thought. That was strange. Rutas was supposed to have won him over, but he shouldn't be hiding an endearing trait like this. He didn't. Molly's smile was as warm as the morning sun, her eyes crinkling with genuine delight as she declared that was enough. Shide felt a blush creep up his neck, his heart doing a strange flutter in his chest as he was bathed in her light. A question echoed in the back of his mind, a confusing whisper he couldn't ignore. Why did he ever hate her so much? Her smile, it was so incredibly warm. Back at the cafe, the atmosphere was light and cheerful. Molly slammed her final cards down on the table with a triumphant laugh declaring her victory. Her friend sighed, admitting it was a pity she lost. Suddenly, a shadow fell over their table, and a gentle voice asked what they were playing. The girls jumped, startled by the sudden appearance of the handsome Shide. They explained of the card game, their cheeks flushing under his attention, asking if it was fun. Molly scoffed playfully, calling them ignorant for not knowing the simple game where you match the color or pattern on the discard pile. Shide's friend invited him to join, asking why he was just standing there. A sheepish, only smile touched his lips as he admitted they were the only ones he knew. He leaned in, his smooth as silk, suggesting they all play together since the game is always more fun with more people. The girls melted on the spot, immediately agreeing to whatever Shide said. Molly smiled, thanking him for being so kind as she began to deal the cards. Shide teased her, asking if she could please speak normally. Her overly sweet tone was giving him goosebumps. She laughed, retorting that there was no way she would. Their easy back and forth didn't go unnoticed. Their relationship seemed even better than yesterday. The other girls watched, one of them blushing as she realized with dawning certainty. They were flirting, but the peaceful moment was shattered when two figures appeared at the door. Shide looked up, his smile vanishing as he asked Louise why she was there. Louise, with her perfectly styled pink hair, looked just as surprised, her own question mirroring his. She explained she'd heard a board game shop had opened nearby and came for a look, her eyes narrowing as she took in the scene. She couldn't find him after class these days, so this was where he was working. Her voice began to tremble with tears, her heart aching with betrayal. Why didn't he tell her? And worse, he was here with Molly. It wasn't like that, he tried to explain, but Louise turned and fled. Shide shot up from his seat, calling her name as he rushed after her. From their table, Molly's friend groaned that Louise had shown up again, how utterly annoying. The other girl agreed, her expression dark with dislike. She really didn't understand why Shide even liked her. Outside, Shide grabbed Louise's arm, stopping her retreat. He asked if she was angry, his voice with concern. She demanded to know why he didn't tell her he was working at the shop. He stammered that it just wasn't a big deal. Louise's eyes flashed with hurt. He should have told her in advance. But what made her even angrier was that he was sitting with Molly. He tried to reason with her, explaining that Molly didn't get along with others in the shop, so he'd invited her to play together to make her included. Louise's expression turned cold as ice. Had he forgotten what Molly did to him? She warned him that there might be a misunderstanding about what happened, but Molly was not the kind of person he thought she was. Louise's words were a venomous whisper, her face contorting with a sinister expression. Hate her, she hissed in his mind. Don't be fooled by her. She is a selfish and ruthless person. The insidious words triggered a wave of nausea and a painful memory, a dark red haze clouding his vision. Standing there with Louise, his mind was a battlefield of confusion. Did he really hate Molly? The question spiraled into darkness. The sharp crack of a slap echoed twice in his memory. A cruel, aristocratic woman, his stepmother, loomed over him, her lips twisted in a sneer. She spat the words at him, asking if he was the bastard his mother was pregnant with back then. Her hand shot out, grabbing his tail with cruel strength. Look at your ears and tail, she sneered. You're so pathetic, you're not even human. She mocked his mother's naivety, wondering if she really believed she had found true love with the Count. A phantom image of his younger self appeared, remembering his mother's gentle smile as she told him she was waiting for his dad to take them home. But his stepmother's voice was a poison that killed all hope. She laughed at their foolishness, at the idea that they truly believed in a love that could cross rank class. No, she sneered, the Count never loved your mother. If he truly loved her, why would he abandon you both? Why did he only come to get you after your mother died? She leaned in, her voice a chilling whisper, revealing the devastating truth. It was because she couldn't bear children and he had no other heir. He had no choice but taken his half-demon bastard. Her final command was a curse that would haunt him forever. So if you don't want to be hated, don't you dare reveal lowly half-demon bloodline. His young mind screamed in terror, it can't be revealed. Molly's voice cut through the darkness of his past, her words a beacon of light. Even if you know embarrassing things about each other, you won't dislike the other person. Isn't that what friends are for? She promised she wouldn't hate him because of his bloodline. But the poison of his stepmother's words was too deep. A single, terrified eye opened in his mind, questioning if what Molly said could possibly be true. The ghostly voice returned, warning him not to be fooled. If she finds out his secret, she'll definitely think the same way as everyone else. His mind twisted Molly's kindness into something vile, her face contorting into a mascust as she called him disgusting. He jolted awake, drenched in a cold sweat, his heart pounding against his ribs. It was just a dream. He buried his face in his hands, trying to chase away the lingering terror and the tears that stained his cheeks. Later that day at the Penguin board game shop, his friends were gossiping. One of them remarked that Louise was so strange. Her friend agreed, adding that she didn't think Louise really liked Shide. It was more like possessiveness than actual love. Just then, Shide walked in asking what they were talking about. Molly immediately switched to her playful boss persona, demanding to know why he was so late. He admitted he woke up late. She huffed, threatening to dock his pay for his tardiness. His friend didn't beat around the bush, directly asking him why he fell in love with Louise in the first place. The question hung in the air, and Shider's gaze fell, a universe of unspoken pain in his silence. Molly, ever his protector, quickly interjected, stating that you don't need a reason to like someone. But his friends pressed on, their faces with genuine concern. They wanted to support him. But they felt there was something seriously wrong with Louise. They warned him that even someone as popular as Louise gets talked about behind her back, and they were just afraid he'd get hurt. Panic seized him, a cold dread washing over his entire body. They found out he wasn't even human. What would they do? His face drained of all color. Noticing his distress, his friend reached out, her hand gently touching his in a gesture of comfort. The simple touch was like a lightning strike, triggering the horrifying memory of his stepmother's cruel grip. Her words screamed in his mind. "No one will like you." He violently recoiled, slapping her hand away with a terrified shout. "Don't touch me." In that moment of pure panic, the magic holding his human disguise shattered. Two fluffy, reddish-brown sprouted from his head, and a matching tail appeared behind him, twitching with anxiety. Mortified, clutched, his voice cracking as he begged to look. The cafe fell into a shocked silence, followed by a torrent of cruel whispers. So the rumor was true, he really was a half-demon. His mother was just a maid. How did someone of such low birth get into their prestigious school? The words were like physical blows. His family is pathetic, and he's their only heir and illegitimate child. He had been lying to them this whole time. His gaze darted downwards, unable to face them. Mine screaming a single word. No, Molly would never look at him like that. But why? He couldn't bring himself to look up, absolutely terrified of seeing the disgust he knew would be on her face. The whispers grew louder, more venomous. The girls who had once called his fans now looked at him with revulsion. He was just a lowborn, and they felt so disillusioned. They pointed his ears and tail, calling them ugly and pathetic. Shider's world collapsed. He squeezed his eyes shut, his heart aching. As expected, she also saw him this way, how hypocritical. But when he finally dared to look, he didn't see disgust on Molly's face. He saw pure, unadulterated rage. "How dare people like you," she roared, stepping in front of him like a lioness protecting her cub. "Mommy will protect you. Call yourselves Shider's fans." Shide could only stare, completely and utterly stunned. She pointed a finger at the shocked crowd, demanding they open their eyes and take a good look. "Look at these fluffy ears and that soft tail." Her voice dripped with sarcasm and fury as she pointed at Shide, who was now a trembling, panicked mess. "How can you say that this little puppy hiding in the corner is ugly? You're all pathetic," she spat, her words silencing the room. "I don't know why," one of the former fans whispered, "but I suddenly feel guilty." Molly's glare was withering. "If you can't even accept how adorable Shide is, then I really doubt you ever truly liked him." Inspired by her courage, another girl stood up. "That's right," she announced, "I like Shide not only for his looks and bloodline, but also for his warm and gentle personality." Another chimed in, her voice ringing with conviction. "Shider's merits will not change because of something so small." Soon, his true friends were standing together, a united front. "No matter what Shider's bloodline is, we are all members of his fan club." Shide looked at them, at Molly, at the people who stood by him when his world fell apart, and his heart felt like it would burst. Everyone, completely overwhelmed with emotion. Molly's eyes narrowed with resolve, her mind racing. But public perception couldn't be changed so easily. The whispers and stares would follow him forever. Before she could voice her support, Shider's profile sharpened as he turned away, his voice low and final. That was enough, he insisted. She didn't need to say anything else. The watched, their hearts sinking as he walked away, his back a portrait of defeat. He forced a smile that didn't reach his tired eyes, the light around him seeming to dim with his words. He was sorry, he was just tired and would be leaving for today. And with that, his plunged back into the darkness of his past, a past that had shaped every fractured piece of him. It began when he was just 6, a small, innocent boy whose biological mother had passed away from a cruel illness. A man claiming his father appeared, taking him to a grand, unfamiliar home where he was initially praised for his cute looks. But that warmth was a fleeting illusion shattered by the arrival of his stepmother. She was a terrifying presence, hiding her cruelty behind an elegant fan, ruling the mansion while his away subduing demonic beasts. In his absence, the boy was left to her mercy, and she had none to give. One evening, as he sat at the grand dining table, she approached with a plate of human food, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. Oh, she had almost forgotten. This was food for humans. With a wicked glint in her eyes, she declared dogs couldn't eat it and ordered him to go get some dog food. Her gaze was venomous, her words slicing into his young soul. "Humph, look at his eyes," she sneered. "Only a beast would have eyes like that." The cruelty escalated into physical torment. Maids held him down, their faces grim, trying to force a wretched collar around his neck as he screamed for them to let him go. He tried to resist, fighting back with all his might, but he was just a child, and his struggles only earned him bruises that mottled his pale skin. When his father returned, he ran to him, tears streaming down his face, crying out that she had hit him. But his father's face was a mask of cold indifference as the maid spun a shameless lie, claiming the young master had injured himself falling down the stairs. His stepmother clutched her chest, performing a masterpiece of false grief, her tears like poison droplets. She knew he hated her, she sobbed, but she was still his mother. The world hit on its axis, a dizzying vortex of lies and betrayal that threatened to swallow him whole. How could they lie without batting an eye? It was disgusting, utterly disgusting. After that day, the physical beatings stopped. But the mental and emotional abuse became a constant, suffocating poison. He was to sleep outside by a doghouse, treated as less than human. It was there that two maids found him, their cart filled with fragrant pastries. Waking to the delicious smell, a desperate survival instinct took over. He had learned to read people, to use lies and a charming to please them, get what he needed. That's easy for me, he thought, putting on his most pitiful and adorable expression. The maids cooed, their hearts melting at how cute he was. One whispered to the other that he looked so pitiful, as if he'd been starving for days. But they couldn't risk the madam finding out. The other maid made a snap decision. It should be fine, she whispered back, pressing a warm loaf of bread into his small hands, warning him to keep it hidden. He looked up with wide, grateful eyes and thanked them. As he took a bite, his smile was pure, so angelic that the maids were completely captivated. They promised to bring him something delicious again tomorrow, enchanted by the beautiful boy. In that moment, a bitter truth solidified in his mind. He had to stop being antagonistic, to swallow his pride. As long as he could please women, he could escape the hellish life he was forced to live. This twisted lesson followed him even after that wretched house. He instinctively sought to please, to charm, to use his looks to get by. It became a defense mechanism, a shield against the world. But back in his dorm room, the shield shattered, leaving him exposed and raw. He was just using, he thought, his arm thrown over his eyes. It was only normal for them to hate him. He was drowning in self-loathing, convinced he was inferior in both bloodline and personality, a creature not even worthy of being human. The sunlight felt like an accusation on his skin. Suddenly, a knock echoed through the silent room. Who could that be? Everyone else should be in class. He pulled the blanket over his head, wishing the world would just disappear. He didn't want to get up. They would leave soon enough. After all, for someone like him, no one would care if he just vanished. But the knock into a thunderous banshee, and the door flew open to reveal Molly, her expression a mix of fury and concern. He sat up, and stunned. "Molly?" She stormed in, demanding to know if he planned to fail after skipping class for 3 whole days. Then her brain caught up with her actions and she flushed, realizing this was the boys' dormitory and wondering how on earth she even got in. Her eyes, wide and green, scanned his disheveled state. Had he just been moping in here for days? Her gaze inadvertently dropped to his chiseled abs, and his face immediately turned a deep shade of crimson. Flustered, she covered her eyes and yelled for him to get out, a command that made no sense in his own room. Correcting herself, she marched to his wardrobe, grabbing a shirt. She noted he had a lot of clothes before throwing the garment right at his head. He caught it, utterly bewildered, asking what she was doing. "Hurry up and get dressed," she ordered, her tone leaving no room for argument. If they left now, they could still make it. "Make it where?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "To the board game shop, of course." Everyone was waiting for him. His shoulders slumped, the fight draining out of him. "I'm not going." Molly's gaze hardened with determination. "All right," she said, her voice deceptively calm. "If that's your decision." She gripped the edge of his blanket, her knuckles white. How long did he plan to hide in this dorm? Was he going to stay here until graduation? No matter what she said, he was determined not to leave. With a fierce cry, she ripped the blanket away, exposing him completely. "Things aren't as scary as you think," she insisted, but he lashed back, his voice cracking with emotion. How could they not be scary? Even if he went, what would change? Tears streamed down his face as she pulled him towards her. He could already hear their cruel whispers, that half-demon bastard, that illegitimate child, that scumbag who uses girls. He couldn't face their contemptuous and demeaning words. He just couldn't. Molly looked at him, their faces so close he could feel her breath on his skin. The air was thick with his despair. "I can't," he choked out. Her expression softened. She could understand his fear. Ever since she came here, she had lived under the scrutiny of those same stares every single day. But that understanding only fueled her anger. "Is that all?" she snapped, her voice sharp as glass. He looked up, startled. "What? You have a fan club that supports you," she told him, her hands cupping his face. "They've been running around for you these past few days. You also have a mother who loves you deeply. You only focus on the people who might hurt you. Besides, this is all just your imagination. Do you honestly think your actions deserve their fondness?" Her eyes blazed with a fire that seemed to burn away his shadows. "What's more, compared to what happened to me, what you're facing now is not a big deal." And it mashed in his mind of Molly, abandoned and bullied. She admitted that she used to be scared just thinking about it, too. "How did you get through it?" he asked, his voice raw with a desperate need for her answer. She paused, her gaze steady and unwavering. "I don't want to waste my time or my life on people who don't like me." The simple, powerful truth of her words struck him like lightning. How could she be so strong and so gentle? "I see," he whispered, a wave of understanding washing over him. He pulled her into a fierce hug, burying his face in her shoulder as if she were his only anchor in a storm. Even if he was ostracized in the future, he would have to come to her, his friend. Molly gently pushed him back, a playful smirk on her lips. "When did that happen?" She'd already met her own friends. He looked momentarily crestfallen. She laughed, gesturing to the window. "They're not just my friends, they're your friends too." Outside, his fan club held a siam, promising to always like him no matter what. A blush crept up his neck as Molly urged him to get dressed, telling him everyone was waiting. In that moment, he knew Louise had been wrong about her. Molly was nothing like she'd been described. She was like a warm sun, giving him the courage to move forward, to no longer fear the darkness. Go ahead, she said softly, patting his head. At least for today, don't think about things that make you unhappy. With a wink, she produced a pair of cat ears and put them on. It's okay to be your true self today. When he finally stepped outside, he found his friends all wearing matching ears, smiles bright and welcoming. They told him Molly had done so much for him. Another girl leaned in conspiratorially, and he could only nod, his heart full. Yeah, he looked at Melly, a profound feeling blooming in his chest. So, his heart began to pound, a frantic rhythm against his ribs. How could I not fall for her? He squeezed his eyes shut. I don't deserve to stand next to her right now. Later, in the sun-drenched conservatory, Louise found him. Shide? She called, her voice sickly sweet. She glided towards him, mentioning she'd looked for him in class and heard what happened. She took his hands in hers, her performance of a concerned girlfriend flawless. Don't worry, she cooed, I'll always be by your side, but he pulled his hands away as if her touch burned him. Louise, he said, his voice cold as ice. Let's break up. Her sweet smile vanished, replaced by disbelief. Did you just say? Her face contorted to a mask of pure fury, the facade crumbling to reveal the wretched monster beneath. Hey, don't you dare joke with me about breaking up. The memory was a cruel, twisted, a ghost of a conversation that now seemed like a mockery. Louise's eyes had held a confident gleam, her voice silken trap as she'd whispered to him, her fingers tracing his chest. You don't really want to break up, do you? His own eyes, now reflected in the harsh light of the present, but filled with unshed tears back then. So desperate to believe her. He had clung to her, his voice breaking as he insisted he didn't want to break up. They clearly loved each other, he had pleaded, she must just be tired from working at the board game shop recently. But even as he held her, a sharp pain lanced through her head. She had smiled, a secret, triumphant curve of her lips, while he was lost in his anguish, a puppet in her hands. The memory warped, shifting to another scene, another voice planting seeds of doubt. A silver-haired girl with a smug look had suggested that maybe it was Molly who spread the rumors. Her friend had been horrified, exclaiming how horrible that was, questioning if Molly would ever do such a thing. The doubt had taken root in his heart, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. Molly? Spread the rumors? Why would she ever do that? Then another memory surfaced, a vision of the radiant Ariel, who had declared with utter confidence that she wouldn't waste her time or life on people who didn't like her. But he had pushed those thoughts aside, his loyalty unwavering. No, he had insisted raw. Molly would never do such a thing. His resolve had been firm, a faint smile playing on his lips as he remembered her kindness. But that was then, and this was now. The man standing before Louise was a stranger, his expression cold and resolute. He was serious, he told her, his voice leaving no room for argument. Let's break up. The words struck her like a physical blow, her eyes widening in pure, unadulterated shock. Why? She stammered, her mind reeling. She needed a reason. He tried to soften the blow, his gaze averted. If she thought he didn't care about her, he could always be with her. No, it wasn't because he insisted. He had just come to talk about this today. He turned to leave, but she wasn't letting him go. Her hand shot out, grabbing his arm with desperate strength. Wait, she cried, don't go. In her haste, her foot slipped, crushing a small, forgotten object on the ground. She stumbled backward, her balance lost, her heart pounding. Did I do something wrong? He just watched, face unreadable, as she collapsed to her knees in the manicured garden. Her voice was a pathetic whimper. Do you hate that I always argue with you? Is it because I'm not gentle enough? Tears streamed down her face as she looked up at him, a broken doll begging for its master. I can change myself, she pleaded, tell me. Against the stop of a cold, indifferent sky, her desperate question hung in the air. What should I do so that you won't leave me? He looked down at the weeping girl, a flicker of pain crossing his handsome features as he reached out a hand, only to pull it back. No, he couldn't. Once he decided to break up, he couldn't give her any more hope. His voice was flat, devoid of motion. You didn't do anything wrong. Her tears stopped. Her mind and cunning, even in its despair, latched onto the only other possibility. Is it because of Molly? She asked, her voice dangerously quiet. The flicker of recognition in his eyes was all the confirmation she needed. Her own gaze hardened, a fire igniting in their depths. His reaction, it was because of her. The name echoed in her mind, a bitter poison. Molly, Molly, it's always Molly. Her voice rose, laced with hysteria. Because she's prettier than me? Or more mature? Then a bitter dawning realization. I know, she spat. It's because the Duke's daughter, all right? Because her status is so much higher than mine. Her words dripped with venom, her hands clutching her dress. Because I'm just a commoner. You all look down on me. He finally shouted, his composure breaking. His face was etched with pain. Why do you have to bring her into this? He reminded her that she was the only one who got into this prestigious school on her own merits, that she was earnest and excellent. But it was all for naught. He turned his back on her, his shoulders slumped in defeat. It's just, I don't like you. His final words were a dagger to her heart. You deserve better. As his footsteps faded, Louise was left alone, a fragile thing in the vast garden. She crumpled to the ground, her body racked with silent sobs. A single, agonizing question tore through her soul. Why did you all choose her? The world faded to black, transitioning to a quiet cafe, a sign on the door declaring it was on break. The sunlight streamed through the windows of the empty boarding game cafe. It was the middle of midterm exams, so the usual crowd was busy studying, and even young Osho had been sent off to cram school. Inside, the beautiful blonde Elle sat with her brother and the ever-stoic demon prince. She sighed dramatically, lamenting her boredom now that she hadn't found a new staff member. She turned to her red-haired brother, teasingly asking if he didn't need to review for his exams. He just smiled, pen in hand, clearly not too worried. Ariel scoffed playfully, reminding him that academics were hardly important to someone like her, who was planning to leave this world anyway. Besides, she had ranked 5th in the grade on the last final exam, a testament for casual genius. Her brother's eyes sparkled with admiration. As expected of someone in the top 10, he praised. His gaze then shifted to the silent, godlike figure sitting across from them. The demon prince rarely even bothered to show up for class. The man in question, Ariel's ultimate target, didn't even look up from his book. "I've already finished the course," he stated coolly, his voice like velvet over ice. It was later revealed he was ranked 1st in the entire grade. His casual brilliance was almost insulting, and Ariel's brother could only stare in envious awe. To break the silence, he suggested a trip. There was a market in a town just outside the school maybe they should visit. Ariel's interest was piqued. A market? That sounded fun. She turned to the demon prince, asking if he was coming. His reply was a clipped, predictable no. Her brother added that it would only take about half an hour by carriage. Just then, the demon prince's book slipped from his grasp. As he reached down to retrieve it, his fingers brushed against something else on the floor. It was a photograph, and his piercing blue eyes almost imperceptibly as he saw the image of Ariel, tangled in a shockingly intimate embrace with an unknown man. He stared at the picture, his stoic facade cracking for just a moment. He made a swift decision. "Wait," he said, his voice firm, "let's go." Before anyone could react, he smoothly tucked the incriminating photograph into his inner pocket, a hidden secret. "I'll go with you," he announced, standing up. Ariel and her brother exchanged a confused look. "Didn't you just say no?" her brother asked, completely baffled. The demon prince's eyes held a new, dangerous glint. "I'm suddenly a little curious," was his only explanation, leaving the other two utterly bewildered. Soon, they were walking through a town square, the air buzzing with energy and the sounds of a lively market. The streets were packed with people, creating a vibrant, chaotic atmosphere. Ariel's green eyes scanned the crowd, a flicker of recognition in her gaze. She knew this place, the S-class item from the game. She saw it here. Her eyes landed on an archery stall, its prize board proudly displayed. First prize, 10 arrows, 10 hits. A smile played on her lips. If the event unfolded just like in the original story, this would be incredibly useful for her plans. She walked up to the cheerful, mustachioed stall owner. "Please give me some arrows," she requested politely. With a confident flick of her wrist, she placed a coin on the wooden counter. The man beamed, happily agreeing to her request.